Chapter 489. Lu Ping frowned and said, "Has this matter spread throughout the North Sea? There shouldn't be so many people who know about my fight with Martial Uncle Xian Shu." Yao Yong nodded and said, "Martial Uncle Xian Shu said it himself." Noticing Lu Ping's confusion, Yao Yong continued, "Junior Martial Uncle Xian Shu said that you've withstood his mystic heavenly lightning attracting art. This is the Yi-Wood divine lightning technique, one of the most powerful techniques in our sect. It's also the most difficult technique to cultivate. My teacher said that if Junior Martial Uncle Xian Shu used his full strength, he would have no choice but to dodge. There's no reason for him to take it head-on." Lu Ping said snappily, "You also said that it was under Martial Uncle Xian Shu's full strength. Do you think Martial Uncle Xian Shu would use his mysterious heaven lightning drawing technique against me?" Yao Yong shook his head in a daze and said, "That's naturally impossible." However, it was still Martial Uncle Xian Shu who made a move. At their level of cultivation, even if they used the weakest great technique, it's not something we can receive. No, it's not something we can receive either. But you've already received it. Lu Ping was too lazy to explain. If he hadn't comprehended the Lotus Protective Dipper with his natal magic treasure at the last moment and blocked Spiritual Master Xian Shu's weakened mysterious heaven lightning drawing technique, Spiritual Master Xian Shu probably wouldn't have changed his mind and directly captured Yin Xianchu and Ji Xianxian. Even if Spiritual Master Lu Xianyuan arrived, the three of them wouldn't be Spiritual Master Xian Shu's match. Moreover, with Spiritual Master Lu Xuanyuan's personality, he wouldn't make a move against Spiritual Master Xian Shu. What Lu Ping didn't understand now was why Spiritual Master Xian Shu would say this. It must be known that this was not a glorious thing for Spiritual Master Xian Shu. Moreover, to add such a great halo to Lu Ping's head, it might not be a good thing for Lu Ping. He's putting me on a fire to roast. Lu Ping didn't know why he thought of this sentence. Oh right, Uncle Master Xian Shu has gone into seclusion. I heard that it's time for him to condense the third type of heaven and earth spiritual item and complete the Golden Dan. Oh? Lu Ping asked in surprise, when did this happen? Yao Yong said with uncertainty, it should be not long after you were punished, right? It is said that Reverend Xian Shu even asked for punishment because he did not complete the task assigned by the sect to capture junior brother Yin. He recommended Martial Uncle Xian Chong to replace him as the person in charge of the sect's rules and discipline. Martial Uncle Xian Chong? Then who is the cultivator guarding Dikuan Island now? Yao Yong chuckled and said, who else could it be? Dikuan Island is a medium-sized island at the forefront of our sect's fight against the demon race. Now that Martial Uncle Tianlin is once again guarding Huangli Island to deter the demon race, compared to Huangli Island, the small spirit mine on Shenqi Island no longer has any meaning for my master to guard it. This time he might as well just guard Dikuan Island. Right now he's basically living in seclusion. He'll probably reach the Dharma stage within 10 years. Lu Ping smiled and said, then I have to congratulate him. I've received a lot of care from Martial Uncle Chu, so when the time comes, I might as well give him a generous gift. With the addition of Laozu, our sect's position in the North Sea's cultivation world is becoming more and more stable. Yao Yong nodded in agreement and said, you definitely have to give a generous gift. Although you're from the Chonghua Manor, you're different from your senior sisters. The sect also intends for you to form your own faction, so when the time comes, you'll naturally have to participate in the Dharma Manifestation Assembly in the name of your own abode. Lu Ping's expression didn't change, but his mind was racing. He maintained a smile on his face and asked, why do you say that? Yao Yong said mysteriously, I'm afraid that Martial Uncle Guo will advance to the Dharma manifestation stage in the next 2 years. Martial Uncle Guo's level of cultivation is similar to my teacher's, but Martial Uncle Guo has accumulated more experience, so I'm afraid that he'll advance to the Dharma manifestation stage first. In that case, he'll have to give up his position as the sect's administrator. As for the new administrator position, I don't know what the few Laozu are thinking, but they say that they want Martial Uncle Tianling to take over the position again. Lu Ping was stunned for a moment, as if he was thinking about the reliability of Yao Yong's information. Then he shook his head and said, that's impossible. Our sect has never had a Dharma Laozu as the sect's administrator. Moreover, my teacher used to be the sect's administrator. How could he become Laozu now and become an administrator again? Yao Yong laughed and said, when I heard this news I also thought that it was impossible, but the person who said this is my teacher. Do you think I should believe it or not? Lu Ping was silent for a while and said, why is it my teacher? Why is it Dharma Laozu? Yao Yong scratched his head and said, how would I know? but when my teacher said it unintentionally, his face looked serious, but he also seemed to be looking forward to it. Lu Ping sneered and said, "Then what's the reason for wanting me to form my own sect?" Yao Yong still shook his head and said, "Don't ask me. You also know that I've always been unwilling to think about these messy things. But my teacher said that the sect's administrators never pass on the inheritance between cultivators of the same sect." Lu Ping nodded thoughtfully, but he sneered at the first half of Yao Yong's words. Yao Yong's seemingly simple and honest appearance hid an extremely shrewd heart. Otherwise, Jinren Chu Xuanqing would never have let him say these words, and Shi Lingling would not have been seduced by this guy. Although he guessed that Jinren Chu Xuanqing deliberately said this to him through Yao Yong, and he also guessed some things in his heart, he still could not see the whole picture. After all, Lu Ping's current position was not high enough. Although he had been able to participate in some of the high-level affairs of the sect with his own efforts, the ones who could really decide the fate of the sect were the 8 Dharma phase Laozu and a few Zenrens who had achieved the 7th grade or above Dharma phase stage. Although Zhonghua and Xiaoyao belonged to 2 different sects, they were one family. There were more than 10 third-generation disciples under the 2 Laozu who had reached the core forging stage. The 10 disciples of Zhonghua, including Jiang Xianxian, had all advanced to the core forging stage, except for the eldest disciple and the 5th disciple who had died. Among them, there were 4 who had reached the middle stage of the core forging stage. Although the Xiaoyao lineage was not as prosperous as the Zhonghua lineage, the 6 core forging stage disciples made many second-generation disciples feel inferior. How many core forging stage cultivators were there in the whole of Zhenling? The total number of third-generation disciples of the 2 sects accounted for almost 1/10 of all the core forging stage cultivators in Zhenling. This was definitely a force that could affect or restrict the future of the sect. To add fuel to the fire, what kind of monster was the 9th disciple of the Zhonghua lineage? He was surrounded by the elite force of the third-generation disciples of Zhenling. They had fought against the demon clan in the deep sea for more than 10 years and had accumulated a large amount of wealth for Zhenling. With a cultivation of the middle stage of the core forging stage, he was able to kill a demon cultivator in the late stage of the core forging stage and fight against the most tyrannical second-generation disciples in the late stage of the core forging stage. This person had too many halos. The high-level cultivators of Zhenling thought carefully. From the top to the Dharma phase Laozu such as Tian Kong, Tian Ling and Tian Lin. In the middle Liang Shenfeng, Chu Xuanqing, Guo Xianshan, Xian Sen, and the deadly Xianyin, not to mention the third-generation disciples. Almost all of the most elite people of Zhenling had more or less received help or assistance from this disciple at a very important moment. They saw a kind of momentum in Lu Ping, a momentum that could sweep the whole sect when the conditions were ripe. With this kind of hidden momentum, how should Zhenling deal with it? Lu Ping didn't know what kind of game and balance the sect had gone through, but he knew that under the rising momentum of Zhenling, no one would do something that would hurt their own people and make their enemies happy. However, this didn't mean that no one would plot against them. Even when it came to dealing with Yin Xian, the sect had made 2 preparations. On the surface, they captured him to show the sects of the North Sea, and in the dark, they had Reverend Lu Shenyuan to inform them. Even at the last moment, Reverend Xian Shu didn't kill Lu Ping. Facing Reverend Xian Shu head-on, what an awe-inspiring strength. In fact, this was called praising to death. There were too many halos on Lu Ping, so many that some people had no choice but to take some measures, even if it was just in case. Reverend Xian Shu withdrew and went into closed-door training, leaving Lu Ping to face the consequences of the game between the sect's higher-ups. Tianling Laozu regained the position of Zhenling's deacon, but it broke the whole sect's inheritance system. Deacons in the late stage of core forging were housekeepers, and the decision-making power of the sect was never in the hands of the deacons. However, Fa Xiang Laozu became a deacon, who would still dare to think that she was a housekeeper. This was a sect master who wasn't the sect master. He wanted Lu Ping to set up another faction outside of Chonghua Manor. He wanted to separate the most potential inheritors from Chonghua Manor and Xiaoyao Manor, weakening the combined strength of the 2 factions. At the very least, he wanted to weaken the strength of the 2 factions in the future. Perhaps, this was the compromise condition for Tianling Grand Ancestor to return to the sect. Nowadays, it was an indisputable fact that Chonghua Manor and Xiaoyao Manor were strong in Zhenling. Whether or not Lu Ping established a separate faction would not have any impact on the rise of the 2 factions, because Lu Ping had always been Lu Tianling's disciple, and he was indebted to Tianling's Laozu. However, hundreds of years later, when Lu Ping's disciples began to walk on the stage of Zhenling, it was hard to say what the disciples of Lu Ping's faction, or the disciples of Xiaoyao Manor, would think. In fact, the reason was very simple. Lu Ping respected Tianling Laozu very much, but he didn't have much friendship with the disciples of Xiaoyao Manor. Thinking of this, Lu Ping was horrified. Could it be that when teacher and grandmaster fell out and reopened Chonghua Manor, it was also the result of this? However, what did Master Chu Xuanqing mean when he said, "The sect's deacons never pass on to the cultivators of the same faction"? What was he hinting at? The position of Jinling's deacon was a position that was held by turns. It was to prevent one faction from becoming dominant. If Tianling Laozu became the deacon, then after Tianling Laozu retired, the disciples of Chonghua Manor and Xiaoyao Manor could not continue to take over this position. They could only wait for the next opportunity. But what if Lu Ping was not in Chonghua Manor? Lu Ping smiled. Although he didn't have the idea of getting involved in the deacon position, sometimes he really had no choice. When some people close to him needed his protection, what choice did he have? It was just that this kind of fate that was not in his control and arranged by others made Lu Ping very unhappy. Although the person who arranged this path for him might have good intentions, or maybe it was out of love, or maybe it was out of expectation, Lu Ping felt that at least he had to be willing. Chapter 490. Boy, you asked Shen Dian to call the old man here just to tell the old man that you killed the people from the Crystal Palace? Fornax Laozu looked at the Crystal Palace's high-grade alchemy furnace in Lu Ping's hand. His eyes couldn't help but emit a cold light, but Lu Ping could still clearly feel that Fornax Laozu didn't blame him much. On the contrary, he was more surprised by the high-grade alchemy furnace in Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Of course not, martial uncle. Do you think the sect would dare to use this alchemy furnace? If not, this disciple will keep it for himself." Lu Ping pretended to take back the alchemy furnace in his hand. Fornax Laozu sighed and said, "Boy, speak, what do you want?" Lu Ping immediately asked in a serious tone, "Martial uncle, how is martial uncle Xianjing now?" Fornax Laozu glanced at him and said, "He is currently in seclusion. The sect has given him a task to refine 120 blood condensation pills and 600 blood refining pills. Although he has advanced to the late core forging stage, the sect Laozu still doesn't allow him to participate in the sect's decision-making." Lu Ping couldn't help but shiver. More than 700 furnaces of pills, even if they were only low-grade ones, Taoist Master Xianjing would need 5 days to refine a furnace of pills. It would still take him 10 years to refine. Fortunately, Lu Ping's alchemy skills were now second only to Fornax Laozu and Jinling. Even if he wanted to refine these low-grade pills, the sect wouldn't let him waste his time on it. However, during the years of suppressing the earth fire, the sect wouldn't let him stay idle. Almost every half a month, the sect would assign a mid-stage or late-stage core forging pill refining task to him. This made Lu Ping a little confused as to why the Jinling sect had become so abundant. Of course, Lu Ping naturally wouldn't forget to take advantage of these tasks. For example, when refining mid-stage core forging pills, Lu Ping's success rate could reach 70% to 80%. Lu Ping would often deduct 1 pill from the batch. If he was lucky and refined 9 pills at once, Lu Ping wouldn't be polite and directly deduct 2 pills. Of course, the sect generally turned a blind eye to these things. Don't underestimate 1 or 2 pills. With Lu Ping's current status as an alchemy master, the pills he refined for cultivation had begun to become intermittent, let alone ordinary cultivators. Lu Ping initially thought the sect had discovered some ancient ruins in the past few years. But when he heard that enlightened Master Xianjing, who was in closed-door meditation, was assigned such a low-grade alchemy mission, Lu Ping's intuition told him that things weren't as simple as they seemed. It sounded like they were preparing for something. Although Lu Ping had the qualifications to participate in the decision-making level of the sect, those who could really speak had to at least reach the height of Taoist Master Xian Shu and Taoist Master Xian Chang. Like Lu Ping, to put it bluntly, he was just an observer. He only had the right to know, but he had no right to make suggestions or choose. What's more, in the past few years, Lu Ping was punished to comb the fire vein at the earth fire vent. During this period, only Yao Yong occasionally came to see him. Hu Lili often came, but her status in the sect was far less than Yao Yong's. Taoist Master Xianchen was also not as good as Taoist Master Chu Xuanqing. They didn't know much about the sect's secrets, so Lu Ping couldn't get much information from them. As for his other companions, they were dignified core forging cultivators, elites among the third-generation disciples. Now they were hiding among the low-level cultivators. Some chopped firewood, some dug mines, and some swept courtyards. No one knew them, and no one was willing to pay attention to them, so how much could they know? On the other hand, There was no news of this group of genius cultivators from Jinling in the North Sea for several years. On the North Sea rookie list, Lu Ping's deed of killing Taoist master Lu Hai with one sword strike was still standing high and no one dared to challenge him. The rankings of others like Ji Shenxian, Du Feng, and the others had all dropped below the top 50. On the other hand, after Yao Yong recovered from his injuries, he killed a middle-stage core-forging demon cultivator during an underwater volcano eruption and obtained a low-grade Earth-step heaven spirit fire. After refining it, he advanced to the middle-stage core-forging in one fell swoop. He was extremely arrogant, and now he had rushed into the top 25 on the rookie list. Countless thoughts flashed through Lu Ping's mind in an instant. Seeing that Fornax Laozu was still looking at him, he smiled and said, "Martial uncle, I wonder if I can learn the soul-stealing secret technique created by martial uncle Xianjing?" Fornax Laozu looked at Lu Ping with a strange expression. Lu Ping, on the other hand, was embarrassed and giggled foolishly. Fornax Laozu directly threw him a jade slip, picked up the high-grade pill furnace on the ground and walked away. At the same time, he examined the pill furnace and said, "Yes, but the quality of the pill furnace in the Crystal Palace is indeed high. In the future, it is possible to upgrade it to a top-grade pill furnace. But for now, I still need to find Tianjiang to picture this pill furnace." When Lu Ping saw that Fornax Laozu was afraid that he would regret it, he almost snatched the pill furnace away. Lu Ping hurriedly shouted behind him, "Martial uncle, this pill furnace can be counted as a meritorious deed for the sect, right? Can you reduce the remaining year of sorting out the vein of earth fire?" Fornax Laozu said without turning his head, "This is not up to me. Your teacher personally said that if you don't stay here for 5 years, don't even think about coming out." Lu Ping was dumbfounded. After a long time he said unconvinced, "Isn't this punishment set by martial uncle Tian Kong? How can it be teacher personally said so?" Even so, Lu Ping didn't dare to have any other ideas. He honestly prepared to stay in the mouth of the earth fire for 5 years. Lu Ping held a black jade slip in his hand. After carefully examining the contents, Lu Ping revealed a strange expression. After pondering for a moment, Lu Ping took out a jade bottle and poured out an ordinary medicinal pellet. Then he pointed at the mid-grade cauldron in front of him that he hadn't used for a long time. The cauldron was hovering above the earth fire vent, constantly spinning in the air. As Lu Ping pointed at it, a puff of white mist suddenly burst out from the cauldron. Then 10 white, jade-like medicinal pellets flew out from the mist. Lu Ping casually put away the mid-grade cauldron and stored the medicinal pellets in a jade bottle, leaving only one in his hand. Then he cast a few hand seals and struck the ordinary medicinal pellet he took out earlier. After that, a grayish gaseous substance floated up from the medicinal pellet. Lu Ping quickly made a few more hand signs. At the same time he used his divine sense and true yuan to restrain the grayish gas. But as soon as the gas floated out of the pill, a lot of it disappeared. Although Lu Ping was fast enough, he still only pulled half of the gas. Then Lu Ping carefully wrapped the remaining half of the gas around the white jade pill that he had just refined in his hand. Lu Ping was overjoyed. He cast a few more hand seals and this time they were aimed at the white jade pills. However, a small whirlpool suddenly appeared in the middle of the gray fog. All the gray fog continued to shrink and then gathered in the middle of the whirlpool. When the gray fog completely disappeared, the white jade pill that was previously wrapped in the gray fog was revealed. But this time the white jade pill had turned into a gray pill. It was very similar to the pill that was poured out of the white jade bottle, but the color was a lot darker. What Lu Ping used was the soul-stealing secret technique created by Taoist master Xianjing. Speaking of which, Taoist master Xianjing was also a famous alchemy genius in Jinling. Otherwise, he would not have become one of the few alchemy masters in Jinling. However, Taoist master Xianjing's alchemy was a bit special. The height of his alchemy was greatly affected by his own cultivation. In other words, when Taoist master Xianjing's cultivation reached the middle stage of the core forging realm, his alchemy could at most refine pills in the middle stage of the core forging realm. This was very similar to Yu Jiangrui, the alchemy master that Lu Ping captured in the East China Sea. Because his cultivation could not be improved, Taoist master Xianjing's alchemy was also lingering at the level of refining pills in the middle stage of the core forging realm. In the end, he had no choice but to turn his attention to the only remaining spirit forging pill that Lu Tianling Laozu gave to the pill pavilion for research. This allowed him to create a secret technique that extracted part of the essence of the spirit forging pill without anyone noticing and helped him advance to the late stage of the core forging realm. If it wasn't for the incident with Taoist master Liang Xianfeng, which was too coincidental, Taoist Master Xian Jing would have been able to avoid this matter. However, there was a flaw in this soul-stealing secret technique. It was unable to completely draw out the essence from the pill and pour it back into the spirit acceptance pill that was specially refined for this secret technique. There was always a part of the essence in the pill that would evaporate and disappear during the drawing process. Lu Ping used ordinary pills to perform the soul-stealing secret technique several times in a row. With Lu Ping's spiritual sense that was far superior to others, he only managed to reduce the loss of using the secret technique to about 30%. Just as Lu Ping was preparing to stay in this earth fire vent for another year, a ripple suddenly formed in the void in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows and looked at the ripple quietly without saying anything. At this moment, the ripple suddenly split open into a pitch-black hole, and a jade slip appeared without warning at the crack. Lu Ping reached out and calmly took the jade slip in his hand. Then the black hole closed again and turned into a ripple. The ripple gradually stretched and the void returned to its original state. Lu Ping scanned the jade slip with his spiritual sense, and his face suddenly lit up. He got up and walked out of the earth fire vent. When Lu Ping got up, the earth fire that had been suppressed by him for 4 years suddenly lost its restriction. A pillar of fire as thick as a bucket suddenly poured into the fire-splitting plate and surged toward each alchemy room. As soon as Lu Ping came out of the earth fire vent, he heard a burst of crackling sounds in the 36 alchemy rooms. At least 13 alchemy rooms had exploded. Lu Ping smirked and said, "This method of controlling fire is still too weak. It doesn't even have this kind of emergency measure." A series of curses and roars came out, followed by someone pushing the door of the alchemy room aggressively. It seemed that he wanted to find the culprit who made the earth fire suddenly go berserk. For 4 years, since that person suppressed the earth fire, the output of the earth fire in the pill pavilion had been stable for 4 years. Why did the earth fire suddenly go berserk today? However, when the few Jinling sect alchemists walked out of the alchemy room while cursing and swearing, they immediately shut their mouths in embarrassment when they saw the man who was stretching his back in front of the earth fire. They stood there not knowing whether to advance or retreat. Who is it, bastard? How can the earth fire go berserk? My spirit cleansing pill, I spent 4 years to collect all the spirit grass and now it's wasted again. Just as everyone looked at each other, the stone door of a second-level alchemy room suddenly opened and a cultivator roared and rushed in. The other alchemists quickly dodged. Lu Ping looked at the cultivator rushing over and was furious at first, but then he saw Lu Ping's face was full of excitement. He smiled and said, "Xian Yan martial uncle, I haven't seen you for 4 years, how are you?" Chapter 491. Lu Ping's eyes narrowed as he watched Sage Shenyan leave angrily but helplessly. The Spirit Cleansing Pill. Sage Shenyan actually has the recipe for this pill. The Spirit Cleansing Pill was an extremely rare pill used by late core forging cultivators to purify their bloodline and refine their true essence. This kind of pill could also be said to be used to solidify one's foundation. It was a pill that could indirectly help one reach a higher rank. Although there was no 3,000-year-old spirit herb used to refine this elixir, the difficulty of refining it was no less than that of a half-step to the Dharma stage elixir. Hence, this elixir was actually a late core forging stage elixir, but alchemists often categorized it as a half-step to the Dharma stage elixir. The Spirit Cleansing Pill had not appeared in the North Sea for hundreds of years. The North Sea alchemists had thought that the recipe had been lost. Unexpectedly, Sage Shenyan had obtained the recipe. Lu Ping came to the back mountain of the elixir pavilion to bid farewell to Tianlu Laozu. Tianlu Laozu already knew about the jade slip. He simply waved his hand and told Lu Ping to scram. Unexpectedly, Lu Ping grinned and said, "Grand Master, do you have the recipe for the Spirit Cleansing Pill? Can you give it to me?" How could Sage Xuanyan's matter in the alchemy room be hidden from Tianlu Laozu? Tianlu Laozu kept a straight face and said, "The Spirit Cleansing Pill recipe was given to the sect by Shenyan Flame. However, the task of refining this pill was not given to you. Even if you are one of the best alchemists in the sect, if you want to obtain this recipe, you will have to hand over something." This was the rule of Jinling. There was no such thing as a free lunch. However, rewards were never stingy. Lu Ping had no choice but to hand over the recipe for the Divine Accumulation Pill to Tianlu Laozu. Fortuitous Furnace Laozu glanced at the jade slip, then looked at Lu Ping thoughtfully. "Oh, Divine Accumulation Pill. This is the Liao clan's ancestral pill. It has a great effect on core forging stage cultivators. I didn't expect you to have it. Although it is not as good as the Spirit Cleansing Pill, you are an alchemy grandmaster. Lu Ping took the spirit cleansing pill recipe from Fornax Laozu and was about to leave when he heard Fornax Laozu say helplessly, "Kid, what are you planning to do with the spirit cleansing pill recipe in your hands?" This question was a bit awkward for Lu Ping in the pill pavilion, or rather for Lu Ping in the sect. If it was any other pill recipe it would be fine. Which alchemy grandmaster didn't have a few secret pill recipes? However, although the spirit cleansing pill was not as good as the spirit forging pill, it was still a pill that many people coveted. It was a taboo pill for those who possessed it. The spirit forging pill could increase the rank of a gold core. Although the spirit cleansing pill had little effect on late core forging stage cultivators who were condensing a spirit treasure for the third time, it was very useful for cultivators who were refining a spirit cleansing pill for the first and second time. This kind of thing could only be kept in the hands of a sect. In fact, when Lu Ping saved Liang Shenfeng, he had already thought of this situation. The sect would never give up on the spirit cleansing pill recipe. Although Lu Ping was a Jinling grandmaster, there was a fundamental difference between giving the recipe to the pill pavilion and placing it in the pill pavilion's inheritance. Of course, the sect would never let Lu Ping suffer a loss. On the contrary, they would reward him heavily as an example. Lu Ping thought for a moment and smiled. "Grand Marshal Uncle, I'm sure you know how many spirit herbs are needed to concoct small forged spirit pellets. How many cauldrons of spirit herbs do you think we can gather with our sect's resources?" Fornax Laozu shook his head and sighed. "It's difficult. Let's not talk about the other spirit herbs. The spirit cleansing pill is an imitation of the spirit cleansing pill's vitality dew. The sect can only gather 7 or 8 portions without affecting the other pills. If we add other spirit herbs, it will take at least 5 years to recover. I'm afraid the sect will run out of high-grade pills." Lu Ping shrugged helplessly and said, "It's not like the sect can refine the spirit cleansing pill right now. So what if it's a while later? I'll have to give the recipe to the sect eventually. It's just that now is not the time." Lu Ping left the pill pavilion and thought to himself, "Fortunately, I'm the only one who can use the technique of refining spiritual water. Only Hu Lily and I know about the heart-dissolving pill and the heart-forging pill. The half of the spirit-cleansing pill and the myriad wonder dew are secrets I've kept to myself. Otherwise, who knows what kind of uproar the sect would cause. It's all because I'm not strong enough." Lu Ping set the compass in the teleportation formation in front of the Heaven Spirit Hall. A white light engulfed Lu Ping, and when he reappeared, he was already in a world of ice and snow. Compared to the first time Lu Ping had come to Frost Island, the place had changed greatly. The ice and snow that covered the entire island had been transformed into various buildings by the cultivators of the North Sea. Many cultivators could be seen walking or flying to and fro the island from time to time. On the eastern side of the island, below the cliff, was the secret medium-scale spirit mine that Lu Ping had discovered. Lu Tianling and Laozu had already built a rather large palace of ice and snow there. The palace was almost as large as the main and branch mines of the underground medium-scale spirit mine. As a result, such a large commotion had indeed aroused the suspicions of the other sects and clans. However, under the secret investigation of the cultivators from the other sects, they finally found out that Jinling had actually discovered a mine with a sizable amount of ice-type spiritual materials. Jinling's Vice Hall Master, Sage Enigma Flame, had been secretly stationed in this ice palace for the past few years. He was in charge of the mining of ice-type spiritual materials. All the sects secretly scolded Jinling for being cunning and taking everything for himself. Many sects proposed to share the profits, intending to divide up the spirit material mine. Lu Tianling and Laozu did not fall for this. All of their demands were in opposition. The mighty Dharma Laozu put on a desperate stance as if he wanted the mine, as if he had to crawl over Laozu's dead body, forcing Laozu from the various sects to refrain from taking action. Although the various sects were unwilling, falling out with Jinling just because of this spirit material mine was making a mountain out of a molehill. At this time, the Crystal Palace intended to support their own representative in the North Sea, and Xianling sect continued to suppress the rising Jinling. The two clans hit it off and acted out the show of besieging Tianling Mountain. Laozu of the various sects watched from the sidelines, with the intention of teaching Jinling a lesson. However, to everyone's surprise, Laozu shook the North Sea with the power of a mid-Dharma adept. For a moment, the various sects no longer had any thoughts about this spirit material mine. Of course, the premise was that the various sects did not know that there was a medium-sized spirit stone mine below this spirit material mine. Otherwise, when the news of Jinling monopolizing a medium-sized spirit stone mine spread, the various sects of the North Sea would probably step over Lu Tianling and Laozu's dead body to snatch it from Jinling's hands. When Lu Tianling and Laozu saw Lu Ping, they immediately snorted coldly, causing Lu Ping's entire body to shiver. Then he said, "You've been burned by the earth fire for 4 years. You're already dry, aren't you?" Lu Ping respectfully replied, "Teacher, your disciple's heart has become calmer. I've learned to hide my strength and bide my time. I've also learned to plot openly and compromise." Lu Tianling and Laozu revealed a hint of a smile at the corner of their lips, but they still said coldly, "You're still salvageable. This time, the sect will be sending a few third-generation disciples who have reached the 6th level of the core forging realm to the East Sea for training. I know that you seem to have some business in the East Sea, so you can go with them." Lu Ping respectfully agreed. Thinking about how he hadn't seen his 3 senior sisters in Tianling Mountain for many years, he wanted to ask about them, but his teacher had not said anything. Thus, Lu Ping also suppressed the thought of asking. However, Lu Tianling and Laozu seemed to have seen through Lu Ping's thoughts and directly said, "Your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th senior sisters were sent to the East Sea by me a few years ago. This time they will also meet up with Uncle Master Tian Xiang in the Fallen Secret Territory. Your strength far exceeds your 3 senior sisters, and your 2nd senior sister is now also at the 6th level of the core forging realm. When the time comes, you will need to do your best to help." Lu Tianling and Laozu paused as if thinking of something and said in a low voice, "If you meet that person and she makes things difficult for you, you don't have to endure it. Just do your best to fight back. Uncle Master Tian Xiang will not let you suffer." Lu Ping wanted to pretend to be confused, but he heard his teacher laugh and say, "You sly fellow, you don't have to pretend to be obedient in front of your teacher. You have always been smart, and I'm afraid you already know a lot about this in secret. I won't hide it from you. Now that our sect seems to be doing well, it is actually very dangerous. Dharma adepts are the foundation of the sect, and with the addition of Dharma adept Laozu, it means that the sect's foundation is even deeper, so she wants to come back. It's just that this person has always been arrogant, so she will definitely put on a good show to raise her status. The more you make her suffer, the more she will want to come back and compete with me. So if you have any skills, just use them. This person will not bother to do it herself." Lu Ping chuckled and did not say anything else, but in his heart he was cursing, "Teacher, you want to understand the matters of the previous generation from the younger generation? What is going on? Even if you want to understand, aside from the fallen big senior sister and 5th senior sister, there are still 6 other senior sisters. How could it be possible for a stinky 9th brother like me to come forward?" Unfortunately, his teacher had personally given the order, clearly not allowing Lu Ping to escape. Lu Ping could only pinch his nose and accept it. He went to the depths of the mine to visit the ragged Shi Lingling, Zhongjian and Mayu. Seeing Lu Ping's sage enigma flame specially allowed them to rest for a day. Zhongjian acted as if he had seen a family member and gave Lu Ping a bear hug. Then he started complaining. Lu Ping looked carefully and saw that Shi Lingling and Mayu were still fine. On the other hand, Zhongjian appeared to have changed. From a jade-faced scholar, he had become a beefy man. Seeing that, Lu Ping could not stop himself from smiling. "Senior brother Zhong, don't complain. You are becoming more like a real man." Zhongjian sighed and said, "I am doing the work of 3 people. My primary energy is sealed. I can only force myself to cultivate, but I cannot do anything else. Not to mention, I also have to suffer the ridicule of the juniors. There is still 1 year left. When the time comes, I, your senior brother, will definitely teach those juniors a lesson." Zhongjian had only just finished speaking when he saw Shi Lingling and Lu Ping laughing happily. Mayu, who was beside them, had a bashful look on her face. Immediately, Zhongjian recalled something and scolded Lu Ping, "What do you mean by acting like a real man? I, your senior brother, have always been a real man, all right?" After chatting with the 3 of them for a long time, telling them about their experiences. After that, Lu Ping requested a favor from the 3 of them before rushing back to Huangli Island. There he bumped into Fang Tao, who said happily, "Boss, it's good that you are back. I, Tianlin Laozu, have been looking for you." Chapter 492. Lu Ping gave Fang Tao a few tasks and 3 items to him. Then Lu Ping walked towards Tianlin Laozu's residence. Lu Ping looked in surprise at the 2 people welcoming him at the entrance and hurriedly said to the person in front, "Senior brother Shen Tian, you are here as well. Could this be?" Spiritual Master Shen Tian pointed at a dignified and beautiful woman beside him and said, "Yes, this is your senior sister-in-law, my Dao partner, Shen Hui." Lu Ping hurriedly bowed and the 3 of them walked into the cave dwelling. Tianlin Laozu saw Lu Ping come in and asked, "You went to Frost Island?" Lu Ping answered yes. Tianlin Laozu nodded, his face expressionless. He said, "This time the people going to the East Sea are all third-generation disciples who have been stuck at the late stage of the core forging realm for dozens of years. Your senior brother Xian Tian and senior sister Xian Hui will also be going. When you get there, just listen to senior uncle Tian Xiang's instructions. The East Sea is far richer than the North Sea, and there are many extraordinary people there. You must be careful." Teacher had already said this before, so Lu Ping had no choice but to agree again. Ancestor Tianlin continued, "Kid Lu, I know you've always been rich and your strength isn't any weaker than Xian Tian and Xian Hui. If you're able to help this time, please lend your senior brother and sister a hand." Lu Ping's expression was strange. The meaning behind these words was similar to what teacher had said, as if he was certain that he could help. Then it was about that person's request. As expected, Ancestor Tianlin pondered for a moment and said, "Listening to junior brother Xuanfeng's words, it seems like you already know quite a bit about Xianqin and even got to know her two disciples by chance?" Lu Ping didn't know what Tianlin Laozu was going to say next. Could it be that he was going to fight back as teacher said? Thus he could only reply, "Yes, this disciple knows Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting as well as Li Xiuzhu, who is also a disciple of martial ant Xianqin." Lu Ping could sense that when he mentioned Zhu Xianmeng, Taoist master Xian Hui, who was standing beside him, seemed a little strange. Tianlin Laozu glanced at Xian Hui, then as if weighing his words said, "This trip to the East Sea, in addition to an opportunity for a third-generation disciple to break through to the late core forging stage, there is another important matter, which is the return of Xianqin. She is now also a Dharma adept. Back then she left in a fit of anger. Now that she has returned, she will definitely do something to you and the others. Just let her have her way." Lu Ping now understood the purpose of his trip to the East Sea. Originally he was also wondering why the third-generation disciples who were stuck at the 6th level of the core forging stage were only going to bring him along. Now he discovered that the sect was going to send Taoist master Xianqin, or should he be called Tianqin Laozu's punching bag. He was Lu Qianling's proud disciple, and he had even concealed his identity when they met in the Eastern Sea. Just these 2 points alone were enough for Lu Ping to know that he had firmly attracted all of Ancestor Sky Qin's hatred. He would definitely provoke this demon girl to torture him in 1,000 ways, perhaps even all the way to the Northern Sea. With Lu Ping as a punching bag, Tianqin Laozu's return to the sect would definitely be a lot less troublesome. Junling was naturally happy about this. As long as he could bring this Dharma Laozu, the alchemy grandmaster, back to the sect, he, Lu Ping, deserved to suffer these grievances. Not to mention this guy originally had 1 year of punishment left in the Earth Fire Vent. This trip to the East Sea was just to change the method of punishment. Lu Ping secretly laughed. Teacher's meaning is not to suffer losses, but master's meaning is to submit to adversity. It seems that teacher's method is better, but I can only use teacher's method. I don't want to be a punching bag for nothing. Lu Ping bid farewell to Tianlin Laozu. Xiantian sent Lu Ping out of the cave. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Senior brother Xiantian, this time, are all the third-generation disciples who have reached the 6th level of the core forging stage going? What is the opportunity to break through?" Taoist Xiantian smiled bitterly. "Naturally not everyone is going. As far as I know, there are 10 third-generation disciples who have reached the 6th level of the core forging stage, but this time only 7 of us are going. The 7 of us have been at the 6th level for decades or even hundreds of years. The reason why we have been stuck at the 6th level for so many years, other than the fact that breaking through to the late core forging stage is a huge chasm, everyone is actually accumulating their strength. The 7 of us are all planning to at least condense a 7th grade golden core in the future and become Dharma adepts. If we want to do this, then we must smelt a low-grade heaven-level spirit treasure when we are at the 9th level of the core forging stage. This way, when we advance to the mid-core forging stage, we must condense at least 2 mid-grade earth-level spirit treasures. This is only the minimum requirement. However, the fact is that the 7 of us do not have enough inner yuan, so we are unable to reach the standard of refining mid-grade earth-level spirit treasures. Even if we manage to reach the mid-core forging stage, we have not prepared 2 sets of earth-level spirit treasures. Lu Ping carefully pondered over Taoist Xuantian's information. After a long time he asked, "Is it so difficult to advance to the late core forging stage?" Taoist Xuantian smiled bitterly. "Junior brother Lu is a genius. Perhaps it is not difficult for you, but I have been a disciple of Master for nearly 200 years, and I have practiced for more than 250 years. However, I have only been at the 6th level of the core forging stage for 60 years. Although Shen Hui is not like me, she has also been at the 6th level for nearly 40 years. The difficulty of breaking through to the late core forging stage is obvious. Lu Ping was a little incredulous. Senior brother, you have 60 years of accumulation. Isn't that enough? Daoist Shen Tian nodded. That is correct. In fact, with junior brother's current foundation, it is enough to refine 2 mid-grade Earth Step Spirit items. In the past, junior brother had some fortuitous encounters, and with master's help, I have 2 mid-grade Earth Step Spirit items. However, junior brother is not willing to give up so easily. In this trip to the East Sea, I want to see if I can find a suitable high-grade Earth Step Spirit item. If I can obtain one, junior brother will have a higher chance of reaching the 7th grade. After asking Daoist Shen Tian some questions regarding cultivation, Lu Ping bid farewell to Daoist Shen Tian. Lu Ping hurriedly returned to his cave residence. Seeing Hu Lili waiting for him, he opened his mouth and asked, "Are you planning to break through to the mid-core forging stage?" Hu Lili thought that Lu Ping was just asking casually, so she said, "Yes, I was quite lucky. Last time, I helped Master and a few other practitioners to explore some ruins and we gained quite a bit. Master rewarded me with a high-grade Earth Step Ebony Heart. Now that I am at the peak of the 3rd stage of the core forging stage, I can use it to refine this Ebony Heart." Lu Ping waved his hand and said, "Don't rush, it's just a high-grade Earth Step Spirit item. If you refine it now, when you advance to the late core forging stage, you can only refine mid-grade Earth Step Spirit items at most. In the future, it will be difficult for you to advance to the Dharma stage. The first time you refine a spirit item, it should at least be a low-grade Earth Step Spirit item, or at least 2 high-grade Earth Step ones. Otherwise, you won't be able to reach a high-grade Golden Core in the future." After hearing Lu Ping's words, Hu Lili suddenly fell silent. Lu Ping was a little puzzled, but then he saw Hu Lili raise her head and say quietly, "Can I also become a Dharma adept in the future? None of our sect's array practitioners have ever reached the Dharma stage. I heard from Master that even the big sects in East Sea and Central Plains rarely have array practitioners who have reached the Dharma stage." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Only then did he realize that it was even harder for array formation cultivators to advance to the Dharma realm than alchemists. Lu Ping had never thought about this problem before. In Hu Lili's eyes, smelting Earth-grade spirit items to advance to the Dharma realm in the future was basically a dream. Lu Ping said seriously, "Don't worry, no array practitioner in our sect has ever advanced to the Dharma stage, so you will be the first. Now, there is no need to rush to advance to the mid-core forging stage. First, you should build up your foundation. I still have a minor forging panacea in hand, so I have to rush to the 7th grade Golden Core. There is no reason for me to be afraid before the battle begins." Hu Lili looked at Lu Ping and nodded vigorously, saying, "I believe you." Because Lu Ping had to go on a long journey again, he had to entrust everything to Hu Lili. Originally, Hu Lili wanted to break through to the mid-core forging stage. Without her to look after Huangli Island, Chen Lian and the others were punished to reflect on their mistakes. Even though Tianlin Laozu was in charge, he would not care about the trivial matters of Huangli Island. It turned out that Hu Lili wanted to invite perfected Lu Shenyuan to take charge, but this time Lu Ping stopped her, so she did not have to trouble perfected Lu Shenyuan anymore. Lu Ping then went to grab Yao Yong's strong men. Unexpectedly, after perfected Chu Xuanqing took charge of Dikuan Island, Yao Yong was left to take charge of Shenqi Island. Lu Ping had no choice but to refine 2 batches of blood-condensing elixirs and exchange Zhang Xuanqing with perfected Shenyuan from the side yard. He asked Zhang Xuanqing, who was gradually recovering from his injuries, to assist Hu Lili in managing Huangli Island. After thinking about it, Lu Ping was still worried, so he sent 3 sound-transmitting magic swords to perfected Lu Shenyuan, his 6th senior sister, perfected Chen Shenwei, and 7th senior sister, perfected Shen Hua, asking them to help look after Huangli Island when he was not around. After arranging the matters on Huangli Island, Lu Ping called De Bao out from an unknown corner of Huangli Island. Then he took Samling and Lu Daguay with him and disappeared above the sea that was covered by the night. 5 years ago, there was an incident that happened in the North Sea's cultivation world. It was the North Sea's alchemy aristocratic family, the Liao family, who had clashed with the Overflowing Seas sect for some unknown reason. First, the Overflowing Seas sect accused the Liao family of attacking their camp. Then, without waiting for the Liao family to defend themselves, the Overflowing Seas sect had already ransacked the meticulously cultivated spirit herb gardens on the 18 miniature islands that the Liao family controlled. Dozens of Liao family's low-level cultivators were killed. The North Sea Liao family fought back, but the Overflowing Seas sect was too powerful. The Liao family was forced to retreat again and again. At the same time, they sought support from the various sects of the North Sea. Unexpectedly, before the sects of the North Sea could express their stance, the North Sea cultivators who had been stirred up by the Overflowing Sea sect's actions all these years launched a surprise attack on the Overflowing Sea sect. The Overflowing Sea sect was caught unprepared, and dozens of cultivators perished. Among them were even core-forging cultivators. For a time, the Overflowing Sea sect became the target of scorn in the North Sea. However, after the Overflowing Sea sect retreated, the North Sea cultivators suddenly realized that the Overflowing Sea sect had disappeared without a trace. No matter how hard the North Sea cultivators searched, they could not find a single cultivator from the Overflowing Sea sect. They could only leave the matter unsettled. Under the shroud of the night, Lu Ping finally arrived at Autumn Cloud Island, the place he had been to decades ago. Looking at the island in front of him, Lu Ping laughed coldly in his heart. With the so-called North Sea's local powers as cover, who would have thought that the Overflowing Sea sect would be hiding here? Who knows, Shenling sect might have joined the ranks of those who are harboring the Overflowing Sea sect. Chapter 493. Wang Qi received the jade token from Fang Tao respectfully and asked, "Does spiritual master Shenjia have any other orders?" A strange expression flashed across Fang Tao's face. "No. You just need to bring this jade token to the back mountain of Heaven Spirit Mountain and find someone called Du Feng. Just pass this jade token to him." Wang Qi was taken aback. "It's that simple?" Fang Tao's eyes flashed, but he still shrugged. "Do you think the old man would lie to you?" "All right," Wang Qi said and walked towards the teleportation formation on Huangli Island. "I'll go now." Wang Qi had just left when Fang Xia and Fang Wei walked in. Fang Tao looked at his twin children and showed some gratification on his face. However, he immediately concealed it and took out a jade token. He said, "You two take this to Frost Island and give it to the spiritual master in charge of mining the spirit mines of our sect." Fang Xia giggled and said, "Father, what is this jade token? Why did you send it to Frost Island? I heard that Frost Island is very cold. Even ordinary blood refinement disciples find it hard to survive there." With Lu Ping's help, Fang Tao had used a secret technique to raise his cultivation base to the mid-blood condensation realm. However, his son and daughter had long surpassed him in terms of cultivation base. Fang Tao patted his daughter's head lovingly and said, "This is enlightened master whose order. How would I know? You and your brother just have to hurry up and do it." After sending his children away, Fang Tao said dejectedly, "I hope you can endure this test. Don't blame me for not reminding you. This is for your own good." Spiritual Master Fang Tao took out another sound transmission glyph from his storage bag. A moment later, an orderly voice came from outside the door. "Uncle Fang, you're looking for me? Is this Tianyu?" Fang Tao put on a smile and said, "Come in." Fang Tao liked Tianyu a bit. This child was honest, obedient, and even a little weak. However, he was attentive and patient. Among the tens of acres of spirit fields on the island, his was the one that took care of the best. "Little Tian, have you been cultivating the soul-nurturing art I gave you last time?" Tianyu nodded and said, "I've been cultivating all this time. My divine sense has already expanded to over 500 feet. Fang Tao nodded. His expression was non-committal, but he passed a token to Tian and said, "Little Tian, take this token and make a trip to the Pill Pavilion. I know that you like taking care of spiritual herbs and have some talent in alchemy. Perhaps you'll be able to learn something from the Pill Pavilion with this token." Tianyu received the medallion with some hesitation and asked, "Uncle Fang, what use does this medallion have? You've taken care of me enough. Not only did you lend me your alchemy furnace, but I also haven't learned all of the alchemy recipes you gave me." Fang Tao shook his head and said, "I don't know as well. In short, you should find out once you take the command token." 6 cultivators were already waiting before the teleportation array in front of the Heaven Spirit Hall. "Senior brother Shen Tian, isn't there another person coming? Why isn't he here yet?" Master Shen Tian looked at the person who spoke. It was Master Liang Xuanfeng's eldest disciple, Zhang Xianbei. Just as Master Shen Tian was about to speak, he heard a cold snort from the person next to him. "No matter who it is, they can't be so arrogant. Don't tell me he's coming with the martial uncle who will be leading us to the Eastern Sea?" The person who spoke was Master Xuanchang's disciple, Yang Xuansu. Master Shen Tian opened his mouth, but he couldn't bring up the fact that Lu Ping hadn't arrived yet. He was quite angry at Lu Ping for being late. Master Xian Tian deliberately changed the topic and asked a cultivator on the other side, Junior Sister Xianzhu, do you know which martial uncle will be leading us to the Eastern Sea? Master Xianzhu was the eldest disciple of Jinling's Talisman Crafting Pavilion's deputy pavilion master, Master Xianzhu. Master Xianzhu's ability to make talismans was deeply inherited by Master Xianzhu. He was also one of the 7 6th-level core forging 3rd-generation disciples going to the Eastern Sea. Master Xianzhu shook his head and said, among the martial uncles who are qualified to represent the sect to the Eastern Sea, Chu Xuanqing, Liang Shenfeng, and Gui Xianshan have already condensed high-grade golden cores and are only waiting to break through to the Dharma manifestation stage. Master Xianzhu has also gone into seclusion to condense his golden core. Master Xianchang has just enforced the sect's rules and can't stand on his own 2 feet. Master Xuanhua has been assisting Tianling Laozu on Frost Island. Master Xianhui from the Puppet Pavilion has never been in charge. Master Xianyan from the Pill Pavilion seems to have been studying a kind of medicinal pill recently. Then among the remaining late core forging cultivators, the only ones qualified to represent the sect to the Eastern Sea are Master Xianxin, Master Xianqin, and my master. Master Xianzhu nodded. The spiritual masters mentioned by Master Xianzhu were all cultivators who had been famous among the 2nd-generation disciples for a long time. His analysis was quite reasonable. Master Xian Tian originally wanted to ask something, but the teleportation array in front of him suddenly lit up. Everyone's eyes looked towards it. After the light dissipated, Lu Ping appeared in the teleportation array and immediately felt several eyes staring at him. When Lu Ping looked up, he saw Master Xian Tian and the other 5 people. Lu Ping immediately knew that everyone had gathered and he was the only one left. After greeting Master Xian Tian and Master Xian Hui, Lu Ping smiled and said, my apologies, I was delayed because of a small matter. Except for Xian Tian and Xian Hui, the other 4 people were also surprised that Lu Ping would be going to the Eastern Sea with them. For a moment, everyone felt that it was unexpected but also reasonable. Master Xian Su, who was complaining about Lu Ping being late, had an embarrassed expression. Although Lu Ping's cultivation was far behind theirs, not only was his status in the sect far above theirs, but his strength also faintly surpassed them, who were 6th-layer core forging cultivators who had been accumulating strength for decades. When they thought about how Lu Ping killed a late core forging demon cultivator and fought with Master Xianzhu, everyone looked at Lu Ping with a trace of awe. Master Xianzhu's eyes flashed with a strange light. He was the first to giggle and say, so it's the famous junior martial brother Lu. I was wondering why the sect would send a 6th-layer core forging cultivator with us to the Eastern Sea. I think it's because junior martial brother traveled to the Eastern Sea for more than 10 years. Lu Ping was very famous among the 3rd-generation disciples. After he was chased by a beast tide and disappeared, many people in the sect knew that he went to the Eastern Sea. However, Lu Ping's experience in the Eastern Sea was only known by a few high-level cultivators. Lu Ping smiled and said, Senior martial sister is overpraising me. I'm just here to accompany my senior martial brothers and sisters. I've been in the Eastern Sea for more than 10 years, but I haven't been to many places. Most of my time is spent in seclusion. As Lu Ping spoke, he looked at Master Xian Tian who was next to him. Master Xian Tian smiled and said, Junior martial brother Lu might not know, but this is the Talisman Crafting Pavilion's deputy pavilion master, Master Xianzhu's eldest disciple, junior martial sister Xianzhu. Master Xianzhu was one of the sect's few experts. Although the Talisman Crafting Pavilion's position in the sect couldn't be compared to the Refining Hall and Pill Pavilion, the Talisman Crafting Pavilion had the most powerful pavilion master in Jinling, Tian Shui Laozu. With this person, the Talisman Crafting Pavilion's position in Jinling was firmly behind the Pill Pavilion and Refining Hall, ranking 3rd in Jinling. Master Xian Tian pointed to a tall and thin cultivator beside him and said, This is martial uncle Xian Chang's eldest disciple, junior martial brother Xian Su. Master Xian Su laughed dryly and uncomfortably greeted Lu Ping. Lu Ping didn't mind. He didn't have a good impression of Master Xian Chang. Moreover, Lu Ping also discovered that when he broke through to the mid-core forging stage, the demon race's siege on Huangli Island was very strange. Although he heard from his teacher that Master Xian Shu's shadow was behind it, Lu Ping also felt that Master Xian Chang, who had arrived late that day, was also involved. Master Liang Xuanfeng's 2nd disciple, Daoist Xian Bei, had also met Lu Ping. Daoist Xian Bei had also heard about how Lu Ping had helped Master Liang Shenfeng obtain the Heavenly Wind Leaf in the East China Sea. Taoist Xianbei was also very grateful to Lu Ping for using the minor forging spirit pill to resolve Master Liang Xuanfeng's embarrassment when he was condensing a high-level golden core. Therefore his greeting towards Lu Ping was the most sincere. Lu Ping was also very close to Taoist Xianbei. On one hand it was because of his relationship with Master Liang Xianfeng. On the other hand it was because of the sincerity between Taoist Xianbei and Lu Ping. Finally, Taoist Xian Yu's teacher didn't have the same great achievements as the other teachers. Although Taoist Xian Yu's teacher was also a second-generation disciple, his teacher's cultivation was the same as Taoist Xian Yu's, 6th-layer core forging stage. Taoist Xian Yu had never been able to break through to the late core forging stage. In the end, Taoist Xian Yu barely managed to smelt a low-grade Earth Step Heaven and Earth Spirit treasure and directly condensed a 3rd-grade golden core. However, Taoist Xian Yu was very diligent. His cultivation progress and true strength were no worse than the other famous disciples of the second generation. His current cultivation had even surpassed his teacher. Among the first batch of third-generation disciples of Zhenling, he was quite famous. Taoist Xian Tian introduced everyone to Lu Ping, then asked, "Junior brother, why are you so late today? You made me wait for a long time." Lu Ping unconsciously touched the storage ring on his hand. In the past few days, Lu Ping had become a great thief in the cultivation world. He had swept away 2 secret cultivation resource storage camps of the overturned Sea Gang. By the time the overturned Sea Gang realized something was wrong, Lu Ping had already decisively stopped and returned to Tianling Mountain. He had just caught up with the group that was about to go to the East Sea. Lu Ping smiled shamefully. Recently, disciples suddenly felt that my cultivation seemed to be showing signs of breaking through to the 6th layer of core forging stage. I was greedy for merit and advanced rashly, but I almost forgot the time. I'm really ashamed. Taoist Xianbei smiled bitterly and said, "Junior brother Lu, we are the ones who should be ashamed. The few of us were also the best among the third-generation disciples, but none of us reached such a high level of cultivation at your age. What you said really makes us feel ashamed." Taoist Xianbei's words seemed to have touched the bottom of everyone's heart. They couldn't help but nod with deep emotions. Yes, yes. Lu Ping didn't want to waste his breath on this topic. He changed the topic and asked, "Who will be leading us to Jingzhe Island this time?" "Jingzhe Island? What is that place?" Taoist Xian Zhu asked, his 2 bright eyes twinkling. Lu Ping looked at Taoist Xian Tian with a puzzled expression. He found that even Taoist Xian Tian had a puzzled expression. Only then did he realize that no one knew that Tianxiang Laozu's base in the fallen secret realm was on Jingzhe Island. Jingzhe Island is our sect's base in a secret realm in the East Sea. It is overseen by our sect's Tianxiang Laozu. Without waiting for Lu Ping to explain, a voice sounded in everyone's ears. When everyone turned to look, they saw a middle-aged cultivator walking towards them at a seemingly slow pace. Martial Uncle Xian Sen. Everyone bowed to the newcomer. Chapter 494. On Frost Island. Fang Xia and Fang Wei were brought to the depths of a mine by a disciple who looked like a supervisor. The brother and sister looked at the burly miner who was dressed in rags and looked like a beggar. They scanned his body with their divine senses a few times, but there was no trace of Dharma power. It was as if he was immortal. The burly man fiddled with the jade token in his hand for a moment before raising his head to look at the pair of twins with a playful expression. "Are you two from Huangli Island?" Although Fang Xia did not know why spiritual master who would give a jade token to a mortal, she did not neglect him. Instead she said, "That's right. Good, come with me." Hearing Fang Xia's answer, the strong man felt a little excited for some reason. He turned around and walked towards the depths of the mine. Fang Xia and Fang Wei looked at each other and followed behind the man. But after a few steps, they suddenly realized that their magic power had lost connection with the concentric core space. It was like a rootless duckweed, evaporating completely in an instant. Fang Xia and Fang Wei exclaimed and hurriedly retreated. But they heard the strong man laugh. "You're already here, where do you think you're going?" Whoosh whoosh. The sound of the wind could be heard. The sturdy man actually attacked the 2 siblings with his bare hands. The 2 tried to block, but they didn't have any magic power. How could they be a match for the sturdy man? They were punched to the ground by the sturdy man. At this time 2 girls came out from one of the tunnels and saw the 2 people on the ground. One of them laughed and said, "Senior Martial Brother Zhong, why did you knock them out? Aren't you afraid that Junior Martial Brother Lu will come after you in the future?" The burly man laughed and said, "The 2 of them are only candidates for Junior Brother Lu to pass my test. Junior Brother Lu's standards are very high, and it's extremely difficult for ordinary disciples to enter his eyes. Otherwise he wouldn't be without a registered disciple until now. It's not that easy to learn my telepathic sword. If I don't teach them a lesson, how can it be done? But this is also good. The mining mission for the remaining year is settled. In the back mountain of Heaven Spirit Mountain, Wang Qi's hair stood on end as he was stared at by an ordinary-looking woodcutter. The woodcutter didn't seem to have any Zhenyuan fluctuations, but his gaze was like a knife, cutting across Wang Qi's body, leaving him at a loss. After a long time, he finally looked away from the woodcutter, and a cold voice that sounded like metal rubbing against metal rang out, "You are Wang Qi?" Wang Qi was startled. "I am indeed Wang Qi." "All right then." The woodcutter threw a shoulder pole and an axe on the ground and said, "Pick these things up." Wang Qi hesitated for a moment before asking, "May I ask what this, senior wants me to do?" The woodcutter narrowed his eyes and stared blankly at Wang Qi, not saying a word. Wang Qi had no choice but to bend down and pick up the shoulder pole and axe on the ground. However, the moment the shoulder pole and axe touched his hands, Wang Qi's protective arcane energy seemed to be suddenly sealed. Wang Qi was shocked and quickly threw the things in his hands on the ground. However, he still couldn't circulate any arcane energy in his body. It was as if his heart core space had been completely cut off from his bloodline. Wang Qi suppressed the shock in his heart and looked coldly at the person in front of him. "What did you do? Why did my cultivation suddenly disappear?" The woodcutter was still expressionless, but a hint of admiration flashed across his eyes. He said coldly, "Pick up your shoulder pole and axe. For the time being, you will be an obedient woodcutter under me." Watching the woodcutter leave, Wang Qi's expression changed. No one knew what he was thinking, but in the end he still picked up the things on the ground and followed the woodcutter. In front of the pill pavilion, an alchemy apprentice guarding the door looked at the cowering disciple with disdain. He had seen many people like this. Cultivation was difficult, and many cultivators in the sect wanted to go to the pill pavilion to see if they could learn some alchemy skills after they had some achievements. However, they didn't know that it was so easy to become an alchemy master. Most people would be badly injured in the pill pavilion, and the cultivation resources that they had accumulated over decades would be used up in an instant. In the end, they couldn't even become an alchemy apprentice. In the end, they could only leave with their tails between their legs. Thinking about this, the alchemy apprentice's face flashed with ridicule. He coughed and said, "Kid, what are you doing here? Do you know where this is? This is the pill pavilion. Do you know what it is? Is it a place you can enter as you please?" The cultivators in the pill pavilion smiled knowingly at this scene. They had seen this scene many times. The pill pavilion had always been strict in selecting people, and very few people could enter the pill pavilion's eyes. However, the pill pavilion's position in the sect had always been at the top, and there were many cultivators who flocked to it. However, out of 100 cultivators, 99 of them came in high spirits and left in disappointment. The cultivation resources that they had accumulated over decades were used up in the blink of an eye. Many of them wanted to cry but had no tears. The remaining one might be able to concoct a few types of pills, but it was extremely difficult for him to become an alchemist. If he didn't display a certain level of talent, and the pill pavilion spared no effort in providing him with cultivation resources, he wouldn't be able to withstand the consumption of cultivation resources if he relied solely on his own efforts. The alchemy apprentice thought that his scolding would be enough to scare this inexperienced early blood condensation cultivator away. Many mid-blood condensation cultivators and even core forging cultivators had been defeated by the pill pavilion. "You're just an early blood condensation cultivator, minor repairs. It's for your own good that you're being ordered to leave by the pill pavilion. If I wait until you use up your last spirit stone, then you'll truly be crying but have no tears." For a moment, the alchemy apprentice felt a sense of superiority in his heart. He felt that even though he was guarding the door of the pill pavilion, he was a level higher than the other cultivators in the Jinling sect. He felt a little smug. However, the scene of this early blood condensation cultivator retreating in embarrassment did not happen. Instead, the early blood condensation cultivator took out a palm-sized iron token from his pocket. He held it in his hand, his eyes evasive. He wanted to hand it over, but he didn't know what to do. As a result, the alchemy apprentice was a little displeased. "I've already made things so clear, why doesn't this early blood condensation cultivator give up? Look at his wretched appearance, he doesn't have the transcendent temperament of a pill pavilion cultivator. He's even holding an iron token in his hand. Could it be the token of a senior cultivator? I need to be more careful about this." However, such people usually end up worse off. The Pill Pavilion doesn't care about your identity. Although they're polite to these cultivators who have backing, they'll still stab them in the back and make them retreat. The alchemy apprentice's displeased expression turned into a sneer. Why aren't you leaving yet? You're holding a token in your hand. Could it be that you're another enlightened master's disciple? The cultivator quickly waved his hand and said, No, this is just an item that Master Immortal Fong Tao gave to me. He wanted me to bring it to the Pill Pavilion to take a look. The sneer on the alchemy apprentice's face deepened. Master Immortal? That's what Jinling calls some blood condensation cultivators. Looks like the cultivator behind this Pill Pavilion cultivator is just a blood condensation cultivator. Fong Tao? I've never heard of this name before. The alchemy apprentice threw away the last shred of respect he had. He directly snatched the iron token from the cultivator's hand and said, What is this? Let me see. The iron token was quite heavy in his hand. He didn't know what it was made of. There was a pill furnace carved on the front, and below the furnace was a blazing flame. The word Lu was carved on the back of the iron token. What the hell is this? The alchemy apprentice couldn't see anything special about the iron token. He sneered, You want to sneak into the Pill Pavilion with an iron token? Go back to where you came from. Several cultivators from the Pill Pavilion who were watching from the sidelines burst into laughter. Such a scene often appeared at the entrance of the Pill Pavilion. This was also a common tactic used by the Pill Pavilion's apprentice alchemists to ridicule those cultivators who thought they had some status. Don't you have status? The Pill Pavilion's status is even higher than yours. The alchemy apprentice looked at the cultivator's flushed face and curled his lips. His expression was full of disdain. He didn't even have the mood to mock the cultivator anymore. He directly threw the iron token to the ground, too lazy to even speak to the person in front of him. The cultivator hurriedly stretched out his hand to catch the iron plate. Unexpectedly, the alchemy apprentice had already predicted that he would do this. The iron plate contained a hidden force that directly broke apart the alchemy apprentice's magic power, causing the iron plate to fall to the ground even faster. However, just as the iron token was about to fall to the ground, suddenly there was a sound of, ha! A gentle force dissolved the force on the iron token. The iron token spun and flew up again, landing in the hands of a young cultivator. Everyone in the Pill Pavilion was startled and quickly bowed. Even a few cultivators who looked like they were at the core forging stage were no exception. They said in unison, Greetings, Master Tao. Master Tao ignored the people in front of him and looked at the iron token in his hand with a strange expression. Then he turned the iron token upside down and a word, Lu, appeared in front of him. Master Tao sucked in a breath of cold air and the corner of his eyes jumped a few times. But he quickly calmed down and walked in front of the somewhat uneasy cultivator. He said, Where are you from? What's your name? Who gave you this token? This time, it was the alchemy apprentice's turn to break out in a cold sweat. Even an idiot knew that he had hit an iron plate. That iron token definitely had a great background, but he really didn't know it. Faced with Master Tao's question, the cultivator's expression became even more uneasy, but he still replied in a low voice, Disciple Tianyu greets Master Tao. I came from Huangli Island. This token was given to me by Immortal Fong Tao. Huangli Island. This kid came from Huangli Island. There was a Lu behind the iron token. Could it be? The alchemy apprentice was no longer in a cold sweat. Now he only felt a chill from the bottom of his heart. His whole body was trembling. I also have a token like this. Master Tao returned the iron token to Tianyu. His words seemed to prove something. The alchemy apprentice's face was already as white as a sheet. But yours is much better than mine. The alchemy apprentice wanted to cry but no tears came out. Come in with me, Master Tao said to Tianyu. When he walked in front of the alchemy apprentice, Master Tao expressionlessly looked at the few alchemy apprentices standing at the door and said coldly, I don't want to see something like this happen again in the future. Tianyu blindly followed Master Tao into the Pill Pavilion. The alchemy apprentice from before looked as if he had just escaped from death. He sat on the steps in front of the Pill Pavilion and panted heavily. There was no trace of the temperament of a Pill Pavilion cultivator on him. Chapter 495. After the familiar light dissipated, Lu Ping, along with Daoist Shen Sen, appeared on the teleportation formation of Jianghu Island. In front of the teleportation array, there were already 3 people waiting for Lu Ping and the others. Senior brother Shen Su, Taoist Master Shen Sen's face lit up and he walked down the teleportation array. The middle-aged cultivator who was the leader of the three people who welcomed them also smiled when he saw Taoist Master Shen Sr. "Welcome, junior brother Shen Sen." Taoist Master Shen Sen sighed with emotion. "It's been decades since we last met, and senior brother Shen Su is now at the 9th level of the core forging realm. I'm sure you're not far from condensing a high-grade golden core, right?" Spiritual Master Shen Su pointed at Spiritual Master Shen Sen and said with a smile, "You're still talking about me? If we're talking about the latecomers, who among the second-generation disciples can compare to you?" Spiritual Master Shen Sen waved his hand and hurriedly said, "I merely profited from a disaster. How can I compare to senior brother's diligent cultivation?" Taoist Master Shen Su quickly said, all right, there's no need for you and me to flatter each other. Not to mention senior brother Tianlin and senior sister Tianling, even compared to senior brother Shen Feng, senior brother Shen Shan, and junior brother Xuanqing, we're too embarrassing in front of these juniors. It's just a pity for junior brother Shenin." Speaking of Li Shenin, the two of them were a bit caught up. Taoist Master Shen Su knew that now was not the time to talk about this. He hurriedly pointed at the 7 people behind him and said, "I haven't seen them for several decades. These martial nephews, I only recognize Shen Tian and Shen Hui. And this is senior brother Shen Feng's disciple, Shen Bei. I don't recognize the others." Spiritual Master Shen Sen then introduced the 3 third-generation disciples, Shen Zhu, Shen Su and Shen Yu, to Spiritual Master Shen Su. When he mentioned Spiritual Master Shen Yu, Spiritual Master Shen Su even forced himself to say a few words, "It's not easy." When Spiritual Master Shen Sen introduced Lu Ping, Spiritual Master Shen Su's expression was a little strange, but he still laughed and said, "You are martial nephew Shen Ping? It's a pity that I was in closed-door training when you left the East Sea, so I didn't get to see this young hero of our sect who shocked the world with a single brilliant feat in the Northern Alliance elixir gathering, and single-handedly established the Listening Wave Prefecture in the perished Mystery Land." Shen Tian and the others were shocked when they heard this. It was no wonder that this person could so easily stir up a storm in the North Sea's cultivation world after returning to the North Sea. It turned out that he had already made a name for himself in the East Sea. If these seniors who had cultivated for over 100 years, were still somewhat dissatisfied with Lu Ping, they now only felt admiration for him. Lu Ping on the other hand was moved. He said, "Martial uncle, you flatter me. It's just that I haven't been in the East Sea all these years. I wonder if Martial uncle has any news about the Listening Wave Island?" Lu Ping had established the Listening Wave Prefecture in the perished Mystery Land. Although Hong Ying and the others were guarding it, among the 3 of them, only Yibuki had a chance of advancing to the mid-stage core forging realm. Hong Ying and Wuyan could only reach the early-stage core forging realm at most. Fortunately, they had the help of Yu Jianghu, an alchemy master. Even though they had only agreed on 10 years' time with Lu Ping, Yu Jianghu would not just stand by and watch. Of course, the most important reason why Lu Ping could leave the East Sea without worry was because Qi Lianying had agreed to join the Listening Wave Prefecture. Although Qi Lianying's cultivation was not as good as Lu Ping's, she was stronger than Yin Shenchu, Ji Shenshen, and the others. However, after Yin Shenchu obtained the Ice Dragon Pearl, things were different. More importantly, Qi Lianying had a keen mind and knew how to run a business. The Listening Wave Prefecture would not be destroyed by the other major forces in her hands. Moreover, there was a mysterious boudoir behind her. It was just that he did not know if Yin Shenchu had already arrived at the Listening Wave Island. Sure enough, after hearing Lu Ping's question, Spiritual Master Shen Su's face showed a rather surprised expression. He said, "Don't worry, martial nephew Shen Ping. Your partner in the Listening Wave Prefecture is indeed quite capable. Although Celestial Phenomenon Laozu ordered us to take care of him, he was able to survive and even develop under the 3 forces of the Crystal Palace, the Northern Alliance and the boudoir. Even the old man has to admire him." Hearing this, Lu Ping heaved a sigh of relief. However, after hearing Spiritual Master Shen Su mention the boudoir, Lu Ping immediately became more cautious. He asked, "Why is the boudoir no longer hiding their tracks in the East Sea?" When Spiritual Master Shen Su heard Lu Ping ask about the boudoir, he seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Lu Ping strangely, then nodded and said, "After the battle at the Zhongshen cave, the boudoir was no longer a secret in the East Sea training world. After that, the boudoir simply walked to the front of the training world platform of the East Sea and went against the Crystal Palace. Now they are recognized as the 6th major sect in the East Sea." Major sect? Lu Ping's eyes narrowed. No wonder they are the closest to the Crystal Palace. There is a Dharma adept in the boudoir. But even if there is a Dharma adept with the status of the Crystal Palace among the major sects in the entire training world, the boudoir should not have such power. Could it be one of the other four major sects? Spiritual Master Xian Su sighed and said, Disciple Xian Ping is indeed quick-witted. The hidden power of the boudoir is extremely huge. When it was revealed, there were 2 Dharma adepts, 5 mid-Dharma adepts and 6 early Dharma adepts. This shocked the entire East Sea training world. Spiritual Master Xian Su looked at everyone except for Lu Ping. Even Spiritual Master Xian Sen's face was full of surprise. It was obvious that he was shocked by the huge power of the East Sea. In the entire North Sea there was only one late Dharma adept, Dao Xing Laozu. East Sea was just a newly announced sect, but there were already 13 Dharma adepts in charge of it. There was an unspoken rule in the training world. The establishment of a sect or power first required an independent status. In order to achieve this status and be recognized by the training world, the sect or power must have a Dharma adept, Laozu, in charge. Above the independent sects were the mid-sized sections. Such sects would require at least 1 mid-Dharma adept and 2 early Dharma adepts to be recognized by the cultivation world. However, to rise from a medium-sized sect to a major sect, this was a huge gap. Not only did it need 2 late Dharma adepts, but it also needed to have more than 10 Dharma adepts in the entire sect. Only then would it have the right to be recognized by the major sects in the training world. Once a sect rose to become a major sect, then this sect would truly have the right to speak in the entire training world. Only then would it be recognized by the major sects in the training world, and only then would it have a long-distance teleporter that connected to the various regions of the training world. In the past there was only one major sect in the North Sea, the Failing Sect. It had 3 great adepts, 7 mid-Dharma adepts and 8 early Dharma adepts. As such, the Failing Sect was able to gain the recognition of the entire training world and had the only teleporter that connected the entire North Sea to the Central Plains. After the Failing Sect was destroyed, the Central Plains was cut off from the North Sea. The North Sea was already barren, and being almost cut off from the rest of the world made matters worse. The North Sea training world quickly declined. Fortunately, the East Sea training world was not far from the North Sea, and the teleporter was not shut down. In the end, the North Sea training world still maintained a channel for communication. Only perfected Xian Su continued, the boudoir sect was established in these few years. It is said that the sect's base is in a region of the sea near the East Sea Demon Clan. That was originally the territory of the Crystal Palace, but it was chased out by the boudoir sect, and very quickly, a large spirit vein was gathered there. The Crystal Palace originally wanted to launch a large-scale attack, but unexpectedly the other 4 sects held them back. As for how they did it, I'm not too sure. Although the Crystal Palace is the most powerful sect in the East Sea, it could not withstand the alliance of the 5 sections. In the end, the Crystal Palace still suffered such a loss. Of course, Lu Ping knew that things would not be so simple, but now was not the time to discuss this. One only needed to look at Shen Tian and the others behind him to know that they did not know anything about this at all. When Lu Ping and perfected Xian Su were talking about this, they were actually ignored. Lu Ping turned around and looked at the 2 people behind perfected Xian Su. He smiled and said, Senior brother Shen Huan, Senior brother Shen Peng, I haven't seen you 2 for a few years. How are you? These 2 people were Su Ziping and Wei Zihen, who had adventured on Fei Ling Island with Lu Ping back then. Now, the 2 of them were already at the 3rd layer of the core forging realm and were about to advance to the middle stage of the core forging realm. If the 2 of them returned to Tianling Mountain with their cultivation time, they would be second only to Yao Yong. They would be elite disciples at the same level as Chen Lian and Du Feng. It was only because they had always been cultivating in the East Sea that they were not well known in the sect. Perfected Xian Su seemed to have realized something. He smiled and introduced them. Previously we were too busy talking about some of the major events in the East Sea and forgot about these 2 fellows. I didn't expect that martial nephew Xian Ping would actually know them. Perfected Xian Sen smiled and said, It is all thanks to senior brother's explanation. In the North Sea we were ignorant and inexperienced. These 2 martial nephews don't seem to have cultivated for a long time, but they have such cultivation. Could it be that they are senior brother's disciples? Perfected Xian Su waved his hand and said, These 2 good-for-nothings are far inferior to martial nephew Xian Ping and the others. After saying that, he waved his hand and said to Su Xianping and Wei Xuanhuan, Quickly greet your martial uncle Xian Sen and the other senior brothers and sisters. Everyone greeted each other again. At this time, another cultivator walked over from afar and said with a smile, "Senior brother Shen-sen, senior brother Shen-su, why are you two still here? Martial uncle is still waiting." Perfected Shen-su slapped his head and said, "Look at my memory. I was so focused on talking to everyone that I forgot that teacher is still waiting. Junior brother Shen-sen, let's go and greet teacher first before catching up." Perfected Shen-sen smiled and nodded. He then pointed at the newcomer and said, "This is your martial uncle Shen Tong. He and senior brother Shen Su have always been with martial uncle Tian Xiang in the East Sea. You should quickly greet them." Perfected Shen Tong was a 7th layer core forging cultivator. When he heard that, he waved his hand and said with a smile, "We are all family, there is no need to be so polite. We should go first. In a while there will be important figures from our sect coming. At that time we will have to go out and greet them." Lu Ping's heart moved. He turned to Perfected Shen Su and asked in a low voice, "Martial uncle, is that person returning to the sect?" Although Lu Ping's voice was low, everyone still heard it. Shen Tong, Shen Sen, Shen Tian, and Shen Hui all knew who Lu Ping was talking about. However, Shen Bei and the other 3 were confused. Perfected Shen Su was startled. Only now did he realize that Lu Ping was a direct disciple of Chonghua sect. He thought about the grudge between the 3 people in the sect from 60 years ago and understood why the sect sent Lu Ping to the East Sea. After thinking for a while, he said in a low voice, "This time, I'm afraid martial nephew will have to suffer a little." Lu Ping calmly nodded. As expected, his expression surprised Perfected Shen Su. Chapter 496. When Sage Shen Su saw Lu Ping's calm expression, he secretly wondered if Lu Ping had already received a hint from someone else. He originally wanted to open his mouth to ask, but when he remembered that this was a battle between Tian Ling, Tian Lin and Tian Qin, his heart instinctively shuddered. It was as if he had opened a dusty memory and saw something bad inside. Sage Shen Su wisely chose to shut his mouth. However, although enlightened Master Shen Su curbed his curiosity, Lu Ping suddenly thought of something. He asked enlightened Master Shen Su again, "Martial uncle, have my 3 senior martial sisters, Shen Ru, Shen Ji and Shen Jing, returned to Jingzhi Island?" Before Sage Shen Su could answer, Sage Shen Tong turned around and said with a smile, "I know these 3 martial nephews. Back then, when they came to Jingling Island, they said that they were ordered by senior sister Tianling to travel to the Eastern Sea. After meeting martial uncle Tian Xiang, they left. After that, every 2 to 3 years, the 3 of them would return to Jingling Island. It seemed that they wanted to pass some news to the Northern Sea. Previously, the sound transmission sword that informed them to return to Jingling Island was also sent by me. There were no mistakes. I believe that they will return to Jingling Island in 1 or 2 days." Only then did Lu Ping relax. He followed everyone to a cave abode on Jingling Island. As soon as they entered the cave abode, everyone's breathing suddenly stagnated. The earth-shattering spiritual energy in the cave abode rose and fell like a tide. Sage Shen Sen raised his eyebrows slightly and a hint of joy appeared on his face. He looked at Sage Shen Sen and Sage Shen Tong with a questioning gaze. When he saw Sage Shen Su smile at him, the joy on Sage Shen Sen's face became even more intense. Lu Ping and the others didn't know why. At first, they thought it was because a high-quality spirit vein had been connected to the cave dwelling, causing the density of the spiritual energy in the cave dwelling to increase. But soon they realized that wasn't the case. As the violent spiritual energy seeped into the cave dwelling, the pressure in the cave dwelling grew stronger. The 3 late-stage core forging cultivators, Shen Su, Shen Sen and Shen Tong, led the way walking side by side. From behind them, Lu Ping could clearly see that enlightened Masters Shen Su and Shen Sen were both in the 9th layer of the core forging realm. Their footsteps were light and fast and their clothes didn't move in the slightest. Shen Tong, on the other hand, was only in the 7th layer of the core forging realm. Although his speed could keep up with the other 2, his clothes were swaying left and right under the violent spiritual energy. Behind the 3 was Lu Ping. Originally, Lu Ping was the last to walk, but before entering the cave, Lu Ping was thinking about something. Although the spiritual energy in the cave was violent and the pressure was heavy, it didn't have any evil intentions. Therefore Lu Ping didn't think too much and walked straight in. The violent spiritual energy and the heavy pressure caused Shen Tian, Shen Hui, Shen Bei, Shen Su, Shen Zhu, and Shen Yu to walk forward with difficulty. The 6 of them didn't dare to open their mouths to breathe, because once they did, the violent spiritual energy would directly pour into their mouths. It could choke a core-forging realm cultivator to the point of coughing. Looking at the three martial uncles walking in front of them, the six of them didn't dare to use any magic treasures or astral chi in front of them. They could only constantly circulate the true essence in their bodies through their blood vessels. At the same time, they spread their divine sense around their bodies, trying to resist the pressure coming from the depths of the cave. At this moment, the strength of each person was revealed. Taoist Master Shen walked at the very front, but he was half covered, trying to block a part of the pressure for Taoist Master Shen Hui, who was following closely behind him. Even so, the husband and wife were 3 feet ahead of the others, but with every step they took, their bodies would sway. 3 feet behind them were Taoist Shen Bei and Taoist Shen Yu, walking side by side. The two of them were only half a step apart, but with every step they took, their bodies swayed. Their clothes were tightly wrapped around their bodies under the influence of the violent spiritual energy. A huge force constantly pushed the two of them back. Taoist Shen Bei and Taoist Shen Yu had to spend a lot of strength to stabilize their steps. Behind them were Taoist Shen Su and Taoist Shen Zhu. Their bodies were slightly bent forward as if they were walking against the wind. Sweat could be seen on their temples. The two of them looked at the 4 people walking in front of them with a trace of unwillingness and helplessness. At this time, Taoist Shen Su seemed to have thought of something. Her face suddenly revealed a trace of joy, and she turned her head to look behind her. Taoist Shen Zhu was puzzled as to why Taoist Shen Su would laugh. Seeing her turn around, she immediately understood. Lu Ping was walking at the back. At the same time, she also understood why Taoist Shen Su would laugh. Although Lu Ping was walking at the back, he was not too far away. At this time, he still had not caught up. Clearly, this famous water sword immortal in the North Sea was not necessarily much stronger than them. Although Taoist Shen Zhu disdained Taoist Shen Su's mentality of looking backward, she still couldn't help but look back. However, just as Taoist Shen Zhu turned her head, she happened to see a figure flash past her eyes. When Taoist Shen Zhu looked carefully, her eyes widened. Who else could it be but Lu Ping? But why was he able to walk so fast? He simply ignored the violent spiritual energy and invisible pressure in the cave mansion. Moreover, he seemed to be in a hurry, as if he didn't care about what was happening in the cave mansion. Taoist Shen Zhu turned her head to look. The smile on Taoist Shen Su's face had long frozen. Looking at the figure who had already walked in front of Taoist Shen Yu and Taoist Shen Bei, Taoist Shen Su's temples suddenly twitched. She couldn't believe it, but there was a trace of helplessness. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ping overtook Taoist Shen Bei and Taoist Shen Yu. He didn't feel the fiery gazes of the two staring at him. The two glanced at each other, and at the same time, they pushed forward 3 or 4 steps. With great difficulty they were able to keep up with Lu Ping. However, Lu Ping was still moving at the same speed, while Taoist Shen Bei and Taoist Shen Yu couldn't keep up. They could only slow down and helplessly watch as Lu Ping walked in front of them. When Taoist Shen Tian heard the footsteps behind him, he curiously looked back. He saw Lu Ping in a state of absent-mindedness, catching up to Taoist Shen Tian and walking in front of Taoist Shen Tian. Taoist Shen Tian's competitive spirit was aroused. He glanced at Taoist Shen Hui behind him. Taoist Shen Hui naturally understood his meaning and nodded with a smile. Taoist Shen Tian also took 2 steps forward, leaving Taoist Shen Hui behind and keeping up with Lu Ping. Taoist Shen Tian went all out. He had been stuck at the bottleneck of the 6th layer for more than 60 years, and he was also Lao Tzu's disciple. His cultivation foundation couldn't be underestimated. For a time he was able to keep up with Lu Ping, and even the distance between him and Taoist Shen Tong and the other two had shortened by a few steps. However, after just 10 steps, Taoist Shen Tian began to gasp for breath. He couldn't keep up with Lu Ping's pace. Taoist Shen Tian gritted his teeth and walked a few more steps. Finally, he was exhausted and could only watch as Lu Ping continued to move forward. Since he couldn't catch up with Lu Ping, Taoist Shen Tian simply slowed down his pace. He slightly recovered his inner yuan and waited for Taoist Shen Hui behind him. At this time, Lu Ping was naturally thinking about Tianqin Laozu. Even if Tianqin Laozu wanted to make things difficult for him, he would never endanger his life. However, Lu Ping had Tianqin Laozu standing behind him. If Lu Ping was played by Tianqin Laozu, Lu Ping's own honor and shame were small, but Taoist Shen Tian's face was big. At this time, Lu Ping already knew that Taoist Shen Tian would take over Jinling after Taoist Guxianshan advanced to the Dharma stage. And this time he would take over as Dharma Laozu, which meant that the position of Taoist Shen Tian had risen to the position of sect leader. Although Lu Ping guessed that this might be one of the reasons why Tianqin Laozu could return to the sect, Lu Ping didn't want someone to openly obstruct him after Taoist Shen Tian became sect leader. And Tianqin Laozu's return this time might be the biggest suspect and candidate for that person. Lu Ping's thoughts turned quickly, and he only cared about moving forward. Tianqin Laozu naturally wouldn't confront Taoist Shen Tian directly. That would give the impression of discord to the people in the sect, and she wouldn't get the support of the sect. So the most likely way was to use her as a disciple. As long as she was sincere, there would naturally be many loopholes in the so-called rules of the sect. If Tianqin Laozu was determined to make things difficult for Taoist Shen Tian, with her wisdom, these methods would naturally be easy. At that time, through the hands of the disciples, she could attack Taoist Shen Tian's authority without leaving a trace, and Taoist Shen Tian could do nothing about it. Lu Ping didn't know why Tianqin Laozu had become so distorted in his heart, but he was standing in the position of Zhonghua and preparing for the worst. It was inevitable that he had some groundless fears. However, this hurried look in his heart was finally awakened by a vibration in the core space. At this time, Lu Ping discovered the violent spiritual qi that was whistling in the cave, and the heavy pressure that filled the cave. When Lu Ping looked forward, he was stunned. When did he walk behind Taoist Shen Tong? Where did senior brother Shen Tian and the others go? At this time, Taoist Shen Tong was also looking at Lu Ping in disbelief, which made Lu Ping at a loss. He thought that he had gone to the wrong place and said, "Uncle Shen Tong, I'm really sorry. I was thinking about something just now and neglected the things around me. I didn't know that I had walked here." Lu Ping didn't know that when he said these words, Taoist Shen Tong had the urge to vomit blood. Even if he was absent-minded, he could still keep up with him. In the end, Taoist Shen Tong endured it and said, "You're not lost, continue walking with me." Taoist Shen Tong turned around and continued to walk forward. His clothes were being torn by the spiritual qi. At this time, Lu Ping remembered what happened just now. When he turned his head, he saw that Taoist Shen Tian was about 10 feet behind him, walking with difficulty with Taoist Shen Hui. Behind them were Taoist Shen Bei and the others. Lu Ping knew that he had unintentionally done something wrong, but the limelight had already been revealed. If he continued to hide it, it would be stingy. So Lu Ping turned around and continued to walk forward. The 5 four-legged strange dragons in the core space roared towards the sky. A trace of their bloodline pressure was emitted through their divine sense, counteracting the pressure in the cave. Lu Ping strode forward, barely keeping up with Taoist Shen Tong as they walked deeper into the cave. Chapter 497. The last time Lu Ping saw Celestial Phenomenon Laozu, it was in a spiritual herb garden on Jingzhi Island. At that time, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu was like an old farmer. When Lu Ping saw Celestial Phenomenon Laozu again, he discovered that Celestial Phenomenon Laozu's face was purplish gold. A ball of extremely dense spiritual energy surrounded Celestial Phenomenon Laozu's body, forming a violent spiritual energy storm around it. Lu Ping didn't know why, but he discovered that Celestial Phenomenon Laozu's aura fluctuated between strong and weak, as if it was extremely unstable. After greeting Celestial Phenomenon Laozu, Lu Ping sat on the last seat in the cultivation room under Spiritual Master Shen Tong's strange gaze. At this moment, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu waved his hand, and the violent spiritual energy in the entire cave weakened. The pressure from his bloodline was also swept away, and the pressure around Lu Ping's body instantly disappeared without a trace. But even so, Lu Ping still discovered that Celestial Phenomenon Laozu's aura was still fluctuating. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu seemed to have noticed Lu Ping's gaze. He smiled at him and a thoughtful light flashed in his eyes. After that, the sound of footsteps could be heard from outside the cultivation room. Without Celestial Phenomenon Laozu's bloodline pressure and spiritual energy impact, Shen Tian and the other 5 quickly entered the cultivation room. After greeting Celestial Phenomenon Laozu, everyone sat down. At this time, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu was discussing the changes in Jinling with Taoist Shen Senator after hearing that Yuan Guang Laozu of the Crystal Palace had appeared in the Battle of Tianling Mountain. Even Celestial Phenomenon Laozu frowned. When they heard that Tiankang Laozu had appeared and forced the people of Shenling sect and Yuan Guang Laozu to retreat, Sage Shen Su and Sage Shen Tong were overjoyed. However, Tianxiang Laozu sighed softly and said, "It's a pity for Brother Tiankang. Brother Tiankang's potential might not be any lower than mine. In fact, he might even be slightly better than Tianfan and Tianshui. In the future, he might even be able to reach the late Dharma stage." However, the battle 60 years ago completely destroyed Brother Tian Kang's hopes of reaching the late Dharma stage. Although this technique allowed him to reach the mid-Dharma stage by a hair's breadth, he only had 200 years left to live. Celestial phenomenon Laozu's words caused everyone to fall silent. Taoist Xian Sen didn't want everyone to be dispirited and said, "Right now, Uncle Master's aura is extremely strong. Is he about to advance to the late Dharma stage? If Uncle Master becomes a grand cultivator, our sect will definitely have a new look. Brother Tian Kang's sacrifice for the sect is worth it." When everyone heard Taoist Xian Sen's words, their faces lit up with joy. Their eyes shone brightly as they looked at Celestial Phenomenon Laozu, who was in the center. However, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu laughed and said, "The old man started cultivation 100 years earlier than Dao Sheng, but he became a grand cultivator 100 years earlier than me. This time, even if the old man becomes a grand cultivator, he would still be slower than Dao Sheng by 200 years. What's there to be happy about? Furthermore, my lifespan is close to 1,000 years, while Dao Sheng's lifespan is less than 900 years. Even if the old man becomes a grand cultivator, he can only protect our sect for 500 years, while Dao Sheng hasn't even reached 600 years of lifespan. How can we compare?" However, Junling sect's victory over Xianling sect was not entirely due to our elder ancestor, but also due to the number of talented second and third generation disciples in our sect. Not to mention Tianlin and Tianling, before we came to Jingzha Island, Senior Gui Xianshan seemed to have already taken the last step. Senior Liang Xianfeng and Senior Chu have also condensed high-level golden essences, and it is only a matter of time before they become Dharma adepts. On the other hand, other than Feng Shutao, Xianling sect only has Lin Shuqing, who has condensed a 7th grade golden essence. The rest of the disciples are all a level lower. If we can get elder ancestors' protection for 500 years, our second-generation disciples will definitely surpass Xianling sect in all aspects. At that time, even elder ancestor Dao Sheng will not be able to hold the fort alone. Both perfected Xian Su and perfected Xian Tong were on good terms. Xian Tian and the rest were also excited. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu laughed and said, "Disciple Xian Sen, you were the most shy and honest among the second-generation disciples. I didn't expect you to say something like this now. However, the tribulation of the mid-Dharma stage is not easy to overcome. Although I have suppressed my training for almost 100 years, I have no confidence that I will be able to overcome it. Now I can no longer suppress my training. If I am not careful, the tribulation will come early. Fortunately, junior brother Tian Kong has advanced to the mid-Dharma stage. Even if the old man cannot overcome this tribulation and falls, our sect will not decline. Therefore, disciple Shensen, you are wrong when you say that our sect still has 500 years to grow. Once the old man falls, our sect can only grow as fast as possible in the remaining 200 years of junior brother Tian Kang's life. Otherwise, once junior brother Tian Kang's life runs out and he passes away, our sect will have no choice but to lie low and wait." Celestial Phenomenon Laozu's words made everyone in the training room feel a heavy sense of responsibility. Lu Ping thought about how Celestial Phenomenon Laozu's aura was unstable. The spiritual qi in the surroundings continued to surround Celestial Phenomenon Laozu. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu was in a frenzied state because he could no longer suppress his training. He could face the tribulation of the mid-Dharma stage at any time. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu chuckled and said to Shantian Jinren, who was seated below him, "This time I called you all here because there is an opportunity that might help you break through to the late core forging stage." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. After receiving Celestial Phenomenon Laozu's signal, Shantian Jinren continued, "The overseas training world holds a trade fair every 100 years. This time the trade fair is held in the East Sea, and it is located in the Fallen Secret Area, Fantasy Spirit Mountain. Every time the trade fair is held, the overseas training world will gather all kinds of treasures that have been collected over the past 100 years to exchange for what they need. There are many kinds of treasures, and among them the most important are the spirit items. Not to mention the profound level spirit items, earth level spirit items will also appear frequently. Even the heaven-level spirit items will be used as the finale items at every trade fair." Shantian Jinren was shocked when he heard the news of Shantian Jinren's advancement. In the North Sea, these spirit items were kept secret by their respective sects, but here they were openly used for trade. Shantian Jinren couldn't help but ask, "Martial Uncle Shantian, how do we trade these spirit items? Barter with something else? If so, if we want to obtain a suitable spirit item, I'm afraid we will have to pay a high price." Xiantianjinren was very satisfied with the shock his news brought to the juniors. He smiled and said, "Spirit items are very precious. Although they are not as important as the cultivators of the North Sea, as rich as the East Sea, they are not easily taken out to show to others." Xiantianjinren paused, then continued, "There are two ways to obtain a spirit item at the trade fair. The first is to bid with high-grade spirit stones, and the highest bidder wins. Of course, mid-grade and low-grade spirit stones are not recognized at the auction. The second method is to barter. As long as you can take out an item that can interest the auctioneer, you will naturally have priority in the transaction." Everyone was silent, as if they were taking inventory of their wealth to see if they could exchange for the spirit item they needed. Even Lu Ping secretly touched the storage ring on his finger. Inside there was a batch of high-grade spirit stones obtained from the overflowing Seas Gang's treasure vault. When Xiantianjinren saw that his disciples were somewhat dispirited, he knew that they would not be able to obtain anything from the auction. Thus he smiled and said, "All of you have been at the 6th layer of the core forging realm for more than 10 years. Among the 3rd-generation disciples, you are the ones with the highest hopes of advancing to the late core forging realm. Thus this time the sect has also brought a batch of treasures. I believe that it will be enough to exchange for 3 to 5 mid-grade earth-rank spirit items. When the time comes, it will depend on which of you is lucky enough to encounter the right spirit item." Hearing this, everyone's expressions became better. After all, it was extremely difficult for them to take out a treasure that was equivalent to a mid-grade earth-rank spirit item. At this time, Xiantianjinren blinked his eyes and suddenly asked, "Martial uncle, other than the North Sea and the East Sea, there will be cultivators from other places participating in this auction?" Xiantianjinren nodded and said, "Although this is only a grand meeting of the overseas cultivators, there will be cultivators from other places participating. When the time comes, not only will there be cultivators from the Middle Earth, but also cultivators from the southern desolate, western regions, and northern ice plains will be able to see it. The Middle Earth's cultivation world. The demon race can also participate." Even Lu Ping was shocked when he heard these two pieces of news. But Xiantianjinren nodded and said, "The overseas cultivators are naturally not the only cultivators from the human race. This grand meeting was originally jointly organized by the major sects and powers of the human and demon races. Otherwise, how could it have been recognized by the human and demon races?" Xiantianjinren could not help but ask, "Isn't the demon race fighting with the human race cultivators? Since ancient times, demons and humans have never coexisted, how could they?" At this time Xiantianjinren laughed and said, "The war between the human and demon races has been going on for decades. How many times have you seen Dharma adepts participate? Even the battles between late core forging adepts are rare. As far as I know, in these past decades, there was only a few decades ago when a late Dharma adept from the Kuan clan of the East Sea attacked Skyrend's Silver Sword Island out of anger because of the death of his grandson. However, after Skyrend and the Northern Alliance joined forces to counterattack, the Kuan clan adept automatically withdrew from the Silver Sword Island. This is the only case of a conflict between the Dharma adepts of the human and demon races. The fall of the Silver Sword Island all those years ago had a lot to do with Lu Ping. Lu Ping had also benefited greatly from the Kuan that had died at his hands. Just the low-grade earth-level Tsanglan water alone had 3 portions. All these years, Lu Ping had been using the spirit water alchemy technique to refine spirit pills. There was also the 7 treasures Thunder Gourd, which had been repeatedly used by Lu Ping to make pills. Lu Ping thought back to the time when Yan Wujiu had directly barged into the Northern Alliance elixir-gathering spatial instrument. At that time, the alchemy grandmaster of the Northern Alliance, Hongya Laozu, had also treated him with respect. Although this was partly because Yan Wujiu himself was an alchemy grandmaster, it was clear that the high-level adepts of the human and demon races had a tacit understanding with each other. At this moment, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu opened his mouth and said, "Although the trade fair is aimed at core forging cultivators, if you want to enter, you must be an independent sect or clan recognized by the cultivation world. You must also be led by our sect's Dharma idol Laozu. Our sect is considered a medium-sized sect in the cultivation world. Originally the old man wanted to lead you there, but now that the old man has made a breakthrough, he cannot go. Therefore this time your martial uncle Tianqin will lead you there." Martial uncle Tianqin? Daoist Shenbei and the others were only confused for a moment before they reacted. Everyone had different expressions on their faces, but these cultivators who had advanced to the core forging stage 60 or 70 years ago naturally knew this person's name. Moreover, when the 6 of them heard this name, they all turned to look at Lu Ping. Chapter 498. At this moment, celestial phenomenon Laozu suddenly smiled and said, "They're here. Xiansu, go and greet them on my behalf." Taoist Xiansu's expression brightened and he walked out of the cave residence with Taoist Xiansen and Taoist Xiantong, as well as Lu Ping and the others. Among the third-generation disciples besides Lu Ping, everyone was abnormally excited. Not only was Jinling going to have another Fa Xiang Laozu, but more importantly Lyra Laozu's legend in Jinling was too eye-catching. The 3 most outstanding disciples of the second generation were about to meet again. Everyone was even looking forward to what kind of story would be written when the 3 met again. This faint expectation even overshadowed the worry of whether the 3 would be able to unite and revitalize Jinling. In fact, it wasn't just Taoist Shen Tian and the others who thought this way. Even Taoist Shen Tong, who had only cultivated for a short period of time among the second-generation disciples, had the same thought. After all, when the 3 of them fell out, Taoist Shen Tong was only a middle-core forging junior brother. It was just that he now had the air of an elder, so he couldn't easily show his thoughts on his face like the third-generation disciples. Only Taoist Shen Su and Taoist Shen Sen, who had cultivated for a similar period of time as the 3 of them, would have a more rational view of Lyra Laozu's return. Therefore, from the beginning, the 2 of them had a somewhat solemn expression. Besides Lu Ping, Taoist Shen Tian and Taoist Shen Hui were also somewhat nervous. At this time, Lu Ping already knew that Taoist Shen Hui was actually Lyra Laozu's eldest disciple. When Taoist Shen Qin broke out of the sect, Taoist Shen Hui and Taoist Shen Tian became Tao companions. At that time, Taoist Shen Qin had 4 disciples: Shen Hui, Shen Meng, Shen Yin and Shen Shu. Only Taoist Shen Hui stayed behind, the other 3 went to the East Sea. Taoist Shen Hui had always felt guilty about this. Fortunately, Taoist Shen Tian and Taoist Shen Hui's relationship wasn't affected by their masters falling out. Tianlin Laozu also treated Taoist Shen Hui and his disciples equally. It was just that Taoist Shen Hui was a bit afraid of Taoist Shen Ling's strict personality. Taoist Shen Tianling rarely followed Taoist Shen Tian to pay his respects. Just as everyone left the cave residence, Taoist Shen Su and Taoist Shen Sen simultaneously looked towards the south. At this time, Lu Ping's originally calm expression suddenly became serious, even faintly revealing a trace of anger. At this time, Taoist Shen Tong's face lit up with joy and said, "Ah, senior sister Tianqin is coming." Lu Ping looked up and his eyes shone with azure light. Several rays of light streaked across the southern sky. At this time, the island's protective formation suddenly changed and a passage slowly opened. At this time, the void in front of Lu Ping and the others fluctuated and a green portal suddenly appeared. Taoist Mei, who Lu Ping had seen at Li Xiuju's apprenticeship ceremony, now Jinling Mei Tianqin Laozu, appeared in front of everyone. Taoist Shen Su let out a long laugh and said, "Junior sister Tianqin, we haven't seen each other for dozens of years. In the end, you are still ahead of us. Now even I, as your senior brother, will have to call you Laozu." Tianqin Laozu's grave and stern face showed a slight smile and said, "Senior brother Shen Su, we haven't seen each other for many years, but you are still as elegant as before." Taoist Shen Su repeatedly waved his hand and said, "I can't compare to you guys, I can't compare to you guys." At this time, Taoist Shen Sen and Taoist Shen Tong also came forward to greet Tianqin Laozu and called her senior sister. Tianqin Laozu looked at Taoist Shen Sen and said with a tone of admiration, "After dozens of years, I didn't think that junior brother Shen Sen's cultivation would already reach this level." After saying that, he seemed to have thought of something and said with a mocking tone, "I wonder how many of those senior and junior brothers who ridiculed junior brother Shen Sen can advance to the late stage of core forging, and how many of them can reach junior brother Shen Sen's height." Taoist Shen Sen's expression didn't change and said, "This little brother was just lucky, it can also be considered a blessing in disguise." "Lucky?" Tianqin Laozu sneered and said, "At our level of cultivation, how can there not be some luck for every step forward? How can those people who only know how to make sarcastic remarks behind our backs not be lucky enough to reach this point?" Taoist Shen Sen smiled bitterly and didn't reply. Tianqin Laozu turned around and looked at Taoist Shen Tong, who was chuckling and frowned and said, "Junior brother Shen Tong, you have never liked to cultivate. To be honest, I am very happy that you can reach this point. However, if you are still as lazy as you were 10 years ago, just wait for your lifespan to run out and you will pass away in meditation." Taoist Shen Tong's chuckling immediately turned into a mocking laugh. As they spoke, a few rays of light in the sky also began to descend towards Jianghu Island. At this moment, a cold snort was heard and the rays of light that had just descended immediately scattered. Tianqin Laozu looked on coldly from the side and remained silent. Taoist Shen Sen and Shen Su's expressions changed and Taoist Shen Sen said anxiously, "Martial nephew Lu, wait." However, it was already too late. Lu Ping's cold snort entered the ears of the cultivators and the rays of light like a clap of thunder. Just as the rays of light were about to collapse, Lu Ping had already turned into 4 figures and rushed towards the 4 rays of light. A few exclamations suddenly sounded and one of them said in shock, "Brother Lu? Why are you here?" Lu Ping's figure flashed back and the 4 cultivators, 3 women and 1 man, had already been snatched out of the rays of light by Lu Ping. At this moment, the rays of light had also dispersed, revealing 5 female cultivators. The one in front was Zhu Xianmeng and the 2 beside her were also seen by Lu Ping at Li Xiuju's apprenticeship ceremony, but he did not recognize them. Behind them was Chu Ting who had just exclaimed, and behind her was Li Xiuju who had an equally shocked expression. Seeing that everyone was silent, Chu Ting looked at the gloomy Lu Ping and had to speak again. "Brother Lu, you are also Jinling? You hit it very well. Could it be that Brother Lu already knew something?" Chu Ting was quick-witted and immediately realized something. Zhu Xianmeng was also surprised. However, she had already guessed that Lu Ping was Jinling's disciple through Liang Xianfeng. For some unknown reason, Zhu Xianmeng had never revealed Lu Ping's identity. However, Zhu Xianmeng was shocked by Lu Ping's cultivation. When Zhu Xianmeng first met Lu Ping was only at the first stage of core forging. At that time, Zhu Xianmeng was already at the 4th stage of core forging. Now, Zhu Xianmeng's cultivation had advanced to the peak of the 5th stage of core forging, but Lu Ping's cultivation had already caught up. However, this wasn't what surprised Zhu Xianmeng the most. What shocked her the most was that Lu Ping had just fought against 5 people by himself. In the blink of an eye, he had cleanly snatched the 3 women and 1 man away from them. Although Zhu Xianmeng already knew that Lu Ping's strength far surpassed cultivators of the same level, there was no doubt that the current him was much more skillful than before. One had to know that among the 5 of them, aside from the youngest 5th junior sister, Chu Ting, and 6th junior sister, Li Xiuju, who were only at the 3rd stage of core forging, 3rd junior sister, Xian Yan, and 4th junior sister, Xian Shu, were at the 4th stage of core forging. Although the 5 of them were no match for Lu Ping, there was no reason for them to be defeated in one move. Lu Ping's move not only shocked Zhu Xianmeng and the others, but it also shocked Shen Tian and the others. Tianqin Laozu didn't say anything from beginning to end. Shen Su and Shen Sen wanted to say something, but when they saw the 4 people Lu Ping had snatched away, they swallowed the words in their mouths. Only spiritual master Shen Tong muttered, this guy, senior brother Shen Sen said he killed a late-stage core forging beast cultivator. I didn't believe it, but now I believe it. He ignored martial uncle Tian Xiang's pressure and defeated 3 cultivators of the same level in one move. The strength, even I. When Tianqin Laozu heard spiritual master Shen Tong's words, a strange light flashed in her eyes. At this moment, she naturally recognized this pill master Lu Jiao, who had been in and out of the listening pavilion several times. She didn't expect this famous pill master from the Northern Alliance pill gathering to be a disciple of her sect. Not bad. It's just that this method, why does it make people so unhappy? Lu Ping didn't know how his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th senior sisters met with Yin Shenchu and were even captured by Mei Shenqin Laozu. However, Lu Ping knew that his 3 senior sisters definitely knew Tianqin Laozu. However, the 3 of them had their cultivation sealed. Lu Ping knew that with the cultivation of Zhu Xianmeng and the others, they were not a match for his 3 senior sisters. Not to mention there was also Yin Shenchu. The biggest possibility was that the 5 of them would be captured by the 3 senior sisters and Yin Shenchu. Then there was only one possibility in this situation. Tianqin Laozu knew their identity, but he still captured them and sealed their cultivation. Tianqin Laozu did it on purpose, he was targeting Master. After understanding this, Lu Ping was naturally furious. He attacked Zhu Xianmeng and the others as soon as they landed on Jianghu Island. He wasn't afraid that Tianqin Laozu would interfere. Even if Zhu Xianmeng knew that he was Jinling's disciple, how could she know that he was Lu Tianling's disciple? Not to mention, not only were martial uncles Shen Sen and Shen Su on Jianghu Island watching, nothing on this island could escape Tianqin Laozu's eyes. The seals that Tianqin Laozu used on the 4 of them were different. Lu Ping's expression was solemn, and his eyes flashed with a green light. His divine sense surged towards the four of them, bringing forth waves of whistling sounds. Divine sense sounds, isn't this something only cultivators who have reached the peak of core forging have? This kid, his divine sense is actually so powerful. Master Xian Tong jumped up again. Master Xian Su and Master Xian Sun looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Lu Ping's expression brightened and a hint of joy flashed in his eyes. His right index finger let a ball of blue light in the air and turned it into a strange talisman. Tianqin Laozu's eyes flashed. He saw Lu Ping push the blue talisman in front of him forward and shout, "Scatter!" Second senior sister Li Xuanru's body suddenly emitted a dense green light. It was like a spider web wrapping around Li Xuanru. Just as Lu Ping's blue talisman was about to imprint on Li Xuanru's body, the green light suddenly brightened as if it wanted to stop the blue talisman from invading. A cold glint flashed across Lu Ping's eyes. He slowly pushed his right hand forward and suddenly opened his palm. The blue talisman suddenly burst out with sharp sword energies and cut the green threads one by one. At this moment, Li Xuanru's body suddenly burst out with a crystal-clear light. The protective aura around her body broke the green light in one fell swoop. "Ninth junior brother, you're here." Li Xuanru's words caused Master Xian Su and Master Xian Sen's hearts to jump. Tianqin Laozu's eyes shined with a cold light. Chapter 499. Lu Ping did not immediately answer Li Xuanru's question. Instead he asked, "Senior sister, how did you meet junior brother Yin?" At this time, Li Xuanru had already seen spiritual masters Xian Su, Xian Sen and Xian Tong as well as Xian Tian and the others. Knowing that they had already arrived at Jingzhi Island, she hurriedly went up to greet the three spiritual masters. After exchanging a few words with Xian Tian and the others, she came to Lu Ping's side. At this time, Lu Ping was examining the restrictions on third senior sister Zhao Xuanji. Li Xuanru worriedly asked, "How is it? Are you confident?" Lu Ping shook his head. "The restrictions on the three senior sisters and junior brother Yin are different. I can't say for sure that I can undo them. I can only try my best. If it really doesn't work, I can only ask senior ancestor Tianxiang." From beginning to end, the two did not look at Tianqin Laozu, let alone ask her to undo the restrictions on them. They would rather ask Tianxiang Laozu. Spiritual Master Xian Su and Spiritual Master Xian Tong could not say anything. They could only stand to the side awkwardly. Spiritual Master Xian Sen's expression changed. He sighed and cupped his hands towards Tianqin Laozu. "Senior sister, it's enough to teach these juniors a lesson. There's no need to restrain them anymore." Lu Ping had invited Spiritual Master Xian Senator. If it was not for Lu Ping's Spirit Water Meridian Nourishing Pill, Spiritual Master Xian Sen would already be a cripple. Tianqin Laozu also seemed to think highly of Spiritual Master Xian Senator. She sneered in the direction of Lu Ping and the others. Pill Master Lu Jiao. To think that I thought highly of him back then. So he is her disciple. Good, very good." Seeing that Tianqin Laozu did not answer, Taoist Master Xian Sun could only helplessly watch as Lu Ping and Li Xuanru examined the restriction on Zhao Xuanji's body. However, he also looked at Yin Xianchu. In order to cover Yin Xuanchu's escape, Lu Ping did not hesitate to fight with Taoist Master Xian Shu. However, he did not know why Yin Xianchu was together with Li Xuanru and the others. Could it be that Tianqin Laozu had already arranged this matter? While Taoist Master Xian Sen was letting his imagination run wild, Lu Ping's expression was grave as he formed 6 seals in a row. 6 blue light tendrils extended and extended around Lu Ping's palm. Lu Ping's divine sense seemed to be trying to capture something. Suddenly, a green light shone from Lu Ping's eyes. The 6 light tendrils suddenly touched 6 different parts of Zhao Xuanji's body at the same time. Then they quickly retracted. 6 green light needles were pulled out from Zhao Xuanji's body by the 6 blue light tendrils. Zhao Xuanji suddenly let out a breath. When she opened her eyes, she saw Li Xuanru and Lu Ping standing in front of her. Like Taoist Master Li Xuanru, she asked in surprise, "Ninth junior brother, why are you here?" Taoist Master Xian Tong saw that Lu Ping had consecutively removed the restriction on the two people's bodies. It must be known that this was a seal personally placed by Tianqin Laozu. Although Tianqin Laozu would not be too heavy-handed, this was still a restriction placed by Dharma Laozu. How could it be removed so easily? However, it just so happened that Lu Ping was able to remove it. Taoist Master Xian Tong could not help but murmur, "Amazing, amazing." However, he immediately felt a cold gaze piercing his body. Taoist Master Shen Tong involuntarily shrunk his body and flatteringly looked at Tianqin Laozu with a mischievous chuckle. He then stopped speaking. At this time, Li Xuanru and Zhao Xuanji were both with Lu Ping examining the restriction on Wang Xuanjing's body. After a moment, Li Xuanru saw Lu Ping frown and couldn't help but ask, "Ninth junior brother, are you confident?" Lu Ping hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. "I do have a method, but it is quite difficult. This time I will need the two senior sisters' help." When Taoist Master Shen Tian saw that Lu Ping had taken away his three senior sisters, he wanted to step forward to help. However, Taoist Master Shen Hui held his hand tightly as he looked at Tianqin Laozu. Taoist Master Shen Tian knew that Taoist Master Shen Hui was nervous and sighed in his heart. He didn't step forward to help and instead stayed by Taoist Master Shen Hui's side. At this moment, Tianqin Laozu's gaze turned to the side and saw Taoist Master Shen Hui, who was on the verge of tears. For no reason, he felt anger in his heart and then softened. He sneered, "Shen Hui, Shen Tian, do you want me, your teacher, to recognize you again?" Taoist Master Shen Hui was overjoyed, and the boulder in Taoist Master Shen Tian's heart also fell. The two hurriedly bowed to Taoist Master Shen Hui. Taoist Master Shen Hui could no longer hold back his tears. Tianqin Laozu could tell that Taoist Master Shen Hui had not given birth. He glanced at Taoist Master Shen Tian and coldly said, "It's been 60 years and you still haven't given birth to a child. You really are useless." Taoist Master Shen Tian's face darkened and then he smiled bitterly. This was simply unreasonable, but he didn't dare to say anything for fear of offending this temperamental martial uncle again. When Zhu Shenmeng, Shen Yan, and Shen Shu saw Taoist Master Shen Hui again, they cried tears of joy. They hadn't seen each other for decades, and the hatred they had for Taoist Master Shen Hui for not choosing to leave with Tianqin Laozu had long disappeared with Tianqin Laozu's return to Zhenling. Zhu Shenmeng also introduced Tianqin Laozu's new disciples, Chu Ting and Li Xiuzhu, to Taoist Master Shen Hui. When Taoist Master Shen Hui heard that Chu Ting had inherited Taoist Master's alchemy skills and had become an alchemy grandmaster, Taoist Master Shen Hui was overjoyed. "I didn't expect fifth junior sister to have such achievements. Now, our sect not only has Taoist Master Shen Hui, but also 7 alchemy grandmasters. In this way, our sect's Pill Pavilion strength will surpass Shenling sect's." Chu Ting was the most talented among Tianqin Laozu's disciples, and she was also the most valued by Tianqin Laozu. She was also a proud and arrogant person. As soon as she entered the core forging stage, she became one of the 24 pavilion masters in the boudoir. She took care of all the affairs on behalf of her master and handled all kinds of relationships appropriately. Originally, when Tianqin Laozu insisted on returning to Zhenling, Chu Ting was still a little conflicted, but in the end she decided to follow her master back to the North Sea. However, in her heart, there was still a trace of pride in her future fellow disciples. What kind of talent could the barren North Sea cultivate? However, the moment Chu Ting saw that Lu Ping was also a disciple of Zhenling, the trace of pride in her heart was finally shattered. Not to mention the fact that Lu Ping defeated the 5 of them in an instant as soon as they met. Even when Lu Ping disguised himself as Lu Ping and traveled the East Sea, Chu Ting had never taken advantage of Lu Ping. Now that she knew that he was a disciple of Zhenling in the North Sea, she realized that Lu Ping's power in the East Sea had other intentions. However, now that Lu Ping had suddenly become her fellow disciple, and she was no longer the pavilion master of the boudoir, Chu Ting's ability to spy on Lu Ping's plans became worthless. The sense of accomplishment naturally disappeared, and instead, there was only admiration in her heart. At this moment they heard a light shout from Lu Ping, attracting everyone's attention. Lyra Laozu's eyes revealed a trace of pride. This restriction is not something you can break just because you want to. They saw Lu Ping standing behind Wang Shenjing, while Li Xuanru and Zhao Xuanji both stood in front of Wang Shenjing. The 3 of them reached out their hands at the same time. Different from the blue true essence that Lu Ping emitted, the true essence that Li Xuanru and Zhao Xuanji emitted was like a sparkling lake. Lu Ping knew that this was a characteristic of cultivating the sea wave listening method. In the past, before he had fused the flying spirit sea dance method with it, he had also cultivated this set of methods. However, just as the 3 water-like true essence diffused out, enveloping Wang Shenjing, Wang Xuanjing's body suddenly ignited with a ghostly green flame, and Wang Xuanjing's face suddenly twisted in pain. Li Xuanru and Zhao Xuanji were so frightened that the true essence in their hands froze for a moment, but then they heard Lu Ping's urgent shout, Don't stop. Li Xuanru and Zhao Xuanji's expressions turned cold, and they clenched their teeth. The true essence in their hands became even thicker, and although it was still no match for the green flames emitting from Wang Xuanjing's body, it was still able to slightly suppress the flames. Right at this moment, a dark blue true essence suddenly spread out from Wang Xuanjing's back. The green flame and the dark blue true essence collided and immediately issued a chi-chi sound. The dark blue true essence and the green flame cancelled each other out, returning to a dense cloud of spirit chi and spreading out. Wang Xuanjing's expression became more and more painful, and Tianqin Laozu sneered, "Idiot, it is possible to use water to defeat fire, but it also depends on what kind of water is water, and what kind of fire is fire." This green flame was obtained by Tianqin Laozu in the East Sea, and it was usually used for alchemy. The green flame contained a trace of Tianqin Laozu's Dharma manifestation stage true essence, and was not something that a core forging stage cultivator could easily resolve. When Tianqin Laozu captured the four of them, Wang Shenjing was the one who was the most talkative. Tianqin Laozu wanted her to suffer a great loss, so he used the green flame to seal her cultivation. Tianqin Laozu knew that the Zhonghua branch mostly cultivated water or ice attribute spells, so after being sealed by the green flame, she would inevitably suffer a lot. Of course, the green flame that sealed Wang Shenjing was only a remnant of this kind of heaven and earth spirit fire. If Lu Ping and the other two had enough true essence to support it, they could also break the green flame seal, but it would take more time and Wang Shenjing would suffer more. This time, not only Taoist Shen Xin, but even Taoist Shen Su couldn't stand it anymore. Just as he was about to plead with Tianqin Laozu, he heard Lu Ping suddenly shout. The originally dark blue true essence suddenly became even darker, and in an instant the blue true essence was dyed black, and once again rushed towards the green flame on Wang Xuanjing's body. This time there was a chi-chi sound, but it wasn't the sound of an evenly matched opponent, but the sound of the flame being annihilated. Ah! Chu Ting let out a soft cry, and then tightly covered her mouth. Looking around, she found that everyone, including Tianqin Laozu, had a look of disbelief on their faces. The green flame was a high-grade earth-step heaven and earth spirit fire. How could it be so easily suppressed by Lu Ping's true essence? Boy, what kind of heaven and earth spirit water did you refine to advance to the middle stage of core forging? Tianqin Laozu coldly asked. How could ordinary heaven and earth spirit water restrain her green flame? Moreover, this boy's true essence was far richer and purer than ordinary people. She didn't think that after not seeing him for several decades, Lu Qianling's disciple would actually produce such a talent. Taoist Wang Shenjing coughed up a mouthful of blood and cried out, "Ah, it hurts." Then she stood up and proudly looked at Tianqin Laozu. She turned around and patted Lu Ping's shoulder, giggling, "Ninth junior brother, not bad, not bad. Senior sister will owe you a favor again." Wang Shenjing took the healing pill from Lu Ping's hand and stuffed it into her mouth without hesitation. She naturally had healing pills on her body, but she knew that her junior brother's pills could only be better than hers. At this time, Lu Ping once again looked at Yin Xianchu. Lu Ping looked for a long time, then suddenly smiled. His body's protective aura was like a budding lotus flower, blooming layer by layer. When he stood on top of a 6th-grade white jade lotus aura, he casually flicked a purple flame towards Yin Xianchu. Chu Ting's eyes narrowed and she stammered, "Eastern purple chi flame?" The celestial zither ancestor's expression was so gloomy that it almost condensed into water. Chapter 500. Rumble. It was as if the entire jolting hibernation island was about to tremble. Just as Lu Ping's east-rising purple chi flame came into contact with Yin Xuanchu's imprisoned body, something seemed to explode in an instant. An enormous force surged over, and the whistling spiritual chi vortex spread out in all directions. Aside from Tianqin Laozu, the other cultivators subconsciously opened up their protective chi. They saw that the place where Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu had just stood had turned into a huge ball of mist and dust. Half of this ball of mist looked eerily white, while the other half was dark purple. Spiritual Master Shensen waved his hand to disperse the dust that filled the air. He saw that the place where Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu had stood had become two distinct regions. Behind Yin Xianchu was a layer of ice and snow, while behind Lu Ping was a heat wave formed from purple chi. The two clashed and white mist slowly rose, enveloping the two of them like a mirage. When Yin Xianchu regained his senses, he thrust his pitch-black short swords forward. However, he suddenly discovered that the two swords were abruptly sluggish, unable to stab any further. Only then did Yin Xianchu raise his head, only to see Lu Ping looking at him with a smile. "Senior brother Lu?" Yin Xianchu put away his short swords in shock and looked around. Only then did he realize that other than Fa Xiang Laozu and her disciple, there were also several Jinling core forging cultivators. Yin Xianchu subconsciously tightened his grip on the two swords in his hands, but he heard Lu Ping say with a smile, "Junior brother Yin, why aren't you on Soundwave Island? Why did you run into second senior sister and the others?" Before Yin Xianchu could say anything, Wang Xianjing, who had already suppressed her injuries, began to talk non-stop. It turned out that ever since Li Xuanru and the other two arrived in the East Sea, they had been secretly investigating the Overturned Seas gang and the Crystal Palace on their master's orders. This time, the three of them followed a clue and found a secret camp that the Overturned Seas gang had built in the perished Mystery Land. They were about to charge in when they saw Yin Xianchu charging out of the secret camp, drenched in blood. Li Xuanru and the other two naturally went up to meet them. Together with Yin Xianchu, they forced the pursuing Overturned Seas sect cultivators to retreat. However, just as the four of them had killed off the Overturned Seas sect cultivators, Tianqin Laozu and her disciple coincidentally passed by and happened to bump into them. The grudges of the previous generation had been passed down, so naturally, there wasn't much to be said between them. Thus, a conflict broke out after a few words. Tianqin Laozu's 5 female disciples all charged into battle. However, although Zhu Xianming and Xianyin were 5th-layer core forging cultivators, and Xianshu was 4th-layer core forging cultivators, Chu Ting and Li Xiuzhu were 3rd-layer core forging cultivators. On the other hand, although Wang Xianjing and Zhao Xuanji had just advanced to mid-core forging cultivators, Li Xuanru was a 6th-layer core forging expert. Together with the fierce Yin Xianchu, the four of them actually managed to beat Tianqin Laozu's 5 disciples and to retreat. Fortunately, Li Xuanru didn't lose her rationality. She repeatedly restrained her junior sisters and brothers from being ruthless. However, ever since Yin Xianchu experienced spiritual master Li Xuanin's death, every move he made was aimed at his opponent's vitals. This angered Tianqin Laozu, and coupled with the fact that her disciple was no match for Tianling Laozu's disciple, she flew into a rage out of humiliation and wanted to deal with Yin Xianchu. Fortunately, Li Xuanru's thoughts were meticulous. At the last moment she called out that Yin Xianchu was spiritual master Li Xuanin's disciple. Thus, Tianqin Laozu simply restrained the four of them one by one and handed them over to his disciples to bring them to Jianghu Island. Although Lu Ping had countless questions in his heart, now wasn't the time. Thus he said, "Senior sister, I'll send junior brother Yin off first. Senior sisters, please go and pay your respects to martial uncle Tian Xiang. I'll be there shortly." Wang Xianjing asked in confusion, "Why send junior brother Yin off? Could it be that junior brother Yin has some secret mission of our sect on this trip to the Eastern Sea?" Only then did Lu Ping realize that the 3 senior sisters didn't know that Yin Xianchu had been expelled. Thus he said, "I'll explain the details to the 3 senior sisters in a moment. For now you should go and pay your respects to martial uncle Tian Xiang." Lu Ping had already noticed that Yin Xianchu didn't want to stay here any longer. Spiritual Master Shen Sen and the others also understood and called out, "Senior Sister Tianqin, Martial Niece Xuanru, please go to the cave dwelling to chat. Martial Uncle Tian Xiang has been waiting for a long time." Lu Ping escorted Yin Xianchu out of Jianghu Island. Then he frowned and asked, "Didn't we agree to lay low on Hearing Waves Island for a few years? Why are we fighting the overflowing ocean sect now? Could it be that you haven't been to Soundwave Island all these years?" Yin Xianchu revealed a trace of surprise and said, "I've been in seclusion on Soundwave Island for 3 years. I've only traveled in the perished mystery realm for a year." Lu Ping laughed involuntarily and said, "I didn't think of that. But why did you go against the Overflowing Seas gang again? You should know that the Overflowing Seas gang is just a facade for the Crystal Palace. If you provoke the Crystal Palace, it'll be troublesome." Yin Xianchu asked, "Did the leader you left on Soundwave Island lose her memory before?" Lu Ping was shocked and asked without hesitation, "How did you know?" Yin Xianchu said, "She seems to be able to think of something at every moment these past few years. She's already secretly killed quite a few cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang. She's even killed a few cultivators from Water Crystal Palace, including 2 early-stage core forging Water Crystal Palace disciples. She's caused the subordinates you left on Soundwave Island to tremble in fear." Lu Ping was shocked and said, "Nothing happened on Soundwave Island, right?" Yin Xianchu said, "Not really. That Qi Lianying is very meticulous. Although she has been secretly assassinating the Overflowing Seas gang's cultivators, she did not reveal her whereabouts. But this time she was a little careless. The Overflowing Seas gang clearly sensed that someone was secretly targeting them, so they set up such a trap. Fortunately, after I came out of seclusion this time, I had a sudden impulse to kill a few of the Overflowing Seas gang's cultivators to avenge them when they teamed up with Ouyang Weijin to trap me. That Qi Lianying also knew that my strength was not below hers, so she agreed. But she did not want to be ambushed. If it weren't for the 3 senior sisters, I'm afraid that even if I don't die, I would have been seriously injured for years. Lu Ping said, let's stop for now. Go back and tell Qi Lianying what I said. I still have some matters to attend to. After I'm done, I will return to Soundwave Island and talk to her in detail. Yin Xianchu thought for a while and said, do you know something about Qi Lianying? She said that you once said that she might be from the North Sea. Lu Ping was startled and said, it's just a guess. I can't be sure. These things seem to be old scores from decades ago. Maybe before we can figure it out ourselves, someone will be eager to tell us. Yin Xianchu did not know what Lu Ping meant, but he could tell that Lu Ping seemed to be a little reluctant to talk about these things, so he did not probe further. Instead he said, I will bring your words back. It's just that you've been a hands-off shopkeeper all these years, and there seems to be some unresolved matters on the island. That Qi Lianying also did not make any decisions for you. It's good that you go back as soon as possible. Yin Xianchu thought for a while and asked again, is the matter you want to deal with related to the Overseas Cultivation World's auction in the illusory Spirit Island at the center of the Fallen Mystery Land? This time Lu Ping was surprised and said, you know about it too? Yin Xianchu did not think much of it and said, I'm afraid that all the core forging adepts in the entire Fallen Mystery Land already know about it. Why do you think that Qi Lianying was so determined to destroy the secret base of the Overturned Seas faction? Other than the hatred in her memory, she wanted to rob some spirit stones so that she could broaden her horizons at the illusory Spirit Islands trade fair. Lu Ping was a little confused and said, didn't they say that only Dharma Power Laozu's team can participate in the auction? Yin Xianchu laughed and said, so you still don't know about this. Although the illusory Spirit Islands trade fair also has a threshold, as long as one is a mid-core forging adept or above, they can enter the city to participate in this time's trade fair. However, to participate in the most important overseas auction, other than having to be led by an independent Dharma Power adept or above, other non-affiliated adepts who want to participate in the auction must be at least late core forging or above, and they must first put down 100 high-grade spirit stones before they can enter. Lu Ping laughed and said, it's fine if it's late core forging adepts. After all, not too many people can enter the auction, but 100 high-grade spirit stones is equivalent to 1,000,000 spirit stones. Even an ordinary mid-core forging adept may not have that much wealth. Yin Xianchu said, indeed, for ordinary core forging adepts in the East Sea, 100 high-grade spirit stones is not a small amount, let alone us North Sea adepts. So, after discussing with Qi Lianying, we will only go to illusory Spirit Island to broaden our horizons. As for the final auction, we will not go. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat and he said, that Qi Lianying should have a Dharma Power elder behind her. Did she not ask her elder for help? Yin Xianchu said in surprise, is there such a thing? Then he shook his head and said, she only said that she wanted to go to illusory Spirit Island and did not say that she would participate in the auction. Either she did not ask her elder for help or she did ask, but they did not agree. Lu Ping nodded thoughtfully. It seemed that Tianqin Laozu did not want Qi Lianying to participate in this event. He hesitated and asked, if you want to participate in the auction, I think the sect. Yin Xianchu interrupted him and said, I just want to go and see the people and scenery of illusory Spirit Island. I will not go to the auction. Lu Ping did not dwell on this matter and said, that's good. If you come across anything in illusory Spirit Island that catches your eye and needs spirit stones, don't forget to let me know. Yin Xianchu smiled and said, don't worry, with a brother like you, many treasures boy, how could I forget you? After sending off Yin Xianchu, when Lu Ping returned to the cave residence, Li Xuanru asked quietly, junior brother Yin has left? Does he have a suitable place to go? Lu Ping knew that everyone should have heard about Yin Xianchu, so he said, don't worry, he is now on junior brother's Hearing Waves Island. There is no problem for the time being. Li Xuanru nodded and said no more. Everyone in the cave residence naturally heard the conversation between the two. When Tianqin Laozu heard Hearing Waves Island, for some reason, there was a strange look in his eyes. Chapter 501. At this moment, celestial phenomenon Laozu, who was sitting at the head of the table, suddenly stretched out his hand towards Li Xuanru and the others. The spiritual qi in the cave once again set off a violent wave. Li Xuanru, Zhao Xuanji, and Wang Xuanjing's bodies suddenly trembled. Under Lu Ping's shocked gaze, a line of spiritual energy suddenly appeared on Li Xuanru's neck. Then, under the influence of the violent wave of spiritual energy, this line of spiritual energy suddenly collapsed. Lu Ping quickly looked at Zhao Xuanji and Wang Xinjing, only to see that a green true essence wedge had been pulled out from Zhao Xuanji's back. When he looked at Wang Xinjing, there was no abnormality. The green flames on Wang Xuanjing's body also didn't appear again. Lu Ping's heart trembled violently. Originally, despite Lu Ping's efforts, he had more or less broken Fa Xiang Laozu's restriction. It was impossible for him not to feel the slightest bit complacent. But now Lu Ping realized how shallow he was. The line of spiritual energy wrapped around Li Xuanru's neck and the true essence wedge that pierced Zhao Xuanji's back clearly told Lu Ping that Fa Xiang Laozu's method was far from something a small mid-core forging cultivator like him could completely break. Lu Ping suddenly felt like a basin of cold water had been poured over his head. Li Xuanru and Zhao Xuanji also looked at Tianqin Laozu with lingering fear, but they saw that Tianqin Laozu's expression was already calm, as if she had already expected that celestial phenomenon Laozu would make a move. Celestial phenomenon Laozu looked at Tianqin Laozu and said with a smile, "Although the younger generation doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, it is still commendable for you to be able to break a few restrictions. It's just that using this method on your own juniors is a bit too much." Tianqin Laozu smiled and said, "Martial uncle, it's not like you don't know that these methods are only used to teach them a lesson. When the time is up, it will naturally dissipate." Celestial phenomenon Laozu shook his head and said, "It will always make the younger generation fearful. It's better to use this technique less in the future." Tianqin Laozu saw the seriousness in Tianxiang Laozu's words and couldn't help but agree. He then continued, "Speaking of which, this disciple has lost face. Of the 4 of them, 2 of them were completely unsealed by him. For senior sister Lu to have such a disciple under her tutelage, she has truly surpassed the other disciples under me." Zhu Xianming and the others who were standing behind the celestial zither ancestor all lowered their heads. The celestial phenomenon ancestor glanced at the disciples behind the celestial zither ancestor and said in a displeased tone, "Martial uncle, are you trying to get some face from martial nephew?" Lyra Laozu didn't say anything. Celestial phenomenon Laozu didn't linger on this matter. In the entire Jinling, there was no one else other than celestial phenomenon Laozu who understood the thoughts of this disciple in front of him. Celestial phenomenon Laozu nodded at Taoist Master Xiansen and said, "Give the things to her." Taoist Master Xiansen passed a storage artifact to Tianqin Laozu and said, "Senior sister, this is a batch of treasures that our sect has prepared for these disciples. We will have to trouble senior sister for this trade fair." Tianqin Laozu's divine sense swept through the storage artifact and inadvertently glanced in the direction of Lu Ping and Lu Ping. She was a little surprised and said, "This time, our sect can be considered to have spent a lot of money to actually prepare so many treasures for them. This isn't the style of our sect. If the treasures are obtained too easily, it will inevitably cause them to feel anxious." When Lu Ping saw Tianqin Laozu glance at them, he suddenly had a thought. His intuition told him that Tianqin Laozu wanted to use the items in the storage artifact to do something. However, Lu Ping was also helpless. Since Tianqin Laozu was leading them to participate in the Fantasy Spirit Cities trade fair, the treasures supported by the sect would naturally be carried by her. Taoist Master Xiansen smiled and said, "Originally, there were still 3 to 5 third-generation disciples who had reached the 6th layer of core forging. However, this time, the sect not only valued their own accumulation, but also their contributions to the sect over the years. Therefore, it can't be considered as them reaping without sowing. Moreover, if they are lucky enough to obtain the treasures and advance to the late stage of core forging, I'm afraid that the responsibility they have to bear will be even greater." Tianqin Laozu nodded and said, "I have some understanding of the situation in the North Sea. However, if we take out so many things at once, will it have any effect on our sect?" Tianqin Laozu actually said these words to Tianxiang Laozu. However, Taoist Master Xiansen looked at Tianxiang Laozu and still continued, "Senior sister, you may not know this, but a few years ago the North Sea Cultivation World discovered a large spirit stone mine on Frost Island. This greatly alleviated the predicament of the North Sea Cultivation World's barren cultivation world." Tianqin Laozu made an "oh" sound and said, I have also heard of this in the East Sea. Taoist Master Xiansun chuckled and said, however, senior sister may not know that not far from this large spirit stone mine, our sect has also secretly discovered a medium spirit stone mine. This time Tianqin Laozu's eyes lit up. She said, there's such a thing? Taoist Master Xiansun smiled and nodded. However, Taoist Master Xian Tong hurriedly added, in the North Sea, Xianling sect is the only sect that can monopolize a medium spirit stone mine. Furthermore, Xianling sect has occupied a spirit stone mine that had once been destroyed by the demon race. This time, our sect has secretly occupied an intact spirit stone mine. Right now, senior sister Tianling has built an ice palace there and is personally standing guard there. It is absolutely safe. Taoist Master Xian Tong was about to continue when he heard Taoist Master Xian Su suddenly cough. Taoist Master Xian Tong finally realized something and embarrassedly looked at Tianqin Laozu. He saw that Tianqin Laozu was looking at Taoist Master Xian Tong with a faint smile. Taoist Master Xian Tong shuddered for no reason and subconsciously said, actually, other than Frost Island, our sect has also developed a lot in recent years. For example, Senior Uncle Tianxiang has managed Jingzha Island in the Parish Secret Realm and has accumulated a lot of wealth for our sect in the East Sea. Another example is the third-generation disciple Lu Xianping has opened up Huangli Island in the sea region where the demon race is rampaging. Now that senior brother Jiang is standing guard over it, it is also a place where treasures are gathered. Taoist Master Xian Tong's voice grew softer and softer. In the end he couldn't even see Tianxiang Laozu. He said directly, everyone please leave and make your own preparations. This Phantom City Festival is all-inclusive, and the things the sect has prepared for you will only be used to exchange for spirit items that are suitable for you. If you want to obtain anything else, it will depend on your own abilities. After everyone left, Tianxiang Laozu looked at Tianqin Laozu and smiled, are you still going to fight Tianling this time? Tianqin Laozu smiled and said, it's better for me to fight her than for others to fight her. How can others be a match for her? At least with me around, the others in our sect will be much more at ease. The other sects will also be less worried because I am fighting her. Tianxiang Laozu nodded in satisfaction and said, not bad, you are much more mature than that willful Xianqin from 60 years ago. Tianqin Laozu giggled and said, but martial nephew is really going to fight Lu Tianling? Lu Ping walked out of the cave dwelling. His interest in the Mystic Spirit City's trade fair was piqued. Since the trade fair wasn't only about spirit items, Lu Ping wanted to get a share of the spoils. However, Lu Ping also knew that the requirements to enter Mystic Spirit City weren't low. Not only was there a mid-core forging realm cultivation base, but even high-grade spirit stones had to be used. If Lu Ping wanted to get a share of the spoils, he would first have to be rich enough. Lu Ping looked through the storage ring and the golden house. After thinking for a long time, he was afraid that he would have to start with pills. Lu Ping now had a few precious pills in his hands, and they would definitely become popular items at the festival. Not to mention, the minor forging spirit pill was not any less valuable than ordinary spirit items, not to mention the heart forging pill and other heaven-defying pills. Unfortunately, although Lu Ping had a lot of rare spirit herbs on him, it was not enough to refine these rare pills. Lu Ping's cave on Jingzha Island was filled with restrictions by Lu Ping. The top-grade Linchuan cauldron was placed in front of Lu Ping, and the purple eastern flame was burning fiercely, almost swallowing the entire cauldron. This was the minor forging spirit pill that Lu Ping had gathered from Jinren Shen Senator. It was not easy for him to obtain the last 30-100-year spirit herb that he needed from Jinren Shen Senator. Although the minor forging spirit pill was a half-step Dharma pill, it was not the kind of pill that could only be produced one at a time. Instead, it was like a normal pill that could be produced in the core forging stage with 10 pills in a cauldron. With Lu Ping's current alchemy skills, although it was still difficult for him to produce a half-step Dharma pill, it was easy for him to achieve a success rate of 30 to 40%. However, at this time, Lu Ping's eyebrows were furrowed tightly, as if he had encountered a difficult problem. At this time, Lu Ping was multitasking. While he was taking care of the cauldron, he was also holding 2 jade scrolls in his hands. He was carefully examining something. One of the 2 jade scrolls contained the minor spirit forging pellets recipe that Lu Ping obtained from Clearstream Cavern Abode, and the other half of the spirit forging pellets recipe that Lu Ping obtained from Aoyu's Ice Dragon Cavern Abode. It recorded the method to concoct the spirit forging pellet before casting the purification technique. Qingjian Laozu had clearly stated in the minor forging spirit pill that the minor forging spirit pill was an imitation of the spirit forging pill. Even though Qingjin Laozu did not know the refining method of the spirit forging pill, he should have been very familiar with the refining process. When Lu Ping was refining the minor forging spirit pill, he suddenly thought of this. Thus he took out the half of the recipe and compared it. As expected, there were many similarities. Thus Lu Ping had an impulse. If he refined the minor forging spirit pill before the purification technique was used, he would follow the refining method of the minor forging spirit pill. After the purification, he would still follow the method recorded in the minor forging spirit pill. He didn't know what the effect would be. With this idea in mind, Lu Ping could no longer suppress his curiosity. He didn't think about the rarity of the dozens of rare spirit herbs in the vitality dew. He took out the Linchuan cauldron and the east-rising purple flame and began to experiment. It wasn't until Lu Ping used the spirit fire smelting purification technique that he had modified from the refining technique that the temperature in the cauldron stabilized. Only then did Lu Ping calm down a lot. He was very uncertain about his previous bold attempt, but now that it had come to this, Lu Ping could only keep going. What a brilliant pill. Very good alchemy technique. Outside Lu Ping's temporary cave, Tianqin Laozu and Taoist Shen Sen were standing together. They looked at the rising purple heat wave in the direction of Lu Ping's cave and suddenly spoke. Chapter 502. Tianqin Laozu turned to Master Shen Sen and asked, Junior Shen Sen, do you know who this kid's alchemy master is? Even if that Lu Tianling is also a genius, he can't teach such a genius in alchemy. Master Shen Sen laughed bitterly and automatically filtered the second half of the sentence. He said, this kid's alchemy skills should be from another inheritance and not from the Elixir Pavilion. I heard that he had a fortuitous encounter and worked very hard, but he never entered the Elixir Pavilion until he became a master alchemist. Only then did he manage a high-grade cauldron in the Elixir Pavilion. However, he seems to have a better cauldron on him. This cauldron has always been in the Elixir Pavilion and is rarely used. Oh, Tianqin Laozu asked curiously, Master didn't intervene because of this. Shen Sen Laozu laughed bitterly. Why not? I just don't know what this kid said to Master Qianlu, but the rules of the Elixir Pavilion have never been applied to him. Tianqin Laozu nodded, but the curiosity in her eyes grew stronger. Master Shen Sen couldn't help but laugh bitterly. He had seen this kind of curiosity many times in the past. Every time this kind of curiosity appeared on a person's face, the person she was paying attention to would not be at peace. Among the second-generation disciples, other than Lu Tianling, even Jiang Tianlin had suffered under her pranks. The cauldron is about to be opened. Tianqin Laozu murmured. It's a pill that's half a step into the transcendence stage. Looks like it's not a single pill, but I wonder what the success rate is. Tianqin Laozu suddenly thought of something and turned to Master Shen Sr., the Fantasy City conference is around the corner, but this kid is cultivating in seclusion, and the pill he's refining is of such a high grade. I think he must have a request during the conference. I just don't know what kind of pill he's refining. Since this kid is our sect's master alchemist, I think Junior Shensen should know some of his skills. Junior Shensen, do you know what his best pill is? Spiritual Master Shensen shook his head and said, although this brat isn't in the pill pavilion, he has quite a few famous elixirs. Among them, the most famous one is the spirit water alchemy technique. I heard that it's a rather miraculous alchemy technique. Back then, my bloodline was broken by a secret technique of the demon clan. If it wasn't for this spirit water meridian nourishing pill that he refined, my cultivation would have been crippled long ago, not to mention benefiting from the disaster and advancing further. The Sky Zither ancestors' interest was piqued. The technique of refining pills with spiritual water is indeed close to being lost in the cultivation world, but from what Junior Brother has said, it seems that this child's famous pill isn't just one? Taoist Master Shen Sen nodded and said, that's right. This kid also has the pill transformation technique, which happens to be superior to the blood condensing pill. Right now, almost all of our sect's blood condensing pills are in his hands. Not only that, he also seems to have a rather mysterious pill called the minor forging pill. That year, senior brother Liang Shenfeng was able to successfully refine the heavenly wind leaf with the help of this pill. After saying this, Taoist Master Shen Sen told Tianqin Laozu about how Taoist Master Shen Jing used the spirit-stealing technique to steal the essence of the spirit-forging pill. Tianqin Laozu snorted coldly and said, Shen Jing is talented, but he always wants to take shortcuts. I think that even if he refines a mid-earth level heaven and earth spirit fire, he might not be able to condense a 6th grade golden pill. Even if he refines a 6th grade golden pill, he might not be able to withstand the backlash from the secret technique of advancing to the Dharma stage. Tianqin Laozu said a few words to Taoist Master Xian Jing, then said, "About the minor forging pill, how much do you know, junior brother?" Taoist Master Xiansen shook his head and said, "I don't know much about this. Master Fornax seems to have given an order that other than the few Laozu of our sect, only the masters of the Pill Pavilion know a little about it. However, they are strictly forbidden from spreading it. If it weren't for the fact that my cultivation has improved greatly and my position in the sect has risen, I'm afraid that I wouldn't even have heard of the minor forging pill." Minor forging pill. Tianqin Laozu muttered. He actually dares to call it the minor forging pill. It seems that this kid really has a lot of good stuff in his hands. It's just strange that Master didn't ask him for the pill formula. After all, since this kind of pill has been exposed, it shouldn't be something that a pill master should have. Taoist Master Xiansen decisively shut his mouth. He definitely wouldn't participate in this kind of thing. Inside the cave, Lu Ping used the spirit fire smelting purification technique. After that, he refined the minor forging pill according to the pill formula. When it came to the pill condensing stage, Lu Ping used the spirit explosion technique to explode another 8 high-grade spirit stones. Then he used the amethyst royal jelly to pour a large drop into the pill furnace. All of his divine sense was activated to maintain the 6 pills inside the pill furnace. Lu Ping suppressed the joy in his heart and opened the cauldron again. Immediately, 6 purple medicinal pellets flew out from the cauldron and flew in all directions. Lu Ping took out a jade crystal bottle, formed a few hand seals and shouted, "Collect." The 6 pills that were blocked by the surrounding restrictions suddenly seemed to be attracted by something. One by one they flew into the jade crystal bottle. Lu Ping let the eastern purple chi flame continue to roast the Linchuan cauldron. He impatiently put the jade crystal bottle under his nose and sniffed it. Then he poured out a purple pill and carefully examined it with his divine sense. His eyes shone with a green light and he carefully examined it again. Then he suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. His laughter passed through the simple restrictions that Lu Ping had placed in the cave. Within a radius of 1 to 2 miles, his laughter caused many of the Jinling disciples on the island to be confused. Only Li Xuanru, Taoist Master Xian Tian, Su Xianping, and Wei Xuanhuan had excited expressions. Because other than their close relationship with Lu Ping, everyone could also tell that Lu Ping was definitely refining an extremely rare type of pill from how Lu Ping had borrowed spirit herbs from them. This unbridled laughter clearly showed that Lu Ping had successfully refined this type of pill. On the side, Tianqin Laozu saw a trace of joy on Taoist Master Xiansen's face. She smiled and said, "Looks like junior brother has helped this kid a lot. This kid has to owe junior brother a favor for refining this type of pill. A favor from an alchemy master or even an alchemy grandmaster in the future is invaluable." Taoist Master Xiansen was in a good mood and his words were not as cautious as before. He smiled and said, "Senior sister must be joking. Who in our sect doesn't know that you have surpassed your master? After advancing to the transcendent stage, I'm afraid your alchemy skills will surpass Master Qianlu. There is no need to lower yourself to this kid's level." Tianqin Laozu smiled and did not say anything. After a while she said, "Guess what kind of pill he is refining?" In the cave, Lu Ping, who had just finished laughing, carefully looked at the 6 purple pills in the jade crystal bottle again. The reason why he was laughing so unbridled was not only because his success rate of refining half-step transcendence pills had increased, but also because there was an unwritten rule in the alchemy world. Once the success rate of refining half-step transcendence pills reached 60%, it meant that an alchemy master had the right to advance to become an alchemy grandmaster. The difficulty of refining a minor forging spirit pill was not as simple as refining a normal half-step transcendence pill. Furthermore, he had used half a set of refining methods for the spirit forging pill. An alchemy grandmaster. Although Lu Ping had never refined a transcendence pill before, at this moment he was extremely confident that he could definitely become an alchemy grandmaster. Furthermore, it would not take long for him to advance. Another piece of news that made Lu Ping ecstatic was the 6 purple minor forging spirit pills in his hands. Originally, after refining a minor forging spirit pill, it should be as white as jade with a crystal clear surface. However, when these 6 purple pills came out of the cauldron, Lu Ping was a little nervous. He suspected that his attempt this time would end in failure. However, after Lu Ping used the alchemy testing secret technique to carefully examine the pills, he found that the effects of the minor forging spirit pill had not weakened, but had greatly increased. Lu Ping had personally come into contact with a spirit forging pellet before. No one knew better than him how strong the medicinal essence contained in a spirit forging pellet was. However, the 6 small spirit forging pellets Lu Ping concocted each contained a quarter of the medicinal essence of a spirit forging pellet. What did this mean? Back then, spiritual master Xianjing had used the spirit stealing secret technique to steal a quarter of the essence of a spirit forging pill. This caused spiritual master Liang Xianfeng to be unable to completely condense the Tianfeng leaf. After that, he had to swallow 3 minor forging spirit pills to resolve the problem. Now, the improved minor forging spirit pills in Lu Ping's hands were 3 times more effective than the minor forging spirit pills that Laozu had created. This meant that each of Lu Ping's improved minor forging spirit pills was equivalent to a quarter of the real spirit forging pill. Previously, unless a late-stage core forging cultivator encountered an embarrassing situation like spiritual master Liang Xianfeng, Laozu's minor forging spirit pills were basically ineffective for late-stage core forging cultivators, especially those who were preparing to condense a 7th-grade golden core or above. They could only be used by cultivators who had smelted heaven and earth spirit objects for the first or second time. But now, Lu Ping's modified minor forging spirit pellets might still be ineffective for late core forging realm cultivators. But if 3 pellets were taken together, it would be equivalent to 3/4 of a spirit forging pellet's effect. Although it still couldn't compare to a real spirit forging pellet, it was still valuable for late core forging realm cultivators. The only pity was that a cultivator could only take 3 of these elixirs that were half a step to the Dharma realm. Lu Ping was now sure that the minor forging spirit pills that Laozu had created were definitely related to the real spirit forging pill. Aou's half of the refining method for the spirit forging pill was also definitely true. Now, Lu Ping already knew the names of all the spirit herbs he needed to concoct the spirit forging pellet. He also had half a set of the pellet's concoction method, and he even had half a set of myriad wonder dew in the golden house. As long as Lu Ping obtained the second set of the pellet's concoction method, he would be able to concoct this famous medicinal pellet that had been lost for 4,000 years with his alchemy skills in the Grandmaster realm. Another month passed and Lu Ping concocted 6 cauldrons of medicinal pellets in the cave dwelling. On average, he concocted 1 cauldron of medicinal pellets every 5 days. All of them were precious medicinal pellets for late core forging and half-step avatar realm cultivators. Lu Ping had almost used up all the 1,000-year-old and 3,000-year-old spirit herbs he had collected over the years. He even took all the spirit herbs from his 3 senior martial sisters. Chapter 503. Before Lu Ping came to the East Sea, he did not know that he was going to participate in such a grand event. Therefore, although Lu Ping had brought almost all of his wealth with him, he could not take out treasures like the spiritual demon peach to exchange for what he needed. Therefore, he had to make the best use of the month before the grand event. The Fantasy Spirit Island was a large island in the fallen secret land. There was a huge mountain range on the Fantasy Spirit Island called the Fantasy Spirit Mountain, and the Fantasy Spirit City was located at the foot of the mountain. The Fantasy Spirit Island was the place where the only giant spiritual mine in the overseas region was located. This giant spiritual mine was distributed in the mountain range of the Fantasy Spirit Mountain. With this giant spiritual mine as the center, there were 4 other large spiritual mines on the 4 large and medium-sized islands around the Fantasy Spirit Island. Due to the amazing wealth contained in the Fantasy Spirit Island and the 4 surrounding islands, the overseas cultivators considered this place to be the center of the entire fallen secret land. They built cities on the 4 islands and jointly divided the ownership of the 5 spiritual mines. In the past, for the sake of 1 giant spiritual mine and the 4 large spiritual mines, the overseas human cultivators and the overseas demon cultivators waged a war that lasted for decades. In the end, because the fallen secret land was closer to the coastal waters of the human race had a lot of advantages. The giant spiritual mine and 2 large spiritual mines were occupied by the human race, while the other 2 large spiritual mines were taken by the demon race. Because the 3 spiritual mines that the human race took were jointly fought by the overseas human cultivators, the 3 spiritual mines were naturally divided among the overseas human cultivators after the war. However, the 9 overseas sects led by the Crystal Palace completely occupied the only giant spiritual mine. Among the 9 sects, the Crystal Palace was the only large sect and occupied the largest share of the giant spiritual mine. The other 8 large sects included the 4 sects in the East Sea, 3 in the South Sea, and the only one that belonged to the North Sea was the Fei Ling sect. After the Fei Ling sect was destroyed, its share of the giant spiritual mine was divided among the other 8 sections. The remaining 2 large spiritual mines were owned by the overseas medium-sized sects that participated in the war. However, there were 25 overseas medium-sized sects that had the right to divide these 2 large spiritual mines. Among them, the South Sea had 11, the East Sea had 10, and the North Sea had the least. Originally there were 5. Later, the Songhai sect, which was originally one sect, split into 2 sects, the Songhai sect and the Songlang sect. Naturally, their strength was greatly reduced, so they were pushed out of the 25 sections. In the end, a medium-sized sect from the East Sea replaced them, leaving the North Sea with 4 sections. There were naturally more than these 25 medium-sized sects in the entire overseas cultivation world. However, these 25 medium-sized sects were the most powerful among all the medium-sized sections. They began to copy the actions of the 9 major sects in dividing the giant spiritual mines and occupied the 2 large spiritual mines. After the start of every overseas trading event, the most fundamental reason why each sect had a Dharma manifestation cultivator to lead them was that after the auction, the Laozu of each sect would gather to discuss the redistribution of the 3 spiritual mines. And this time, the boudoir had come with a strong force. Their ultimate goal was the share that Fei Ling sect had in the giant spiritual mines. Although the boudoir's rise had the support of the 4 major sects in the East Sea, when it came to the distribution of the profits from the giant spiritual mines, Fei Ling sect's share had already been taken by the other 8 major sects for thousands of years. Now that they had to give it back, it was likely that even the 4 major sects would not be able to support them again. This time, Junling had come with a request. Junling and Xianling sect were the leaders of the North Sea cultivation world. Among the 25 medium-sized sects that had divided the 2 large spiritual mines, they were only ranked in the middle. However, after Junling's Tiankong Laozu had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, Tianlin and Tianling had advanced to the Dharma stage, and now that Tianqin Laozu had returned, Junling now had 4 mid-Dharma adepts and 5 early Dharma adepts. In total there were 9 Dharma Laozu. This level of power could be ranked in the top 10 among the 25 medium-sized sects in the overseas region. Hence, Junling also wanted to expand its share of the 2 large spiritual mines. With Tianqin Laozu in the lead, the 2 late core forging adepts, Shen Sen and Shen Su, in addition to Shen Tian, Shen Hui, Shen Ru, Shen Bei, Shen Zhu, Shen Yu, Shen Su, and Lu Ping, a total of 11 people arrived at the center of the Fallen Mystery Land, where the only large spiritual mine in the overseas region was located, Phantom City. This was also the maximum number of people that Laozu, a medium-sized sect, could bring into Phantom City. If other adepts wanted to enter Phantom City, they would first have to be at the mid-core forging stage and then pay an entrance fee of 10 high-grade spirit stones. Just these 2 requirements alone were enough to keep low-level adepts and core forging adepts out of the city. Lu Ping and the others landed 10 miles away from Phantom Spirit City. The entire Phantom Spirit City was shrouded in a huge protective array formation, and the flight prohibition array formation would take effect 10 miles away. Hence, they had no choice but to walk into the city. To Lu Ping and the others, a 10-mile journey was but a matter of moments. Very quickly, the majestic Phantom City appeared before their eyes. The 80-foot-tall city walls flashed with runes from time to time. For thousands of years, the adepts stationed in Phantom City had continuously carved various restrictive spells on the city walls to strengthen the walls. In the past, the overseas human adepts had relied on Phantom City to defend against the attacks of dozens of Dharma laws of the overseas demon clan Laozu. Thus, they had secured Phantom Island in the hands of the human clan and finally succeeded in occupying the large spiritual mine on Phantom Island. At the city gate, a late core forging adept from the Crystal Palace was leading a few adepts from other sects to check on the adepts entering and leaving Phantom City. There were a total of 8 such city gates in the entire Phantom City. The Crystal Palace adept did not show the slightest bit of surprise in front of Tianqin Laozu, who was a Dharma adept. It was obvious that there were many Dharma adepts who frequently entered Phantom City. Furthermore, as an adept from the Crystal Palace, there was no need for them to show any humility towards a Dharma adept from a medium-sized sect in the North Sea. Receiving a token that looked like jade from Tianqin Laozu, the Crystal Palace adept gave it a cursory look before returning it with both hands. Then, the group of 11 people walked into the city that was said to be the second largest in the entire East Sea. And the largest city was naturally owned by the largest sect in the East Sea, the Crystal Palace, and the name of the city was the Crystal Palace. Just as the group was about to enter the city gate, the sound of a whip suddenly came from behind Lu Ping and the others. When the group turned around to look, they saw a large, beautifully decorated carriage coming towards the city gate. The faces of Lu Ping and the others all turned ugly. Even the expressions of the adepts from the Crystal Palace who were guarding the city gate turned serious. 9 brackets extended out from the running cart in a row. Each of the brackets was fastened to the waist of a human cultivator. A cultivator who was driving the cart sat cross-legged at the front of the cart. He held a long whip in his hand. One glance was enough to tell that it was no ordinary item. He was driving the 9 human cultivators who were bound by the brackets forward. The cultivation of the 9 human adepts seemed to be imprisoned by the 9 supports around their waists. However, this did not prevent them from using their escape techniques to pull the carriage forward quickly. When they got closer, Lu Ping and the others could already see that there were 3 early-stage core forging cultivators in front of the 9 human adepts. The 6 adepts behind them were all late-stage blood condensation cultivators. The cultivator who was driving the 9 human adepts with the long whip was a mid-stage core forging cultivator from the demon race. Obviously, the cultivators in the carriage were from the demon race, and the 9 human adepts who were being pulled like livestock were Lu Ping's famous human pets of the demon race. When they arrived at the city gate, the demon cultivator who was driving the carriage jumped down from the carriage. He glanced coldly at Lu Ping and the others, then threw a scroll-like golden silk cloth into the hands of the Crystal Palace cultivator. The Crystal Palace cultivator looked coldly at the demon cultivator, then opened the silk cloth and examined it. Then he gestured for the people behind him to let the carriage pass. The demon cultivator who was driving the carriage cracked his whip as if there was no one around him. The 9 human pets exerted strength under their feet and the carriage quickly passed through the city gate and into Fantasy Spirit City. From beginning to end, Lu Ping and the others didn't say a word. When the carriage was far away, Enlightened Master Xian Su asked the Crystal Palace cultivator beside him, "Fellow Taoist, I don't know who the people in the carriage are, but they are undoubtedly from the demon race. Why are they able to enter Fantasy Spirit City?" When the Crystal Palace cultivator saw that Enlightened Master Xian Su was an expert at the 9th level of the core forging realm, his expression became much more polite. He said helplessly, "Normally, the demon race is strictly forbidden to enter Fantasy Spirit City. However, this trade event is held by the entire overseas cultivation world. Naturally, high-level cultivators from both the human and demon races can participate. If I'm not wrong, the person in the carriage just now should be an expert of the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake clan. That's the only clan among the overseas demon clans that can go against our Crystal Palace. If you see them, you'd better stay away. The Emerald Sea Spirit Snake clan is not something that a small sect like yours can afford to offend. Aren't you afraid that the demon race cultivators will stir up trouble in Fantasy Spirit City? Fantasy Spirit City is the entrance to the only large spirit mine in the overseas region." The Crystal Palace cultivator laughed coldly and said, "There are 18 Dharma Laws Laozu from various sects stationed in Fantasy Spirit City. There are 2 in the late Dharma Law stage and 8 in the mid Dharma Law stage. It's not a place that the demon race can easily get their hands on. Furthermore, when the event starts, all the Dharma Law's adepts from various sects will enter the city. This Laozu from your sect should know that there are more than 50 human Laozu in Fantasy Spirit City. Even if there are some demon Laozu, how would they dare to stir up trouble? It's just that the human race and the demon race have been at odds for a long time. Both sides are evenly matched, so we have to maintain respect for the strong demons." Sage Xian Su asked a few more questions about the situation in Fantasy Spirit City and the news of the event. Then he handed a storage bag to the Crystal Palace cultivator and said, "I'll have to trouble you to explain. Please take care of these things. When you're free, go to the city for a cup of spirit tea." The Crystal Palace cultivator exchanged some pleasantries and then took the storage bag. When Lu Ping and the others had gone far away, he opened the storage bag and took a look. There were 10 top-grade spirit stones inside. The Crystal Palace cultivator spat and said, "Those from the North Sea are really fucking poor." A cultivator at the side laughed and said, "Brother Lianshan, be content. If they were from the East Sea or the South Sea, who would look up to us gatekeepers?" The Crystal Palace cultivator said unhappily, "That's true. This is really not a good job. We can only hope that we can take advantage of those casual cultivators. It's just that those casual cultivators are probably even poorer." Chapter 504. Due to the Outer Endless Seas Trade Fair, Phantasmal Spirit City standards for entering and exiting the city had been raised. However, there were still many low-level cultivators in Phantasmal Spirit City who had heard the news and rushed to the city ahead of time. Hence, when Lu Ping and the others entered the city, although there were high-level cultivators in the core forging realm and above everywhere, the low-level blood condensation and blood refining realm cultivators still occupied more than half of the city's population. Tianqin Laozu led the group to a place where they could rent a cave abode. This was a place that the Fantasy Spirit City had already prepared for the various overseas sects to rest. Under the guidance of a core forging stage cultivator, the group arrived at a cave abode. After everyone had settled down, Tianqin Laozu instructed everyone to familiarize themselves with the Fantasy Spirit City. 3 days later, the Fantasy Spirit City's auction officially began. Everyone gathered in the cave abode, and then Tianqin Laozu disappeared without a trace. Enlightened Master Xuanxu and Enlightened Master Shensen seemed to have a plan. After bidding farewell to everyone, they left the cave abode. Enlightened Master Shentian and the others discussed for a while and decided to go to the Fantasy Spirit City to see the prosperity of the Eastern Sea. The group of 7, including second senior sister Li Xuanru, were about to leave the cave abode when they saw that Lu Ping had no intention of touring the city. Li Xuanru asked curiously, "Ninth junior brother, why aren't you going?" Lu Ping smiled. "Senior brothers and sisters, please go ahead. I still have an appointment with someone here, so I'll have to stay here for a while." Li Xuanru wanted to ask who it was, but she thought of Yin Xianchu. She knew that it was inappropriate for Yin Xianchu to mingle with everyone, so she nodded and said, "Then we'll go first." After everyone left, Lu Ping took out a sound transmission sword from his storage ring and said something into it. Then the sound transmission sword turned into a stream of light and disappeared from the Fantasy Spirit City. Lu Ping waited in the cave abode for a while and found that no sound transmission sword returned. He knew that Qi Lianying and the others had not entered the Fantasy Spirit City yet, so he left the cave abode and casually called for a guide. He casually tipped the guide a mid-grade spirit stone, then followed the joyful guide into the Fantasy Spirit City. Lu Ping had been to the Northern Alliance's Qinyuan City, and he had also been to Skyren's Silver Sword City on Silver Sword Island. These were all big cities in the entire East China Sea. The Fantasy Spirit City was known as the second biggest city in the East China Sea. Whether it was in terms of size, quantity and quality of cultivators, or the collection of cultivation resources, it surpassed the largest Qinyuan city that Lu Ping had seen before. Under the guidance of the guide, Lu Ping first replenished his almost shriveled spirit grass pouch in various shops that sold spirit grass. Lu Ping now had 2 or 3 million low-grade spirit stones. These spirit stones could play a negligible role in Lu Ping's cultivation, and it was difficult for Lu Ping to exchange these spirit stones for high-grade spirit stones, so he used them all to buy spirit grass. Unfortunately, with the opening of the Fantasy Spirit City's trade fair, the prices of spirit grasses in the shops in the city also rose. 1,000-year spirit grasses were fine, but as long as it was 3,000-year spirit grasses, cultivators would have to pay high-grade spirit stones if they wanted to buy it. Fortunately, the Fantasy Spirit City lived up to its name as one of the biggest cities in the East China Sea. The supply of spirit grass in the city was sufficient. Although the price was on the high side, if this was the North China Sea, Lu Ping would not know where to find so many spirit grass. In just half a day, Lu Ping went in and out of shops that had been selling for dozens of years. He spent 2 million low-grade spirit stones, and Lu Ping had a total of more than 50 kinds of spirit grass. In addition, Lu Ping also spent nearly 100 high-grade spirit stones to buy more than 100 precious spirit grass of 3,000 years. In less than half a day, the entire Fantasy Spirit City was filled with rumors that someone was crazily buying spirit grass. However, after some investigation, they discovered that the person buying spirit grass in these shops was not the same person, but seemed to be an unintentional act of several unrelated people. However, the more attentive people soon discovered that something was wrong. Although the face of the cultivator buying spirit grass was different in each shop, at the same time, no one had ever bought a large amount of spirit grass in 2 shops at the same time. The truth was suddenly revealed. A cultivator had changed his face and was constantly going in and out of the big shops to buy spirit grass. Moreover, he spent millions of spirit stones. Even a late core forging cultivator might not be able to do such a thing. According to the shopkeepers of these shops, the person who came was only a mid-core forging cultivator. However, his cultivation level was different. Some said he was at the 4th layer, some said he was at the 5th layer, and some even thought he was at the 6th layer. This caused the people who secretly investigated this large amount of spirit grass to be confused. In the end, they could only leave the matter unsettled. In a rather hidden alley in the fantasy spirit city, a pale-faced and weak cultivator looked at the unconscious guide boy in front of him. After erasing a part of the boy's memory, the weak cultivator thought for a moment and stuffed a mid-grade spirit stone into the boy's pocket. Then he turned around and left. After turning around, the weak scholar's body surged with waves of watery light. The weak scholar's clothes completely changed, and even his face became clear after a moment of blur. After the person walked out of the alley, Lu Ping, who had restored his true appearance, began to leisurely stroll around the fantasy spirit city. Lu Ping had been careless today. Although the fantasy spirit city was rich in cultivation resources, it was a place where crooks mixed with honest folk. In addition, the Grand Assembly was about to begin, so who knew how many spies were secretly following and monitoring him? Fortunately, Lu Ping's spiritual force was comparable to that of a 9th-stage core forging cultivator. After entering the spirit herb shop for the 3rd time, he discovered that something was wrong. Therefore, after leaving the shop, Lu Ping immediately got rid of the spies behind him. At the same time, he used the art of sea deception to change his appearance. At the same time, he used an illusion technique to temporarily confuse the guide boy, making him think that Lu Ping's appearance hadn't changed. Only then did he start to enter the big shops again. At the same time, he deliberately bought fewer spirit herbs in each shop. Therefore, it took Lu Ping half a day to walk through some of the big shops. Not long after Lu Ping left the alley, the guide boy woke up in a daze. He looked around and tried to remember why he was here. Suddenly, 2 cultivators walked into the alley. A tall cultivator grabbed the collar of the guide and asked, "Where's that person from just now?" The guide boy's face was full of fear. After hearing the person's shout, his eyes were full of confusion. The other cultivator with an expressionless face suddenly stretched out his hand and patted the guide boy's head. Then he withdrew his hand and said, "It's useless. Today's memory has been erased." The burly cultivator's face changed. He pushed the guide boy away and said with dissatisfaction, "What bad luck. It's not easy to find a fat sheep." The guide boy staggered back after being pushed by the burly cultivator. With a flick of his sleeve, the middle-grade spirit stone that Lu Ping had given him when he was unconscious fell out. The guide boy became anxious and scrambled to grab the middle-grade spirit stone on the ground. However, he saw that the spirit stone on the ground suddenly flew up and fell into the burly cultivator's hand. The burly cultivator murmured, "Damn it, I can't let this trip be in vain." The cold-faced cultivator looked at the burly cultivator with disdain and said, "Let's go. We still have to explain to the people above us. The situation in Phantom City is complicated now. It's not a place where people like us can behave atrociously. Be careful not to bump into an iron plate." The guide boy crawled on the ground. Seeing that the 2 had gone far away, he patted the dirt off his body and stood up. Then he thought of something and took out another middle-grade spirit stone from a tattered storage bag. The guide boy was immediately as happy as before. After putting away the spirit stone, he skipped to the back of the alley. Not long after the guide boy left, a figure suddenly flashed in the alley where the guide boy had been lying. This person looked in the direction where the guide boy had left, then looked at the exit of the alley. He snorted and said, "The people from the Overflowing Sea Gang are becoming more and more unscrupulous. If the Crystal Palace continues to indulge themselves, I'm afraid there will be forces that can't stand it and will come to teach them a lesson." After the figure walked back into the shadows and disappeared, a breeze blew through the alley. 3 cultivators with their faces covered in bamboo hats walked into the alley. When they arrived at the place where the guide boy had been, they paused for a moment and then walked into the depths of the alley. Lu Ping was currently standing in front of a stall. He was casually flipping through some of the items placed on the ground and bargaining with an early-stage core forging realm stall owner. After a while, it seemed that Lu Ping could not reach an agreement with the stall owner. He shook his head and stood up helplessly. He turned around and inadvertently glanced at a luxurious carriage not far away. It was this luxurious carriage that had suddenly stopped in front of a shop. Lu Ping did not care at first, but when the curtain of the luxurious carriage was lifted, he noticed something was wrong with it. So, he pretended to be interested in an item on the stall and began to bargain with the stall owner. After the luxurious carriage stopped, a cultivator in linen clothes came down from the carriage. This cultivator in linen clothes also looked well dressed, but he stood humbly beside the luxurious carriage. Then he led the young man in linen clothes, who had a better bearing than him, out of the carriage. Then the two of them walked into the shop one after another. However, Lu Ping gradually frowned. Shangguanhao, why is he here? Didn't this person escape to the Middle Earth through his family's secret teleportation array before the green sea snakes exterminated his family? The young man in linen clothes next to him seems to have a much higher status than him, but I don't know who he is. Is he an extraordinary person from the Middle Earth? Shangguanhao was the Shangguanhao who set up a trap in Qinyuan City to kill Lu Ping to vent his anger. After Lu Ping found out about it, with the help of Samling, he blocked the attack of Shangguanhao, a core forging stage cultivator. In the end, he attracted the attention of the Northern Alliance cultivators in Qinyuan City and had to retreat. However, Shangguanhao recognized Samling's identity as the Green Sea Snake during the battle. Although the Shangguan family was later exterminated by the Green Sea Snakes, Shangguanhao escaped alone. This time he returned to the East Sea. Although he did not know that the alchemist Lu Jiu was the current Lu Shenping, the name of the alchemist Lu Jiu was still there. If Shangguanhao leaked the news of the Green Sea Snakes, the Shangguan family's fate would be the same as that of the Listening Waves Island. This person cannot be left alive. Chapter 505. After the luxurious carriage left, Lu Ping slowly walked to the shop's entrance. When he looked up, he was stunned. Previously, Lu Ping had been focusing all his attention on Shangguanhao and the young man in luxurious clothes, so he didn't notice that the shop in front of him was decorated so magnificently. Moreover, the huge area of the shop clearly told the passers-by that this shop was one of the best in the entire Phantom Spirit City. The shop was a 3-story pavilion. The big plaque at the front door had 3 words that Lu Ping couldn't be more familiar with: Multi-Treasure Pavilion. When Lu Ping cultivated to the late blood refining realm, the first magic tool he bought was the landslide from the Multi-Treasure Pavilion. The Multi-Treasure Pavilion that stood in the market of Zhenling Courtyard obviously couldn't be compared to the magnificent Multi-Treasure Pavilion in front of him. However, the 2 Multi-Treasure Pavilions had too many similarities. The architectural style was similar, and the words on the plaque in front of the door were the same. Lu Ping's expression changed. Lu Ping had been to Zhenling Courtyard's Multi-Treasure Pavilion several times. Although the quality of the items sold there was high, there was nothing special about them. Therefore, it didn't attract too much attention from Lu Ping. However, after Lu Ping saw the Multi-Treasure Pavilion in front of him, he knew that things weren't that simple. Lu Ping stepped into the Multi-Treasure Pavilion. Immediately, a shop assistant greeted him and said, "Senior, please go upstairs." Lu Ping asked curiously, "Why do you want me to go upstairs as soon as I come here?" The shop assistant smiled and said, "Senior, I'm afraid you rarely come to our Multi-Treasure Pavilion. Senior is a core forging realm cultivator, and the items on the first floor are mostly prepared for blood condensation realm cultivators. I'm afraid you won't like them." After listening to the shop assistant's introduction, Lu Ping was a little interested. As he followed the shop assistant upstairs, he asked, "This is interesting. I see that this pavilion is divided into 3 floors. Is the 3rd floor only for Fa Xiang Laozu?" Although the shop assistant was only a blood condensation realm cultivator, it was obvious that he often came into contact with core forging realm cultivators. He was not the slightest bit reserved in his speech. He replied, "Senior, that's right. The 3rd floor mostly contains items that only Fa Xiang Laozu would be interested in." Lu Ping went up to the 2nd floor and saw that the 2nd floor wasn't as crowded as the 1st floor. The floor was about 100 feet in length and width, and there were many items displayed on display. There were also a dozen core forging realm cultivators browsing through the items or asking the Multi-Treasure Pavilion staff about something. Lu Ping's arrival didn't attract much attention from these cultivators. Lu Ping scanned the items on the 2nd floor with his divine sense. He was secretly amazed by the Multi-Treasure Pavilion's strength. It really lived up to its name. The east wall of the large room was filled with various kinds of mystic treasures. There were about 40 to 50 of them, and Lu Ping could clearly see the glowing mystic treasures on the surface of the mystic treasures. They were all spirit-connected mystic treasures. On the south wall were rows of pills stored in jade crystal bottles. Every 3 bottles of the same pills were placed in a small compartment, and the name and effects of the pills were written on them. In total, there were 50 to 60 small compartments, which meant there were 50 to 60 different kinds of pills for core forging realm. There were 3 bottles of each kind. There were all kinds of talismans on the west wall, and each talisman was stored in a spirit sealing box. The box had the name and use of the talisman written on it. However, after Lu Ping reached Core Forging Realm because of his abundant true essence, he rarely ran out of talismans. He also quickly mastered several spells, so he rarely used talismans. The northern side had the most artifacts, and the variety was also the most diverse. However, it was not messy. On the contrary, it was arranged in a picturesque manner. In the center of the large room, there was a huge four-sided display table. It took up a quarter of the entire pavilion, and there were many jade slips on it. All of these items were confined to the display shelves by restrictions. Unless a cultivator from the multi-treasure pavilion removed the restrictions, others could only look at them. Lu Ping said from the bottom of his heart, "Your pavilion is indeed strong. Worthy of the name multi-treasure." The shop assistant smiled and didn't have much of a reaction. Obviously, he had heard this kind of praise many times. At this time, Lu Ping suddenly asked, "I have traveled to the North Sea and have seen a few multi-treasure pavilions there. Could it be that your pavilion is also one of them?" The shop assistant smiled and said, "North Sea? I'm not too sure about that. I am only a shop assistant here and I don't know much about this pavilion." Lu Ping saw that the shop assistant was being perfunctory, so he didn't ask any more. However, he naturally had a plan in mind. Whether it was the Overflowing Seas gang, the Liao clan, or this multi-treasure pavilion, although the North Sea was barren, the cultivation world had never forgotten about it. However, seeing that the treasures in the multi-treasure pavilion were so complete, he also asked, "Does the boudoir also sell spiritual items?" The shop assistant smiled and said, "Our pavilion does sell spiritual items, but because spiritual items are rare, we don't have any in stock. Usually, a senior cultivator would place an order with us, and once we have a supply, we would notify someone to come and collect it." "Oh." Lu Ping nodded and said, "Even so, it can be seen that your pavilion is indeed incomparable to ordinary people." Lu Ping stood in front of the display table and admired a few more spirit-connected mystic treasures. He was especially interested in the two spirit-connected flying swords. However, he already had the golden scale sword, so he didn't need the other flying swords for the time being. Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Does the boudoir have a psychic treasure restriction for flying swords?" Seeing that there was a business to be done, the smile on the shop assistant's face immediately brightened. He said, "Of course we do, but what kind of psychic treasure restriction does Senior need?" Lu Ping didn't even think about it and said, "Pure water attribute, the higher the quality of the restriction, the better. Spirit stones are not a problem." The shop assistant thought for a moment and said, "Wait a moment." Then he walked to the side. A moment later, a late core forging cultivator came out of nowhere and said with a smile, "Honored guest, do you need a psychic treasure restriction for flying swords?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "That's right." The cultivator led Lu Ping to the central side of the display tower and made a few hand seals. The restriction on the surface of the tower shook and 3 jade slips flew out from the display tower and fell into the cultivator's hand. Lu Ping took a jade slip from the cultivator's hand and swept it with his divine sense. He said with regret, "Unfortunately, the psychic treasure restriction recorded in this jade slip has already been used by me." The cultivator didn't seem surprised and handed the second jade slip to Lu Ping. After Lu Ping swept it with his divine sense, he still frowned and said, "Although this psychic treasure restriction is of the water attribute, the runes on it are too shallow. I think its power is limited. Flying swords only seek to kill, so this psychic treasure restriction is not suitable." The cultivator nodded and handed over the last jade slip. He said, "You really are an expert swordsman. See if this psychic treasure restriction is suitable. If it is still not suitable, you can place an order with our pavilion. We can take a few days to collect the psychic treasure restriction you need. Once there is news, we will inform you as soon as possible." Lu Ping nodded. After sweeping the psychic treasure restriction with his divine sense, his face lit up. After carefully looking at it again, a trace of joy finally appeared on his face. He said, "This psychic treasure restriction is suitable. I want it. How much is this psychic treasure restriction worth?" The cultivator smiled and said, "It depends on how you want to buy it." Lu Ping was startled. He smiled and said, "I'd like to hear the details." The cultivator replied, "If Sire is willing to purchase it with spirit stones, then the price will be 80 high-grade spirit stones. However, Sire seems to have a sword technique psychic treasure on you. If Sire can take out one that my bountiful treasures pavilion doesn't have, then we can exchange it and Sire can save 80 high-grade spirit stones." You should know that the trade fair is about to begin, and only high-grade spirit stones can be used to trade. 80 high-grade spirit stones should be quite a fortune for sire. Lu Ping naturally understood what the other party was thinking, but he was secretly amazed by the multi-treasure pavilion's wealth. Over the years, the multi-treasure pavilion had amassed countless treasures, cultivation techniques, pellet recipes and inheritances in the cultivation world. Only a handful of sects in the entire cultivation world could match up to the multi-treasure pavilion. Unfortunately, the 2 psychic treasure restrictions on Lu Ping's golden scale sword were collected by the multi-treasure pavilion. In desperation, Lu Ping could only use another psychic treasure restriction and 20 upper-grade spirit stones to exchange for this psychic sword treasure restriction from the cultivator. The psychic treasure restriction that Lu Ping used to exchange for the golden scale sword was obtained by the Green Sea Sage. Unfortunately, this psychic treasure restriction was not suitable for sword techniques. Because of its tyrannical attack power, it was relatively rare and expensive compared to other treasure restrictions of the same grade. In desperation, Lu Ping had to add another 20 upper-grade spirit stones to exchange for this psychic sword treasure restriction from the multi-treasure pavilion. After Lu Ping came out of the multi-treasure pavilion, he already had another psychic treasure restriction and several mid and late core forging pill recipes. In addition to the psychic treasure restriction that Lu Ping exchanged for with 60 upper-grade spirit stones, the 3 mid and late core forging pill recipes were exchanged for by Lu Ping using several pill recipes that the multi-treasure pavilion didn't have. However, what made Lu Ping the happiest was the psychic treasure restriction that he had exchanged 60 upper-grade spirit stones for. This was because this psychic treasure restriction was completely suitable for Landslide. Landslide was originally Lu Ping's most tyrannical magic tool when he was in the blood condensation realm. It was also his favorite magic tool. Unfortunately, Landslide was a magic tool with dual attributes of metal and water. Moreover, under Lu Ping's deliberate modification, the water attribute within it had greatly increased. After Landslide condensed 3 ordinary psychic treasure restrictions, it was difficult to find a matching one. This caused Landslide to be unable to advance to the psychic treasure level, and its power was unable to increase. Gradually in Lu Ping's hands, it lost its previous usefulness. However, Lu Ping didn't expect the multi-treasure pavilion to have such a dual elemental spirit treasure. Not only that, the water elemental spirit treasure had an obvious advantage over the water elemental spirit treasure. This made Lu Ping inwardly marvel at the multi-treasure pavilion's strength. Originally, Lu Ping wanted to ask if the multi-treasure pavilion still had a psychic treasure restriction similar to the invisible flying sword. However, Lu Ping changed his mind. Every time he asked, it meant that his methods would be exposed in front of others. So, he suppressed the thought in his heart and returned to the Immortal's Cave. When Lu Ping arrived at the Immortal's Cave, he discovered that everyone had already returned. The atmosphere inside the Immortal's Cave was somewhat heavy. So, he asked second senior sister Li Xianru, "Senior sister, what happened?" Second senior sister's complexion was also somewhat ugly. She said, "After that person came back, he sent out a thunderbolt for no reason. Even Martial Uncle Xian Su and Xian Sen's faces didn't look good." Chapter 506. Lu Ping curiously asked, "Senior martial sister, do you know the reason?" Li Xuanru said with uncertainty, "I heard that today there are cultivators frantically buying spirit herbs in Fantasy Spirit City. Moreover, they are buying spirit herbs that are over 1,000 years old. They spent millions of spirit stones, causing the price of spirit herbs in Fantasy Spirit City to increase by 10%. Lu Ping was stunned for a while. Li Xuanru saw that Lu Ping was in a daze and thought that Lu Ping didn't understand, so she said, "The cultivation resources of our North Sea sects are already scarce, and it's rare for us to encounter this kind of gathering that only happens once in 100 years. Therefore, every time there is an opportunity to participate in this kind of gathering, the cultivators of the North Sea sects will spend a lot of spirit stones to buy all kinds of rare resources." Only then did Lu Ping regain his composure, but he still asked curiously, "How many spirit stones does our sect spend to buy spirit herbs?" But even so, it shouldn't be to the extent of angering the dignified Laozu. Of course it's not just that. A voice came over and enlightened Master Xian Sen walked in from outside the cave with a very ugly expression. After Li Xuanru and Lu Ping stood up to greet each other, Lu Ping chuckled and asked, "What martial uncle said just now, is there any other reason?" Enlightened Master Xian Sen glanced at him and said, Do you know how many spirit stones our sect spends to buy the spirit herbs gathered in Fantasy Spirit City during this kind of gathering? Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, and with a trace of embarrassment that was hard to detect, he smiled and said, since it's our sect doing it, it should be at least 5 million spirit stones. At this time, enlightened Master Xian Su also walked out from Tianqin Laozu's cave and said with a gloomy expression, 5 million? 15 million. If it weren't for the fact that the 4 great sects of the North Sea would be buying spirit herbs wantonly during these 7 days, our sect might have spent even more spirit stones. At this time, Taoist Master Shen Tian and the others also heard Taoist Master Xian Su and Taoist Master Xian Sen's conversation with Lu Ping's group. Out of curiosity they also walked over. Taoist Master Shen Tian said thoughtfully, so that's how it is. It's no wonder that martial uncles are so angry. That person's actions cost our sect 5 million spirit stones. I'm afraid even a late-stage core forging cultivator wouldn't have this much wealth. Taoist Master Xian Su unhappily glared at Taoist Master Shen Tian and said, it's not just 5 million, the trading fair will last for 7 days, after which the price of spirit grasses will rise again. At that time it will be just these few spirit stones. Taoist Master Xian Sen also said, originally the sects of the North Sea had a tacit understanding to secretly buy spirit grasses from the city. This way it wouldn't be easy to attract the attention of the shops that supply spirit grasses. Even though the price of spirit grasses rose as the trading fair neared its end, the increase was still limited. Now that someone has stirred up the situation, the original tacit understanding between the sects has been broken. I'm afraid that each sect will go their own way, lest they end up with nothing in the end. Tomorrow not only me and senior brother Xian Su, but also all of you must do your best to buy all the spirit grasses. After Taoist Master Xian Sen finished speaking, he took out a few storage pouches from his body and tossed one to each person. Lu Ping received the storage pouch that was tossed to him and opened it. There were 2 neat piles of spirit stones inside. One pile had a total of 10,000 mid-grade spirit stones, while the other had 500,000 low-grade spirit stones. The entire storage pouch contained a total of 5 million spirit stones. If Taoist Master Shen Tian's second senior sister, and the rest of them were the same as Lu Ping, then the 8 of them would have 12 million spirit stones in their hands. At this time, Taoist Master Xian Su sighed and said, in the past, the sect would at most spend 10 million spirit stones to buy spirit grasses. Now that there is a large spirit stone mine in the North Sea and our sect has secretly occupied a medium-sized spirit stone mine, we originally wanted to be rich and imposing this time and take out an extra 5 million to buy spirit grasses. However, we encountered this matter, so let's all do our best. However, when buying spirit grasses, don't fall behind. Although there are dozens of Dharma adept Laozu in this fantasy spirit city, there are many demons and humans mixed in the city. The water is very deep. Lu Ping put away the storage pouch and thought for a moment before asking, Martial Uncle, the loss of millions of spirit stones is indeed distressing, but it shouldn't be enough to make an existence like Tianqin Laozu so angry. What exactly is the matter? Lu Ping knew that as a third-generation disciple, it was indeed inappropriate for him to ask such a question, but his status in the sect was not much lower than Taoist Master Xian Sen's, so he already had the right to know the sect's secrets. So he sighed and said, today, senior sister Tianqin saw Xianling sect's Daoxian Laozu together with Crystal Palace's Yuanguang Laozu at the Fantasy Spirit Pavilion. The Fantasy Spirit Pavilion has already announced that this time, Xianling sect will be promoted from the 3rd tier to the 2nd tier among the 25 medium-sized sections. Lu Ping's face turned cold. The 2 large spirit stone mines in the fallen secret land were originally occupied by the 25 medium-sized sects in the overseas cultivation world. These 25 medium-sized sects were divided into 5 tiers according to their strength, and each tier had a different share of the spirit stone mines. Originally, Xianling sect and Jinling were ranked 12th and 14th among the 25 medium-sized sections. They were both in the 3rd tier, and each had a share of 4% of the spirit stone mines. However, in the past 100 years, Xianling sect's strength had not increased much. Although they had gained Feng Shu Tao, they had also lost Dao Kong, and now Dao Shi was seriously injured. From the looks of Dharma Laozu, Xianling sect seemed to have regressed. If the rankings were to be rearranged, Xianling sect would not be able to enter the top 10 among the 25 medium-sized sections. It would be lucky if they could even maintain their current position. On the contrary, Jinling had made great progress in the past 100 years. Not only had Tian Kong and Laozu advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, but they had also gained Tian Lin, Tian Ling and Tian Qin, the three Dharma Laozu practitioners. With their strength, it was only natural for them to enter the second tier and take 5% of the Spirit Stone mines. If it was not for the fact that Jinling did not have a late Dharma Laozu, it would be reasonable for them to enter the top 5 and take 6% of the Spirit Stone mines. In the past, Jinling would have to fight and compromise to advance to the second tier, but with their strength it would not be a big problem. However, this time Xianling's sect, with the support of the Crystal Palace, had joined the fray. This was not a good thing for Jinling. If two sects from the North Sea applied to advance at the same time, it would inevitably give the sects from the East and South Seas a sense of aggressiveness. If things went wrong, the sects might end up with no one being able to advance. If that happened, Xianling's sect would not suffer any losses. They did not have the qualifications to advance in the first place, but Jinling would suffer a great loss. Even if only one sect advanced in the end, with the support of the Crystal Palace, Xianling's sect would most likely be able to push Jinling away and enter the second tier. In this way, no matter what, Xianling's sect would not lose. On the other hand, Jinling would most likely gain nothing in this gathering of all the sects and clans in the overseas training world. No wonder when Tianqin Laozu saw Daoxian Laozu and Yuanguang Laozu entering and exiting the illusionary spirit chamber together, and then heard the news, he was so shocked and angry. In fact, the reason why Tianxiang Laozu had given the opportunity to represent Jinling in this grand gathering to Tianqin Laozu, other than the fact that his own cultivation had indeed reached the late Dharma stage and he was unwilling to go out, was that he wanted to use this opportunity of Jinling rising from the third tier to the second tier to give the credit to Tianqin Laozu, so that Tianqin Laozu could return to Jinling with a halo. How could Tianqin Laozu not know about Tianxiang Laozu's good intentions? But Xianling's sect, with the support of the Crystal Palace, suddenly came out to disrupt the situation. This made Tianqin Laozu furious, but there was nothing he could do. However, what the people in Jinling did not know was that at this time, Xianling's sect's Daoxian Laozu and Crystal Palace's Yuanguang Laozu were also at their wits' end. After a long time, Daoxian Laozu let out a long sigh and said, "Tianxiang is really good. I didn't expect that he could make Mei Xianqin return to Jinling at this time. Isn't he afraid that Mei Xianqin and Lu Tianling will fight and destroy his Jinling?" Although Yuanguang Laozu really did not care about the fights between these small sects in the North Sea, Xianling's sect was an important chess piece for the Crystal Palace to conquer the North Sea. Therefore, he said helplessly, "This time, it is indeed beyond our expectations. Not only does Jinling have 4 mid-Dharma adepts, but it also has 9 adepts in the Dharma stage. With such strength, if it still cannot be promoted to the second tier among the medium-sized sects, it will be too unjustifiable." Daoxian Laozu asked a little unwillingly, "Friend Yuanguang, even if your sect intervenes, can't it stop Jinling from advancing? Jinling has been rising too quickly these years. If the benefits from these 2 large spiritual minds increase, then I am afraid the gap between our sect and Jinling will only get bigger and bigger." Yuanguang Laozu replied with some dissatisfaction, "The most fundamental reason for the rise of a sect is still the sect itself. External interference can only play a role in hindering it. In this grand event, the Crystal Palace still has to deal with the provocation of the boudoir on the large spiritual minds, so we have no time to care about other things. Moreover, this is originally a medium-sized sect's matter. If the Crystal Palace interferes too much, it will inevitably cause resentment among the other sections." Hearing Yuanguang Laozu's words, Daoxian Laozu couldn't help but feel a little dejected. Yuanguang Laozu was secretly a little disdainful, but he still said, "But don't worry, friend. Although this time Jinling's advancement to a second-class sect cannot be changed, our sect will still try our best to support your sect's advancement. In this way, at least your sect's foundation will not be much weaker than Jinling's." It's just that, fellow Taoist profound, although my water crystal palace is powerful, it is also a tall tree that attracts the wind. Whether or not you can completely suppress Jinling's sect and make your sect the overlord of the North Sea, ultimately depends on your sect's own efforts. When Daoxian Laozu heard that the Crystal Palace had already promised to fully help Xianling's sect to advance to a second-class sect, he was already overjoyed. He smiled and said, "Friend Daoxian, please rest assured. With the help of your sect, my martial nephew Lin Xuqing will advance to the Dharma phase within these 2 years. Martial nephew Lu Xuheng is also about to condense a 7th-grade golden core. By then, our sect will definitely regain the upper hand in the North Sea." Yuanguang Laozu wanted to point out that if it wasn't for the help of the Crystal Palace, It would probably take another 100 years to advance to the Dharma phase. But after thinking about it, he didn't say it in the end. The next day, Lu Ping carried the 1.5 million spiritual stones given by Jinren Xiansen to carry out the task of purchasing spiritual herbs for his sect. Just as he left the cave abode, a sound transmission sword fell from the sky. Lu Ping held the sword in his hand and scanned it with his divine thoughts. His face instantly lit up. Chapter 507. Lu Ping received a sound transmission sword. Yin Xianchu and Qi Lianying had arrived. At the city gate of Phantom City, Lu Ping looked at the woman standing next to Yin Xianchu. She was charming and dignified, two completely different temperaments, yet perfectly fused together. Who else could it be but Qi Lianying? Lu Ping blinked and asked in disbelief, Qi Lianying? Qi Lianying winked at Lu Ping and said, "What's wrong, little Lu? How many years has it been since we last met? Don't you recognize me?" Lu Ping laughed and said, "How could I? Which man could forget a beauty like you?" Qi Lianying smiled sweetly and said, "Is that so? I heard that you've accumulated a large amount of property in the Northern Sea, but you've handed it over to your confidant to manage. You're acting like a man taking care of the outside and a woman taking care of the inside. It's truly enviable. Little Lu, you've become such a flowery talker after leaving your confidant. Big sister really looks down on you?" Lu Ping was really not good at dealing with this kind of situation. He waved his hand and was about to say something when he saw Qi Lianying's face. He frowned and his eyes flickered with a green light. Qi Lianying wanted to tease Lu Ping when she saw him staring at her, but she was frightened by the green light in Lu Ping's eyes. She shivered and said, Why are you looking at me like that?" Lu Ping came to a realization and shook his head nonchalantly. He said, "It's nothing. I just remembered the task given to me by the sect. I have to complete it as soon as possible." Qi Lianying's beautiful eyes wandered. She naturally knew that Lu Ping was not being sincere, but she did not expose him. Instead, she asked curiously, "What task did your Jinling give you? Why are you so worried?" Lu Ping led the two away as he said, "It's nothing. He just wants me to spend all the 1.5 million spiritual stones I have as soon as possible." Qi Lianying giggled and said, "There's such a good thing? I'm the best at spending spiritual stones. Take out your spiritual stones. I'll spend them all in one day." Lu Ping was shocked and said, "That won't do. These spiritual stones can only be used to buy spiritual herbs. They can't be spent on anything else." Lu Ping had spent 2 million spiritual stones in less than half a day yesterday, raising the price of spiritual herbs in the entire Phantom City by 10%. Why would he worry about spending 1.5 million spiritual stones? Actually, it was not that Lu Ping's 2 million spiritual stones were too much. No matter how many spiritual stones he had, how much could he do in the Phantom City? The problem was that Lu Ping had spent the 2 million spiritual stones too fiercely. Every time he entered a shop, he would want nothing more than to empty out all the 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs in the shop. This way it would be hard for him not to attract attention. If Lu Ping had used the same method as enlightened Master Shen Su and the others, buying a little less each time and visiting a few more shops, or changing his identity before visiting again, he would have bought quite a lot of spiritual herbs in the end and wouldn't have attracted the attention of the spiritual herb shops. Miser. Qi Lianying muttered in dissatisfaction. Then she threw a storage pouch into Lu Ping's hand and said, "These are some of the savings we've accumulated over the years. I heard from your junior brother Ian that you've been in urgent need of high-grade spiritual stones recently, so aside from spiritual herbs, you've exchanged everything inside for high-grade spiritual stones." Only when he was with Lu Ping, Ji Shenxian, and the others would he be able to speak freely. If there was anyone else present, he would usually have a cold expression that kept strangers away. Lu Ping took out all the spiritual herbs in the storage pouch, then handed it back and shook his head. "The more spiritual herbs I have, the better. It's just that you've been in charge of Hearing Surf Island all these years. You should take these spiritual stones back and use them for your cultivation." Qi Lianying smiled mischievously. "Don't worry. You haven't been on the island all these years and I've long gotten used to acting like a tyrant. Whenever there's something good on Hearing Surf Island, doesn't it go through me first? If you don't return soon, I'm afraid your subordinates, Hong Ying, Yi Buki, and Wu Yen won't even remember you as their master." Lu Ping smiled and no longer held back. He took the 200 high-grade spiritual stones from the storage pouch and put them into his own storage ring. "That's fine. I do need a lot of high-grade spiritual stones right now. These 200 spiritual stones can be considered timely help. Qi Lianying pursed her lips in disdain. You're such a hypocrite. I really thought you were going to return the spiritual stones to me. No, this time I have a few abilities that I need to cultivate, and I just happen to need a lot of heavenly treasures. The responsibility of paying the spiritual stones will fall on you. Also, you will need to refine dozens of batches of medicinal pills for my cultivation. Yu Jiangrui's cultivation will no longer be able to progress further, so he won't be able to refine mid-core forging medicinal pills. These things will fall on you, little Lu. The corner of Lu Ping's eyes twitched. He glanced at Qi Lianying and saw her grinning at him. Lu Ping knew that as long as he gave an excuse, Qi Lianying would have already thought of countless reasons to refute him. So he simply said, "Fine." With yesterday's lesson, Lu Ping changed his method. The three of them took turns buying spiritual herbs from dozens of shops. Each time they bought 7 or 8 spiritual herbs. In one day they only spent 500,000 spiritual stones. They bought 7 to 800,000-year-old spiritual herbs, as well as several precious 500-year-old and 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. As night fell, Qi Lianying complained, "After walking for a day, my legs are about to break." Lu Ping was amused. When cultivators cultivated, the spiritual energy would automatically cleanse their bodies. At their level, even if they dispersed their cultivation base, their bodies would still be invincible. How could they possibly feel tired? It was most likely because Qi Lianying was annoyed by Lu Ping's lack of freedom and wanted to move on his own. Sure enough, Qi Lianying said, "Little Lu, I don't have the strength to walk around with you tomorrow. Don't blame me for being disloyal. Let me rest for a day first." Lu Ping nodded with a smile. Qi Lianying, on the other hand, did not feel ashamed at all for being seen through. Lu Ping suddenly said, "Martial Aunt Tianqin is a senior of our sect. I believe Junior Martial Brother Yin has already told you. Don't you want to see her and Senior Martial Sister Zhu Xianming? After all, they have been taking care of you since you lost your memory." Qi Lianying's playful attitude was swept away and her expression became serious. "Forget it, I won't go. Otherwise, both sides will be unhappy. I have been on Soundwave Island all these years. If I wanted to see them, I would have seen them long ago. Why would I wait until now?" Lu Ping nodded as expected and said, "But you still have to return to the North Sea with me in the end. Your cultivation has improved quite a bit over the years, and it looks like your strength isn't much inferior to my junior martial brother Yin's. I'm afraid you've already remembered many things in your heart, and it's time to unravel your story." Qi Lianying hesitated for a moment, then nodded solemnly and said, "All right, I will go back to the North Sea with you. These years I often remember some things, but they are all before and after I lost my memory. I can't remember anything else. Right now, I only know that I was captured by the Overflowing Seas gang. They wanted to ask me something I didn't know, but they didn't believe me. In the end, a core forging stage cultivator searched my soul. I don't remember anything after that. So these years, aside from managing Soundwave Island, the only thing I have done is assassinate the cultivators of the Overflowing Seas gang. At the same time, I also know that the Overflowing Seas gang is just a hidden pawn of the Crystal Palace." Lu Ping also said in a low voice, "These things will eventually come to light. Whether it is the Overflowing Seas gang or the Crystal Palace, even if their people line up for you to kill, how many can you kill? Besides, we can't afford to offend them right now. Plus, we have already aroused their vigilance. Last time, if Junior Martial Brother Yin hadn't met my 3 Senior Martial Sisters, I'm afraid even he would have lost his life. So, we must think of a way to settle this once and for all." Qi Lianying weakly waved his hand and said, all right. I understand what you're saying. I won't cause trouble for them anymore." After parting ways with Qi Lianying and Yin Xianchu, Lu Ping hurried back to his cave residence. At this moment, Lu Ping's face was filled with deep thought. Perhaps it was because Lu Ping's cultivation wasn't high enough in the past, but he didn't know that Qi Lianying's face had been altered by a secret technique. It wasn't until Lu Ping's divine sense, which was no weaker than a late core forging stage cultivator's divine sense, coupled with the 3 pure eyes and his increasingly proficient methods of breaking seals, that he was able to see through Qi Lianying's face at a glance. This secret technique was different from ordinary illusion techniques. Instead, it was a technique that changed a person's facial muscles and then completely sealed them with a spirit sealing technique. In other words, Qi Lianying's face that appeared before everyone's eyes was actually real and not an illusion created by a technique. However, when using this secret technique, Qi Lianying would inevitably suffer great pain. If Qi Lianying's cultivation couldn't surpass the person who used this secret technique, then in order to break the secret technique on Qi Lianying's face, one would need to find a cultivator with the same cultivation as the person who used this secret technique and who was proficient in breaking seals. Lu Ping didn't believe that with old ancestor Qinqing's cultivation base, he wouldn't be able to see through the disguise technique on Qi Lianying's face. He also didn't believe that with old ancestor Qinqing's cultivation base, he wouldn't be able to decipher the technique. Thinking of the cold relationship between ancestor Tianqin, Zhu Xianmeng, and Qi Lianying, the only possibility was that ancestor Tianqin was the one who used this secret technique. But why did Lyra Laozu do this? Was she trying to hide something? For a moment Lu Ping's mind was in a mess. All kinds of guesses and thoughts seemed to surge into Lu Ping's mind endlessly. Ninth junior brother. Lu Ping was startled. Only now did he realize that it was his second senior sister, Li Xuanru, who was calling him. Lu Ping looked up and didn't know when Lu Ping had already returned to the cave residence where everyone was staying. You look like you're in a hurry. Did something happen? Li Xuanru asked with concern. Lu Ping smiled carelessly and said, It's nothing. It's just that when I was buying spirit herbs today, I accidentally saw a female disciple of the Shuiyan Pavilion also buying spirit herbs. It seems that the other 3 sects of the North Sea are also fighting to buy spirit herbs. Chapter 508. After the second day of the trading event, Lu Ping and the other Jinling disciples returned to the cave dwelling to gather everyone's harvest for the day. For the whole day no one bought any spiritual herbs, and the total amount spent was only about 200,000 to 300,000 spirit stones. Only Lu Ping spent 500,000 spirit stones in one go. Lu Ping was a master alchemist, so his knowledge of spiritual herbs was naturally above everyone else's. Moreover, the spiritual herbs Lu Ping bought were obviously better than others in terms of age and quality. However, the reason why Lu Ping was able to buy spiritual herbs so quickly was because Lu Ping and the 2 of them took turns. This way, once Lu Ping had his eyes on a spiritual herb, the 3 of them would take turns to buy it. This way the shopkeeper wouldn't be alerted. As everyone talked about what they saw and heard, Lu Ping found out that it wasn't just the Shuiyan Pavilion cultivators that he saw. The other senior brothers and sisters had also seen the Haiyan sect and Xianling sect cultivators. Among them, the Xianling sect cultivators were the most extravagant when it came to buying spiritual herbs. Enlightened Master Xiansu said helplessly, Looks like we can't hide it anymore. Just like Xianling sect, the price of spirit herbs in Phantom Spirit City is going to increase tomorrow. Although we have the most spirit herbs on us this time, we might not be able to buy much more than before. Spiritual Master Xiansen tidied up the 6,000 stalks of spiritual herbs and said, No matter what, tomorrow is the last day of the auction. We still have to go buy some spiritual herbs. Otherwise, the price of spiritual herbs will increase even more after the auction. I'll hand these spiritual herbs to senior sister Tianqin and let her take care of them. The next day the price of spiritual herbs in Fantasy Spirit City increased by another 10%. Without Qi Lianying and Yin Xuanchu's help, Lu Ping's efficiency dropped by a lot. In a day he only spent 300,000 to 400,000 spirit stones. This time, Lu Ping also saw 2 Xianling sect cultivators and 1 Haiyan sect cultivator going in and out of a spiritual herb shop. Obviously they were also making use of the time to buy spiritual herbs. Lu Ping's divine sense was far stronger than the 3 of them. Before the 3 of them noticed him, Lu Ping had already dodged them. Lu Ping stood in a hidden corner and watched a Xianling sect cultivator walk out of a spiritual herb shop. Just as Lu Ping was about to leave, his eyes lit up and he retracted his foot. At the intersection of a main street, 2 middle-aged cultivators were chatting as they walked along the street. At the same time, they were also casually browsing the things on both sides of the street. When the 2 of them arrived at the spirit herb shop that the Xianling sect cultivator had walked out from, one of them smiled and said something to the other. The other nodded and the 2 of them walked into the shop. Lu Ping rubbed his chin and thought to himself, this is interesting. The North Sea's Liao family's Liao Ruinjia is also here. Who is the person walking with him? That person's clothes and accessories are completely different from the North Sea cultivators. It seems that the Liao family is not simple. Lu Ping thought for a moment and walked straight to the shadow of a stone pillar beside the door of the shop. A moment later, Liao Ruinjia and the middle-aged cultivator walked out of the shop. Liao Ruinjia said, Brother Runjin, has the situation in Middle-earth really deteriorated to this extent? The middle-aged cultivator next to him nodded and said, this time, it came so suddenly that the major sects were caught off guard. However, these things will only give them a slight advantage in the beginning. As time passes, the major sects will launch a counterattack, and the advantage will fall back into the hands of the humans. Then, Brother Runjin, did you come to East Sea this time because you are confident about that thing? The middle-aged cultivator shook his head and said, it's difficult. Although our Liao family is quite familiar with that thing's habits, the Crystal Palace has a rough idea of where it is. This time, it's not just the overseas cultivators who came to Phantom City. As far as I know, there are 3 forces in Middle-earth who came to Phantom City. They are most likely here for that thing as well. Liao Ruinjia sighed and said, it's a pity that we didn't manage to kill that Crystal Palace cultivator last time. By the time Hu and the others arrived, the Overflowing Oceans Gang's secret transportation formation had already been destroyed. I'm afraid that person has already left. The middle-aged cultivator's expression changed and he said, could it be that someone else got the news and killed that person first? Liao Ruinjia's expression changed and he said, that can't be. Who else in North Sea knows about this? At least Xianling sect probably knows. Liao Ruinjia's expression changed and he said, Brother Runjian, you mean? The middle-aged cultivator nodded and said, then why would Pring Xiuan bring that thing to North Sea for no reason? Now that Xianling sect and the Crystal Palace are in a heated relationship, Peng Xiuan most likely wants to give that thing to Yuan Guang, and then Yuan Guang will give it to Xianling sect. Liao Ruinjia said doubtfully, although Xianling sect is a big sect in North Sea, if it wasn't for the Crystal Palace's ambition to rule over the overseas cultivators, they might not even care about a mid-sized sect like Xianling sect. If the Crystal Palace needs that thing, they can just look for it themselves. Why would they need to involve Xianling sect? The middle-aged cultivator said leisurely, when Fei Ling sect was destroyed, the entire Fei Ling mountain was sunk to the bottom of the sea by a Dharma adept of Fei Ling sect before he died. But I'm afraid no other sect in the entire North Sea has more of Fei Ling sect's inheritance than Xianling sect. Liao Ruinjia's eyes lit up and he said, that's right. After Fei Ling sect was destroyed, Xianling sect has been the strongest sect in North Sea for 4,000 years. It was only in the recent 100 years that Jinling gradually caught up. Brother Runjian, are you saying that Xianling sect still has the inheritance of that thing? The middle-aged cultivator waved his hand and said, these things have been passed down in North Sea for more than 1,000 years. You should know better than me. But, something's not right. Someone is using divine sense to spy on us. The middle-aged cultivator's expression turned cold and he immediately stopped talking. At the same time, his eyes were like lightning as he looked around without leaving a trace. Liao Ruinjia clapped his hands as if nothing had happened. Lu Ping, who was hiding in the dark, clearly saw a light dust like dust being emitted when Liao Ruinjia clapped his hands. Lu Ping's eyes narrowed. It's the thought-dissolving powder. This was a type of poisonous powder that alchemists created in the process of refining pills to prevent others from spying on them. This kind of poisonous powder looked like dust. Even if a cultivator's divine sense didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to tell that it was different from ordinary dust. However, once a cultivator's divine sense invaded the surroundings of the thought-dissolving powder, the powder would quickly corrode the cultivator's divine sense like maggots in a tarsal bone and send a warning to the alchemist. This kind of thought-dissolving powder had a permanent effect on one's divine sense. Unlike true essence that could be recovered after being melted, it required a large amount of time to cultivate again in order to completely recover the melted divine sense. Fortunately, Lu Ping quickly withdrew his divine sense when the middle-aged cultivator was alerted. Otherwise, not only would Lu Ping's divine sense be severely injured, he would also likely expose his hiding place. The middle-aged cultivator looked around but found nothing. He turned to Liao Ruinjia and said, let's go. The intruder is very vigilant and has already retreated. The two of them no longer spoke and walked towards the east side of the street. A moment later, Lu Ping walked out from the shadow of the door pillar. Looking in the direction that the two of them had gone, Lu Ping touched the storage ring on his finger. The thing that Lu Ping couldn't figure out the most about Peng Xiuan was the incomplete map. Could it be that the treasure that Liao Ruinjia and the middle-aged cultivator were trying to obtain was the location recorded in the incomplete map? After returning to the cave abode, everyone increased their purchase of spirit herbs. Everyone spent roughly 500,000 spirit stones. Only Lu Ping alone spent 400,000 spirit stones. Seeing everyone's puzzled expressions, Lu Ping could only explain, in the past 3 days the quality of the spirit herbs in Fantasy Spirit City has obviously declined due to the large-scale purchase, so we only bought these. Everyone was speechless. Spiritual Master Shen Sen said unhappily, these spirit herbs can't be bought in the North Sea even if we wanted to. Who cares about the quality now? Being able to buy them is the most important thing. Now there are more and more sects buying spirit herbs in Fantasy Spirit City. It's not just the 4 sects of the North Sea, even people from the Azure Sea sect and the Azure Wave sect have come to the East Sea. At this moment, Tianqin Laozu walked out of the cave abode. She glanced at Lu Ping and said, this time Fantasy Spirit City is very strange. Everyone should be careful. Ever since the Azure Sea sect and the Azure Wave sect split up thousands of years ago, they have never been in contact with each other. The 2 sects even hate each other. This time they actually appeared in Fantasy Spirit City together. I'm afraid things aren't that simple. Apart from that, some big sects and families from the Middle Earth seem to have also appeared in Fantasy Spirit City. This time the overseas cultivation world's gathering won't be that simple. There are humans and demons mixed in Fantasy Spirit City now, so everyone must be careful. Fortunately, tomorrow is the auction. After the auction we will leave Fantasy Spirit City in 2 days. When everyone saw how serious Tianqin Laozu was, they immediately felt that the atmosphere in Fantasy Spirit City was indeed a little strange these days. So they all nodded in agreement. The next day, Lu Ping and the rest of the group followed behind Tianqin Laozu and walked towards the Fantasy Spirit Palace in the center of Fantasy Spirit City. The illusionary Spirit Palace was actually a huge grotto heaven mystic treasure. But according to enlightened Master Shen Su, this winter mystic treasure only had 2 enchantments. It was far inferior to the Heaven Origin Palace that Lu Ping had seen before. When they arrived at the center of the Fantasy Spirit Palace, a core forging cultivator immediately came to greet them. Tianqin Laozu took out the token that he had flashed at the Fantasy Spirit City's city gate. The core forging cultivator took the token and examined it before leading everyone to a teleportation array in the middle of the palace. After the teleportation array was activated and the light before them dissipated, they found themselves in a secret chamber. This secret chamber was luxuriously decorated and was filled with restrictive magic arrays. It seemed to be used to prevent others from prying into the secret chamber. Directly opposite the secret chamber was a huge venue. Cultivators began to enter the venue one after another. Every cultivator who entered was at least in the late core forging stage. Most of these cultivators covered their faces with bamboo hats, unwilling to reveal their identities. This secret chamber was exquisitely decorated. Everyone inside the secret chamber could see everything that was happening in the venue, but the people inside the venue could not pry into the movements inside the secret chamber. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.